Lu Ming hit the ground hard, and when he opened his eyes, nothing around him looked familiar. He sat up, dazed, trying to figure out where he was. As he stumbled toward a mirror, his chest tightened. The reflection staring back wasn't his own. He froze, whispering to himself in confusion, wondering whose face that was. Panic washed over him as fragments of his old life came rushing back. He remembered dying, collapsing at his desk after another endless day as a programmer. His boss had been the kind of manager who never planned ahead, always reacting at the last second. Once, the guy had even demanded that their app should change colors depending on the user's mood: red if happy, blue if sad, purple if excited. Lu Ming remembered thinking if there had been a knife nearby that day, it might have ended badly. He let out a long sigh. He could still feel that moment when his body finally gave up, head pounding, everything snapping inside. His last thought had been half a joke, wondering how his clueless boss would react when he found a cold body in the office the next morning. And yet here he was, alive again. Different body, but somehow still called Lu Ming. He rubbed his temples, trying to take it all in. Then a grin slowly spread across his face. New body, new life. Time for a fresh start. But then a sharp jolt hit him. His eyes widened as a flood of memories poured in, playing like a fast-forward movie reel. This new Lu Ming was only 16. He was at a vocational school. His family wasn't struggling. He had healthy parents, even an older sister. Not a bad life. But something didn't add up. Why was he in a vocational school if everything at home was fine? And then, her. A girl appeared in his memory. Gorgeous figure, long legs. His face went red when he realized that was his sister. The feelings attached to those memories weren't simple either. It was a messy mix of admiration, insecurity, and something he really didn't want to think too hard about. Trying to shake it off, he pulled back the blanket on the bed. His jaw dropped. The sheets were piled with magazines, and not the wholesome kind. He stood there, speechless for a moment, before laughing it off. Made sense, he thought. With a sister that pretty, any teenage boy would have been a bit messed up. But then his eyes landed on the trash bin overflowing with tissues. His smile disappeared. Gross. Turns out, even this younger Lu Ming had realized his life was heading the wrong way. That's why he'd left home, moved to this new city, and decided to rebuild himself into someone better, someone who could actually take care of his sister. That's also why he chose the path of becoming a card artisan. Except, he suddenly frowned. What even was a card artisan? The moment the thought crossed his mind, a glowing card shimmered into existence before him. His chest tightened as the reality sank in. He had really transmigrated into another world. This place was filled with spiritual energy, and people used it to walk all kinds of paths. Some trained with swords, chasing fierce battles. Others played with spirits and creepy magic. A few hunted down old spells and ancient knowledge. Card artisans, though? They weren't about brute force. They specialized in sealing things, abilities, illusions, even living beings, into blank cards. The strong ones could trap entire worlds inside. Lu Ming stared at the glowing card resting in his palm. It was called the Origin card, the foundation of everything a card artisan could do. You could capture anything weaker than its energy, seal it inside, and then transfer it onto other cards. He chuckled to himself. It was basically like burning a CD. All just technical stuff, he thought, shaking his head. Turns out, the younger Lu Ming wasn't totally clueless. He actually had some basic card artisan skills, just level 1 stuff, kind of like what his dad did. Still, it wasn't nothing. For Lu Ming, that felt like a starter pack, maybe even the first step toward something big. Not long after moving to the city, his older sister came to visit. Younger Lu Ming panicked. To keep up appearances, he went and signed a ridiculous high-interest loan, opened up a card shop, and pretended he had it all together. When the memory hit, Lu Ming nearly jumped out of bed. Alone like that? He freaked out and tore the room apart looking for his phone. Once he found it and saw the actual number on the screen, he froze. The debt had 12 digits. He fell back on the bed in shock, mumbling to himself about how crazy this kid must have been to borrow that much just to open a shop. Then another thought struck him. Loans like that always had collateral. His stomach dropped as the memory played out. Photos. Embarrassing ones. All of him, dressed like a girl. His face burned as he covered it with both hands. What kind of world was this, seriously? The frustration was too much, and he collapsed onto the floor, completely drained. Now the situation was crystal clear. He wasn't just stuck with a mountain of debt. If he couldn't pay it back, those photos would get leaked. To his parents, to relatives, to everyone. People would think he was into some kind of weird cosplay hobby, and his reputation would be wrecked. The anger boiled over. He wanted it all to just disappear. This wasn't him. Back then, he was just a regular programmer who overworked and suddenly dropped dead. Now this new life somehow felt even worse. He lost it for a second and kicked the wardrobe hard. Instant regret. Pain shot up his leg, and he grabbed his foot, wincing. But then he noticed something. The wardrobe was glowing. Limping, he pulled the door open and was stunned. Inside, rows of cards were lined up neatly in a bright, glowing display. He realized he was standing inside the shop, the same shop this kid had basically gambled his entire future on. Stepping through another door, Lu Ming found himself outside. The city was buzzing. Tall buildings, endless crowds, people rushing around. And then came the noise. Sellers were shouting over each other about discounts, buy one get one deals, and special offers. Everywhere he looked, there were card shops, big, small, fancy, crowded. Some even had lines stretching out the door. The competition was insane. Lu Ming just stood there, covering his face, muttering about how hopeless this was. No wonder the kid had to sell cheap one-star energy cards just to survive. In a place like this, it was a miracle the shop hadn't already gone under. Just then, a couple strolled up to the store. The girl asked if they did illusion card upgrades here. The guy glanced around and laughed, saying the shop looked too plain for that kind of service. The girl agreed, and the two of them walked away, joking about being exhausted and just wanting to sleep. Lu Ming watched the couple walk away and felt his annoyance rising. Almost without thinking, he muttered, "Illusion card." Right then, his phone buzzed. He checked the screen and froze. A 3D projection popped out. A rough-looking guy appeared, shouting that he had 15 days left to clear his debt. The memories of the younger Lu Ming kicked in, and he has a blueprint for a basic one-star energy card. The voice explained it simply. Just trace the pattern and the card would be made. He actually knew the basics of card making, though he had never really tried it before. Still, he figured, why not give it a shot? He grabbed a blank card, focused his energy, and let it flow through a pen. Slowly, black lines appeared across the surface. To his surprise, the design was basically just math equations: add, subtract, multiply, divide. For someone who used to code all day in his past life, this was child's play. It felt almost like writing a program. After the final stroke, he looked down. In his hand was a freshly made one-star energy card. His chest swelled with excitement for a moment, then sank again. At this rate, even if he worked 20 hours straight every single day, he'd barely make 100 yuan, and the deadline was just 15 days away. The pressure crushed him. His eyes stung as he wondered if he'd ever make it through. Just then, someone called out. A chubby guy walked in with a grin, complaining about the heat and asking why Lu Ming never turned on the AC. This was Zhang Xiaopeng, an illusionist, and apparently the lowest-ranked one at their vocational school. Lu Ming's eyes lit up the second he saw him. This was exactly who he needed. He rushed over, calling Xiaopeng his lifesaver. The guy looked puzzled and reminded him he wasn't about to cover any debts again. Lu Ming waved him off. It wasn't about money, he just needed an illusion card. Xiaopeng smirked and said he could do it, even joked about giving a tiny 1% discount. But then he started messing around, asking if Lu Ming wanted some weird fantasy illusions like queens or roleplay stuff. Lu Ming shut him down instantly. No way. He needed something simple. Fruit. Xiaopeng blinked in confusion. Fruit illusions? He double-checked, asking if Lu Ming wanted them to appear one by one, slow at first, then faster. Lu Ming nodded. Exactly that. Xiaopeng shrugged. It sounded easy enough. He summoned a glowing cube that looked like a Rubik's Cube and showed it off. Lu Ming told him it looked good, then asked him to compress it. Xiaopeng hesitated, warning him that he might waste his energy if things went wrong. Lu Ming rolled his eyes, saying if it failed, he'd cover the cost himself. The moment Lu Ming explained his plan, Xiaopeng's whole mood flipped. He shouted that Lu Ming should have just said so earlier, then tossed him the glowing cube. Lu Ming caught it, pressed his card against it, and poured in his focus. It wasn't easy, his breathing got heavy, but finally, it worked. He grinned to himself. This was it. If he had any chance of bouncing back in 15 days, it would start right here. Holding up the finished product proudly, he named it the Watermelon Illusion. Xiaopeng stared at him like he'd lost it. A watermelon illusion? He said it was totally useless, even worse than his cheapest cards, and asked who on earth would buy that. Lu Ming stayed calm, saying the payment was already sent. Xiaopeng grumbled that he didn't even get treated to lunch. Lu Ming joked that he had expired noodles if he wanted. Rolling his eyes, Xiaopeng muttered about regretting the so-called discount, then headed for the door. Before leaving, he admitted he didn't get what Lu Ming was planning, but now he was curious. Fast forward 10 days. A huge crowd had gathered in the city, and a pink-haired guy wandered up with his girlfriend, wondering what all the noise was about. She guessed it might be some kind of big event and dragged him closer to see. The pair was an odd sight. He was barely 3 feet tall, while she was towering and twice his size. But hey, this world had all kinds. At the center of the crowd stood Lu Ming, shouting like a pro salesman. He waved his card high, hyping it up as a secret training tool from a mysterious master. He promised it could sharpen reaction speed, boost endurance, and even improve focus. To sweeten the deal, he announced a challenge: last 100 seconds in the test and win 10,000 coins. The crowd buzzed with excitement. People whispered about whether it was really a reaction speed card and if the prize was legit. Then a deep voice from the back shouted that he wanted to try. A huge guy stepped forward, and Lu Ming instantly hyped him up, calling him bold and praising his spirit. The man scratched his head, unsure why he was getting so much attention, but agreed anyway. Just then, Lu Ming froze. A tall figure with pink hair was pushing through the crowd, clearly annoyed. Lu Ming laughed nervously and tried to play it off, calling it a mix-up and inviting the guy to test the card. The pink-haired man wasn't amused. He said he had money, so the prize didn't matter, but warned that if Lu Ming was running a scam, he'd report him. Lu Ming just smiled and winked, assuring him it was all legit and worth trying. Then he hit the start button. A voice announced, Illusion X4 activated. Scanning complete. Fruit Ninja Challenge begins in 3, 2, 1. The pink-haired guy froze, confused, like, what's this weird feeling? He looked around and realized the place felt empty, everything looking blocky and fake, almost like some cheap kid's toy. He got annoyed, thinking the illusion was trash and even hurt his eyes. Just as he was about to complain, out of nowhere, a watermelon dropped from the sky. Then suddenly, a whole shower of them came crashing down. The street went into chaos. People screamed and rushed straight into Lu Ming's shop. Some wondered if this was really the place from the news. Others didn't care what it was, they just wanted to try it. The crowd shoved forward, yelling to be let in. Some even argued, offering double or even 10 times the price just to get ahead. Lu Ming couldn't stop grinning. His little card game had blown up big time. The line stretched around the shop, people desperate for their turn. Meanwhile, over at the biggest card store in the city, workers were buzzing. They were laughing about this Watermelon Ninja game. The rules were simple, watermelons kept falling faster and faster, and if you got hit 3 times, you were out. The current record was barely half a minute. One worker mentioned how Lu Ming, a total beginner, had made around 10,000 silver taels in just a few hours with this single card. That number made their boss, Qian Shinkai, nearly spill his tea. He was shocked at how something so simple could be so addictive. He realized it worked because people loved competing, showing off, and spending money just for fun. It wasn't even a product being sold, just an experience, and it was already pulling in crazy profits. He couldn't believe someone in Qingming City had this kind of talent. His employees agreed, saying they'd never seen a basic illusion card go this viral before. One even pointed out that if it could blow up in this small city, it could easily spread across the country. Qian Shinkai smirked, ordered his carriage, and decided he had to get his hands on that card. But he wasn't the only one watching. Somewhere else, another man noticed Qian's sudden interest. Normally, big chain stores ignored small shops, but this was different. He asked his assistant to confirm the shop owner's name, Lu Ming, a primary card creator. The assistant confirmed, and the man, Zhang Chun, head of the rising card company Pure Goods, ordered a full background check on Lu Ming and his card. Back at Lu Ming's shop, even by nightfall, the line was still long. Eventually, Lu Ming stepped outside and told everyone they were done for the day and to come back tomorrow. The crowd groaned and complained, some upset they'd waited for nothing. But one guy shouted back, saying his whole group would return tomorrow, so Lu Ming better be ready. Lu Ming just laughed, waved them off, and promised to see them then. The people left buzzing with excitement, already hyped for round 2 of Watermelon Ninja. After a crazy day, Lu Ming was still buzzing as he cleaned up the shop. Just when he was about to close, the door slammed open and someone yelled out, asking if anyone was there. Lu Ming turned to say they were sold out for the day, but before he could finish, a massive tiger appeared right in front of him. He freaked out, dropped to the floor, and stammered out a greeting, looking like he was about to cry. The man behind the beast told it to calm down, and the tiger actually backed off. That's when the bald man introduced himself as Qian Shinkai, the boss of the Yi Z card shop chain, the biggest name in Qingming City. Lu Ming's jaw dropped. He jumped up, shook Qian's hand, and greeted him with pure excitement, calling it an honor. Qian said he was here because of the Watermelon Ninja craze and admitted Lu Ming had real talent. But then Lu Ming, still eyeing the tiger, asked why Qian was talking to him while staring at his dog. Qian corrected him, saying it was a tiger. Lu shrugged and said, same thing. Then Qian got serious. He told Lu Ming straight up that he wanted to buy the full rights to Watermelon Ninja. He offered 10,000 on the spot. He explained that while the card was clever, it was also very simple and easy to copy. In fact, if he invested a little money, he could rebuild it himself within a day, maybe even in just a few hours. And if he didn't, others definitely would. By tomorrow, knockoffs would be everywhere, and Lu Ming's card would lose its value. Hearing this crushed Lu Ming. He sat down, pale and shaken, realizing the card he thought would change his life might not be worth anything soon. Qian told him business was like a battlefield. Sometimes you win big, sometimes you lose it all, but that's what made it exciting. He handed Lu Ming a business card, told him to call if he changed his mind, but warned he only had 2 hours before the offer expired. Then he walked out, leaving Lu Ming alone. Lu stared at the card, then ripped it up with a cold smile, saying this was all part of the plan. Just then, little Fatty burst through the door, out of breath and panicked. He told Lu he had just seen Qian leaving the shop. Lu stayed calm, explaining that Qian had tried to buy the Watermelon Ninja design but he didn't sell. Little Fatty, shocked, asked why he refused. Lu only replied coolly, asking what brought him there. Little Fatty revealed something worse. Zhang Chun, the boss of Pure Goods, had come to him with the same offer of 10,000. Lu was surprised and asked why Zhang approached him. Fatty explained that since he'd been around the card world for a while, he had a bit of a reputation, but he swore he'd never betray a friend, even if he was broke. Brothers before business, that was his code. But Lu Ming just looked at him like he was crazy and told him he should have sold it. 10,000 was 10,000, and they couldn't just let that kind of money walk away. Fatty was confused, saying it was Lu's special creation, his secret recipe, and the market would be full of copies by tomorrow. Lu Ming just smirked and explained that's exactly why he had only made 300 cards in the last 10 days, so he could drop them all at once today. He was surprised at how loyal little Fatty was. So he told him to call Pure Goods right away and sell the design while it was still valuable. Fatty agreed but then paused and asked why Lu didn't sell it himself when Qian made the offer. Lu just grinned and said some secrets weren't meant to be spoiled. Meanwhile, Watermelon Ninja was blowing up everywhere. Card creators were rushing to make their own versions, but Lu Ming was the one dominating the spotlight. Online, people couldn't stop talking about him. Some said he crushed challenges 2 at a time, others were calling him a machine, and many were demanding duels with him. Even influencers were hyping him up, joking that he could build you a family and a card empire. News channels joined in too, bringing in experts for their take. One said the card was nothing special and Lu Ming just got lucky. Another agreed, saying it was all about timing and hype, not actual skill. But they admitted one thing, he sure knew how to go viral. Far away, in a secret base, a group was analyzing him too. They concluded the same, he wasn't a true illusion master, just smart with business. A simple, low-tier card that used minimal energy had somehow created a massive impact. Among them was a masked man in a strange outfit. He didn't say much, but the chaos around Lu Ming had definitely caught his attention. Then the scene flipped. A camera crew was on set. The director yelled action, and a pretty girl was about to take off her jacket when suddenly Lu Ming appeared, handing her an ice cream cone. He told her to cool off, and the director shouted, "Cut," calling it perfect. Turns out, Lu Ming was filming a commercial. The crew was impressed, saying he did better than most influencers on his very first try. Lu Ming laughed it off, saying he was still learning. The director called him too modest and assured him the payment was already on the way. Right then, Lu's phone buzzed. Little Fatty peeked at the screen and freaked out. It was $500,000 already in their account. He started yelling that they were rich, saying filming ads made way more than selling cards. He even announced he was quitting magic to become Lu Ming's agent. Lu Ming just smiled and said his next goal was to make $100 million, throw it in the bank, and live off the interest. Then he turned serious and told Fatty not to get carried away. This hype wouldn't last forever. If they wanted to stay hot, they'd need something fresh every week. But since he didn't have new ideas yet, the safest move was to go back to selling cards for now. Little Fatty looked a little down but tried to stay positive. He said at least the debt was gone, and he'd even made some side cash thanks to Lu Ming's fame. Then he added that 2 e-com platforms wanted Lu Ming for promos tomorrow and asked how he even came up with this whole video gig idea. Lu Ming teased him, saying it took brains, something Fatty clearly didn't have. Fatty just laughed and admitted it was true. Since it was late, Fatty offered to call a ride and drop him at the shop. But Lu Ming waved him off, saying he wanted to walk around a bit. Fatty looked confused, asking if he didn't just get here, but Lu brushed it off with an awkward laugh, saying it was just a slip of the tongue. They said their goodbyes, and Lu Ming walked off alone. His debt was gone. He finally had money. This world had new rules, sure, but deep down it was still the same game, winners and losers, grinding for fame and fortune. He kicked a soda can down the street, thinking about how his past life was behind him. Now, he was ready to see just how far he could climb in this one. Fast forward a month. Somewhere in the ruins of a destroyed site, a thug picked up a broken card piece and showed it off, saying the design looked wild and might be valuable. Another guy tried to snatch it, but he shoved him back, saying there were probably more pieces scattered around. The place looked completely wrecked. Later that day, a luxury car screeched to a stop in front of Lu Ming's shop. Lu hopped out and called Fatty to help him return it before midnight so he wouldn't get charged for another day. Fatty laughed from the passenger seat, teasing that Lu was supposed to buy it. Lu just shrugged, saying no ad jobs came in that week, so he had to save money. Fatty called him stingy, and they both laughed. That's when a rough-looking guy walked up, Shanju, a thug who used to push Lu Ming around. Lu narrowed his eyes, warning him that this was downtown and he'd call the cops if Shanju caused trouble. But Shanju quickly raised his hands and said he wasn't here for conflict. Instead, he pulled out 2 shiny card fragments and said Lu Ming might be interested. Normally, when cards break in fights or failed tests, they lose their powers. But researchers still like to study the leftover patterns. Lu Ming took a closer look. The designs on these 2 pieces weren't ordinary. They were complicated and definitely rare. He asked where they came from. Shanju explained he'd found them a couple of days ago near the border, after a big clash where lots of people didn't make it. He said he grabbed the pieces afterward. Lu Ming kept studying the fragments, realizing they were valuable. Shanju leaned in, telling him to just name a price. Lu pretended to think, then said he could only offer 150 credits per piece. Without hesitation, Shanju agreed. The deal was done. But deep down, Lu Ming felt something was off. Lu Ming took the card fragments into his little lab to test them out. After a while, he slammed his hand on the table in frustration. The pieces weren't giving him any info at all. No level, no type, nothing. Basically, Junk. Still, he wasn't ready to give up. He grabbed a blank card, attached one of the fragments, and slid it into the reader. He pressed the button, waited, and at first, nothing. Then, out of nowhere, he felt someone breathing right next to his ear. Lu Ming freaked out and spun around, only to see a gorgeous woman smiling at him. He blinked, confused, thinking it had to be some kind of illusion. She didn't say anything, just looked at him with soft, gentle eyes and reached out to hold his hand. His face went red instantly, and to make things worse, his nose even started bleeding. It felt way too real. He thought to himself that if illusions like this existed in his old world, maybe he wouldn't have stayed single for so long. Laughing nervously, he muttered that she could do whatever she wanted. But then things took a turn. She pulled out a knife. Lu Ming, still dazed, didn't even notice. She raised it, ready to strike, but just before anything could happen, the machine glitched. The whole illusion shattered. Lu Ming shot up, annoyed. He groaned that it stopped at the worst moment and realized the fragment didn't have enough energy to keep running. He tossed the useless card aside, calling it complete trash. Then he remembered the other piece, the triangle-shaped one that looked more complex. His curiosity lit up again. He joked to himself that maybe this one would also bring out more pretty girls, then quickly slotted it into a new blank card. The moment he did, the energy coming from it felt strange. It was wild, unstable. His body twisted, his head pounded, and he started coughing. Something wasn't right. When he looked up, he froze in shock. Standing before him wasn't another illusion of a girl. It was a massive creature, towering and fierce. Lu Ming panicked, waving his hands and shouting that it was all a misunderstanding, telling it to chill. But the creature didn't even look at him. Instead, it charged straight past. Lu Ming quickly turned to see what it was after, and that's when he spotted it. A sleek black cat, calm and majestic, moving with quiet confidence. The cat walked forward slowly, then leapt high into the air, landing right on the giant's head. It opened its mouth, and a wave of dark energy formed. A glowing phantom image of a cat's head appeared in the air. With one powerful bite, the giant's head was wiped out instantly. Lu Ming just stood there, totally speechless. Then he took a step back, heart racing. The black cat landed right in front of him, eyes glowing sharp, giving off this crazy pressure like it was about to pounce. When it raised its little paw, Lu Ming swore it felt like a giant claw pressing down on his head. He understood instantly, if he moved even a little, he was finished. The harmless cute kitty vibe was gone. What stood there now looked more like a beast. Shaking but trying to stay cool, he slowly reached out, hoping to calm it down. He even gave a weak smile and tried to act playful, like he was saying, "Hey buddy, I'm harmless, maybe we can be friends?" The cat just stared at him with those creepy golden eyes and that tiny pink nose. Lu Ming kept babbling, saying stuff like, "More friends means more chances, right?" But then their eyes locked, and that's when everything went crazy. A crack suddenly ripped open in the space around them. It grew wider and wider, like time itself was being eaten away. Lu Ming laughed awkwardly and admitted the whole cute act was just a stall for time. He tossed up a peace sign, shouted a goofy goodbye, and dove straight into the void. The rift snapped shut right behind him. He hit the ground with a boom. People nearby thought it was an earthquake or something weird. Black smoke rose from broken card pieces as Lu Ming gasped for air. He muttered that it had been way too close and cursed the fragments, swearing that Shanju would definitely pay for dumping that junk on him. But then, footsteps. He froze. The black cat had followed him, and this time, it felt way too real. Lu Ming freaked out, shouting in shock, but before he could even react, the cat's tail shot straight into his mouth. Everything went dark. When he opened his eyes again, he was no longer in the real world. It looked like a dreamlike ocean with red skies stretching forever. Energy swirled around him, strange but familiar, almost like it belonged to him. That's when it hit him. He was inside his own sea of consciousness. The most important place for a card master, where their origin card was kept. If this space was damaged, everything could collapse. Lu Ming panicked, shouting for his origin card. That's when a massive glowing card floated up in front of him. And right there, the black cat appeared again, opening its mouth like it was about to chomp down on it. Lu Ming freaked out. That card wasn't just an item, it was his life. He screamed, desperate, but the cat didn't care. It bit right into the glowing card, and with a loud crack, it shattered into pieces. Lu Ming went pale, then burst out in anger, calling the cat names and charging straight at it. But before he could even reach, arrows rained down from above. They hit him hard, leaving him stunned. As he dropped into the water, he noticed the cat's tail had sharpened into a weapon, aimed right at his chest. He froze, sure this was the end. But then, the tail slowly softened back to normal. It splashed into the water in front of him. The cat, which had looked unstoppable before, now looked weak. Its leg was hurt, still bleeding from that earlier fight. For the first time, Lu Ming saw it not as a beast, but as something vulnerable. Lu Ming finally saw a chance. Smiling, he reached toward the black cat. Surprisingly, the cat didn't resist, it just kept staring. Lu Ming knelt down, saying he wasn't there to cause harm, and gently started healing its injured leg. He told the cat to stay still, promising to help even though he didn't have much energy left. While treating it, he glanced at the broken origin card and wondered if it could be fixed. Then he spoke casually, saying if the cat needed a place to hang out, it could stay with him. Only one condition though, it shouldn't bite his card again, because that thing was fragile. He pointed at the card and added that if he was gone, the cat would have to deal with finding another human partner, which would just be a hassle. Finally, he joked that if the cat didn't reply, he'd just take its silence as a yes. Then the scene shifted. Somewhere else, Shanju, the guy who sold him the broken fragments, was on the ground, badly beaten. Crying, he swore he had already shared everything he knew. He said he couldn't remember which customer had bought which piece since he'd been selling so many lately. Desperate, he dropped to his knees, begging for mercy. In front of him stood a tall figure in black robes. The hood covered most of his face, showing only a glowing blue eye and two horns poking out. Behind him loomed a massive purple beast with no face, only a giant mouth and a long tongue shaped like a hand. The creature raised its foot, ready to stomp as broken bodies lay scattered around. Shanju begged again, but the foot still came down. The hooded figure then raised a card with a black cat design on it. Staring at it, he muttered that it was already too late, the card had no life left. He asked it where it had gone, and who had taken it. Next morning, the world looked normal again. Birds flew over the streets as Lu Ming stepped outside, stretching. Across the road, a brand new card shop had finally opened, running promos. People around were buzzing about it, wondering how other shops could even compete. But then the news spread, apparently, that same shop had been attacked during the night. Every guard had been taken out, and every single card was gone, even the super rare Zai chain. Folks compared it to someone robbing a high-security vault. Some even said the thieves had been strong enough to summon a Kurenuma giant. Rescue teams were already on site with dogs, warning the crowd to stay back because these people could literally smash through walls. Even the police were no match. Turns out, Fatty's shop had been trashed too. Same with Old Black's place. Pretty much everyone had been hit. Lu Ming stood there quietly panicking, realizing he had spent the whole night sleeping in his shop. If those people had chosen his place, he might not have made it. That's when he noticed, his shop was the only one left untouched. Just then, little Fatty came running in. Lu Ming asked why he was there, half expecting him to borrow money again. But Fatty laughed and said no, this time he actually brought good news. The school had just sent out internship notices, and he'd rushed over to make sure Lu Ming got his. Proudly, he said he was always looking out for him. Lu Ming thanked little Fatty for the notice but tossed the paper aside without a second thought. Fatty looked confused, but Lu Ming just shook his head, saying he wasn't doing that again. He still remembered the last so-called internship, basically the school dumping students as free labor. He'd spent days digging ore and got nothing but a measly 5 points of extra credit. Total scam. Fatty tried to convince him, pointing out this one was at the Amira or mine, a super famous place full of energy stones that could power cultivators for years. But Lu Ming didn't care. He had more important things to focus on. So instead, he asked Fatty if he had any combat cards that burned about 60 energy points. He explained that low-tier cards were useless in unsafe areas, and he wanted to build better ones to push his stats higher. Fatty grinned and pulled one out of his pocket. It was a 1-star Savage Collision Bull card, strong, simple, and exactly 60 energy points. Perfect. Lu Ming bought it on the spot for 998 yuan. Later, when he checked online, he found out it was only worth 50. He groaned, realizing he'd been scammed again, but shrugged it off. A win was still a win. He studied the card's design. The bull didn't use much energy, but to power it up properly, it needed 3,000 high-speed watermelon ninjas. Yeah, that's an actual thing. Way faster than normal cards. So, he made 9 of them in one sitting, and it boosted his energy by 0.05%. Not a huge gain, but better than nothing. The problem? That kind of training burned way too much energy, and those cards were tough to sell. Definitely not sustainable. That's when Lu Ming got an idea. He grabbed the activation machine and decided to try sealing the bull card into a blank card. Sealing was tricky business. It required exactly 60 energy points, no more, no less. Timing had to be perfect, or the whole thing would fail. With stronger cards, it could even be dangerous. Still, he slid the card in and hit the button. The Savage Collision Bull burst to life. The countdown began. 3, 2, 1. Lu Ming shouted for the blank card to deploy. The bull came charging straight at him. He panicked, hands shaking, frantically searching for the blank card. Just when it looked like he was done for, he clapped his hands together, and a puff of white smoke appeared. When it cleared, the sealed card was actually there, and the bull vanished. He'd pulled it off, barely. Lu Ming dropped to the floor, gasping with relief, clutching the new card. But then he noticed cracks along both ends. Only the bull's head was showing. He frowned, muttering if maybe the cat had chewed on it. But when he compared it to the blueprint, the patterns matched perfectly. No errors. So what was going on? Lu Ming hopped on his computer and started digging into energy source cards. That's when he found out about something called segmented packaging. Basically, if a card's power is too much, the top creators split it into smaller pieces and then fuse them later. Lucky for him, that explained why his card didn't fully break earlier. He tried again, fired up the bull card, and just barely managed to seal it. This time, when he opened it, the design was perfect, clean lines, no cracks. The two bull cards had merged into one. He got so hyped he even called out to his cat like it was his best buddy. Somewhere far away, the cat sneezed like it actually heard him. Then things got even crazier. Normally, segmented packaging only worked with one type of energy, but Lu Ming's card could handle similar types too. He didn't panic, just kept going, and one by one the pieces showed different parts of the bull. When he merged them together, the full image finally came alive. He was buzzing. This was his first real step toward becoming a card master. But then the card glowed weirdly, and out popped not a massive bull, but a tiny baby cow. Lu Ming froze, totally confused. Did he mess it up? But when he checked the stats, he realized it wasn't a fail. The card needed 300 energy points to activate, way more than he had right now. Still, even without using it, the card boosted his speed and energy by 100 times. That alone was wild. And he hadn't even unlocked the hidden Ninja Watermelon ability yet. Since it required that much energy, it had to be super valuable. For now, all he needed was to get stronger. He grinned, named it Savage Collision Bull, and kept it safe. Right after that, his screen flashed with a new location, a Mira or mine. South of Qingming City, 4,800 meters above sea level, more than 300 mining zones. It was basically the pride of the whole region. And this was just the start. The next day, the interns rolled up to Resni Energy or Refinery for their internship. Everyone was unloading bags, and honestly, it felt more like a school trip than work. Some even brought snacks and game consoles, treating it like a mini vacation. That's when Instructor An, fiery red hair, tall, and full of energy, called them out. She told everyone to put away the snacks and games or else she'd get strict. She was only 25, a 3-star elementalist, and just like them, it was her first time here too. The interns got excited to explore, especially since the place had its own entertainment areas. Even Lu Ming, who didn't plan to come at first, ended up showing up. Alongside him was a dude with orange-dyed hair and darker skin, who couldn't stop staring at Instructor An like she was some main quest reward. Lu Ming noticed and decided to mess with him. He looked at the instructor, puckered his lips jokingly, and said something like, "Yeah, I like you." The orange-haired guy froze, clearly annoyed, and Lu Ming just waved it off like it was nothing. But the guy didn't take it lightly. His face said it all. He was ready for a showdown. Lu Ming felt the pressure and reached into his pocket, gripping his cowhide card, just in case things got messy. Right then, a calm voice cut through the tension. Someone reminded them that Instructor An had already asked everyone to check into the dorms. The orange-haired guy left without another word. Lu Ming followed, thanked the guy who spoke up, and then noticed another figure nearby, silver hair, blue outfit, and a fancy green dragon-patterned bow strapped to his back. That was Xiaoyu, a 17-year-old archer from the Yu clan. Xiaoyu told Lu Ming to watch out for the orange-haired guy, Chang Liang. Apparently, when Chang snapped, even Xiaoyu stayed out of his way. Lu Ming noticed Xiaoyu's bow looked crazy expensive, though it only had one arrow. They introduced themselves. Lu Ming was a second year, Xiaoyu was a first year. When Xiaoyu saw Lu Ming's metalsmith badge, they started chatting casually. Soon, they reached the famous cultivation canteen. This wasn't some normal dining hall. The meals were cooked with spirit herbs and beast meat, boosting your strength just by eating. Even the dorms had levels. Higher-ranked ones could transform into training rooms with insane energy fields. Some interns crowded around the simulation machines, whispering about how they even had stuff like virtual girlfriends in there. Everyone was geeking out like it was an amusement park. Then the refinery staff showed up to explain the rules. It was simple: mine energy stones, earn points. Every 100 grams gave 1 point. Points could be traded for food, dorm upgrades, or whatever you needed. No limit. The harder you worked, the more rewards you got. The interns got hyped, ready to grind like gamers. Lu Ming just smiled while everyone else buzzed with excitement. Xiaoyu noticed and asked if he'd been here before. Lu Ming said he'd visited once during his first year. Xiaoyu admitted he was actually super excited too but was hiding it. His grandpa had taught him to stay calm no matter what, even if the sky fell. Lu Ming kept that in mind. Xiaoyu mixed truth with bluffing, sharp enough that you had to be careful around him. Lu Ming walked off, leaving Xiaoyu a bit puzzled. In his head, Lu Ming was thinking, no way can this guy find out I'm planning to swipe some more. That'd be a disaster. The next morning, Instructor An led everyone to their first day at the mine. She hyped them up with a chant, yelling about splitting mountains and breaking rocks, and the interns shouted it back like a pep rally. Trucks rolled into mine shaft 59. The place was glowing with blue ores, split between outer and inner zones. The deeper you went, the better the resources. Everyone got to work right away. Chang Liang went full throttle, filling his basket and soaking up the attention. Soon, all eyes turned to Lu Ming. His basket was empty, and he was just sitting there, happily eating instant noodles. The others started mocking him. They joked about how he was a second-year failure, couldn't pass, and was stuck in a lame internship. They laughed that he brought noodles, cause he knew he wouldn't earn enough for real food. After flexing their own full baskets, they left, tossing one last jab about him sleeping in the mine. Lu Ming didn't respond. He just kept slurping his noodles. Then a girl with bright green hair walked over. She had a calm, friendly vibe, and her basket was already looking solid. She noticed Lu Ming's empty one and gave him some advice. Maybe he wasn't syncing his strength with the ore properly. He needed to stay calm. She even traded 2 energy stones for some of his food. Lu Ming was surprised but thanked her. After she left, he thought she was actually really nice. Then he stretched, waited for the area to clear, and finally made his move. He grabbed the stones and started absorbing their energy. No digging needed. At the same time, he crafted simple 1-star energy cards, one hand on the stone, the other working the card. Time flew. A whole month later, he had stacks of 1-star cards piled up. With enough of them ready, he could finally level up and recharge his own energy. Lu Ming kept grinding nonstop, pouring all his energy into leveling up and crafting stronger cards. Hours slipped by as he absorbed ore and worked his hands like a machine. Finally, he leaned back, took a deep breath, and felt proud. His energy had gone up by around 30 points. But just as he relaxed, he heard footsteps. They got louder, closer. He froze, thinking he'd been caught. A group of miners passed by, but not one of them even glanced at him. No one cared. At the end of the group, though, 2 figures stood out. One was a girl about his age, with reddish-pink hair and striking purple eyes. She wore a mask that covered most of her face. The way they moved didn't feel like normal miners at all. Especially the pink-haired girl. Her steps were too precise, too sharp. Lu Ming wondered if they were thieves too. But since they didn't notice him, he didn't stick around to find out. He packed up his stuff and slipped back to his little hidden camp to rest for the night. The next morning, the truth hit the interns hard. All those luxury rest areas they were promised? Totally fake. Even the cheapest lunchbox cost 5 points. They were exhausted, cranky, and already broke. Some of them grumbled about how they'd have to grind 10 hours a day just to eat, never mind powering up. A few even whispered about complaining to the school once this was over. Instructor An showed up before the whining got worse. She told them straight up this internship was meant to show them what real life was like. That was enough to light a fire under Chang Liang, the orange-haired guy who had a thing for her. He puffed out his chest, shouted that everyone had to hang in there, and hyped up the group. For a moment, the energy came back. They promised to mine double, maybe even triple the amount they did yesterday. But when they reached the mining site, all of them froze. Every bit of ore was gone. The place was wiped clean. Meanwhile, Lu Ming was 2 steps ahead. He'd already cleared 2 mining zones on his own and felt his energy spike by dozens of points. At this pace, he'd hit 300 before the internship was even over. Then he could finally use his ID card and unlock that crimson panel. Lost in thought, he suddenly stopped. Right in front of him was a dark cave entrance. A warning sign read, "Critical work zone, no entry." Another one said, "Danger, risk of collapse." He stared at it for a moment. If the signs were right, the cave was unstable. But if no one else dared to enter, maybe that meant better or inside. Risky, yeah, but also tempting. After a pause, he decided to check it out. "Just a quick look," he muttered, stepping into the darkness. Drip, 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 water echoed as it dripped from the ceiling. Lu Ming moved carefully, sticking to the shadows in case others were nearby. The deeper he went, the heavier the air felt. Still no ore. He was just about to turn back when something caught his eye, and the sight made his skin crawl. Lu Ming turned around and spotted this tiny, worn-out tent in the middle of nowhere. For a second, he thought maybe someone else had the same idea and came here early to mine. On the ground, there was even an empty soda can, which made things feel even weirder. He unzipped the tent, peeked inside, and there was Fatty, all curled up and hugging a green-haired girl who was snoring and drooling. At first, Lu Ming was shocked, because she looked exactly like the girl who gave them energy stones yesterday. But when Fatty woke up and rubbed his eyes, it all made sense. Turns out, Fatty had a crush on that girl, Xinghe. He knew this internship was tough, so he came early, thinking he could show up for the girls and maybe impress her. But the girl in his arms? Yeah, not real. Just a doll he made to look like Xinghe. Lu Ming couldn't help teasing him, asking if he actually used the doll. Fatty panicked, shaking his head like crazy, saying it wasn't like that at all. He just liked her a lot but didn't have the courage to confess. The doll, he explained, helped him not feel so lonely at night. He even got a little teary while admitting all this. Lu Ming patted his shoulder, told him to relax, and then changed the subject. He needed Fatty's help creating a new card, and Fatty would play a part in the illusion scene. But before Fatty could answer, Lu Ming added a playful threat. If he refused, he'd tell Xinghe about his cuddle buddy. That worked instantly. Fatty agreed right away, begging him not to spill his secret. They both laughed it off, and then Lu Ming asked him to guide the way to the mining zone. Fatty led him to this insane spot filled with glowing energy ore. Lu Ming was stunned. The place was overflowing with pure energy, 10 times stronger than anything outside. Just touching the ore made him feel that raw power. Right then, he decided this would be his new base: eat, sleep, grind, everything right here. But Fatty warned him to be careful. This place was too close to the main mine, and workers came in shifts non-stop. If Lu Ming wanted to stay, he'd have to keep a low profile. Lu Ming nodded, still busy scooping up as much ore as he could. Meanwhile, not far away, a group of workers were drilling. The two people Lu Ming had run into before were there too, watching over the work. The girl held a blueprint, looking stressed, while the lead worker suddenly yelled for everyone to stop. They had already reached the planned depth but found nothing. The worker looked at the girl, asking what to do now. She told them to keep digging. He refused, saying going deeper was dangerous, the whole area could collapse. Another worker with a scanner backed him up, but the girl wasn't ready to give up. She calmly promised that if they dug deeper, they'd get 5 times the usual pay. Hearing that number, the workers were clearly shaken. The scanner guy especially looked tempted. By the 4th day, the mining was starting to break people down. The interns finally dropped their tools, collapsed on the ground, and groaned in frustration. One of them muttered that he couldn't dig up another piece of this ore, even if it meant going hungry. Another said this was hands down the worst moment of his life and that the mine felt cursed. None of them had eaten a proper meal in 3 days, and it showed. Instructor and noticed Xiaoyu was missing, and no one had seen him. Someone also mentioned Lu Ming, the second-year guy who always lived on instant noodles. Nobody had spotted him either, so they guessed he probably bailed. Hearing that, Instructor and felt guilty, admitting it was his fault. He'd never run an intern group before and didn't realize just how rough things would get. Meanwhile, deeper in the mine, Chang Liang and Xiaoyu were walking together. Chang Liang asked if Lu Ming might have gone this way. Xiaoyu said he wasn't sure, which surprised Chang Liang. He pointed out that they had already searched all the main areas, and if Lu Ming was still around, this was the only spot left. He also told Xiaoyu not to lie, since he didn't want Instructor and to stress out even more. Somewhere else, Lu Ming was busy working with his cards. He counted out loud, reaching 300 points of energy cultivation, and celebrated hitting the milestone. Cards were scattered everywhere, and he picked up one called Tyrant Fist, ready to test it. But just as he was about to activate it, Chang Liang and Xiaoyu showed up behind him. Chang Liang immediately accused him of stealing ore. Lu Ming tried to play it off, laughing nervously and saying it was just a coincidence they met there. Chang Liang didn't buy it and called him a thief. He even tried to cite some mining law but completely blanked, so he looked at Xiaoyu for backup. Xiaoyu smoothly explained that, according to the rules, energy ore belonged to the government, and taking it without permission was theft. Chang Liang quickly agreed, nodding like it was his own point. Lu Ming crossed his arms and asked if they had proof. Turns out, Xiaoyu had been recording everything. He had videos from 4 different angles, catching Lu Ming's entire ore collecting process. That made Lu Ming frustrated. He couldn't believe these two had managed to track him down again. Xiaoyu explained how he figured it out. From the very beginning, he had been keeping an eye on Lu Ming since he knew so much about the internship and then suddenly disappeared. He noticed how the outer ore was mostly low quality, but deeper in, the waste was way higher. Lu Ming was clever, only taking a little at a time so it wouldn't be obvious. But eventually, Xiaoyu dug deep enough to notice. On top of that, he found personal stuff like Lu Ming's instant noodles, which sealed the deal. Realizing he'd been caught, Lu Ming was both annoyed and embarrassed. He thought his hiding place was perfect, but Xiaoyu still found him. The worst part? Even though Lu Ming had a bunch of strong cards, his energy reserves were almost gone. He only had 300 points left, barely enough for one move. It was a gamble, but doing nothing meant guaranteed failure. So, he gripped the card tightly, ready to risk it. Then Xiaoyu suddenly smiled, lifted his phone, and said he had deleted all the evidence. Both Chang Liang and Lu Ming froze, confused by his move. Chang Liang questioned him, getting worked up, but Xiaoyu stayed calm and said he was just testing a hunch, and he was right. Lu Ming stayed silent, not giving anything away. Chang Liang said he'd report everything to Instructor N, but Xiaoyu shot back that without proof, there was no point. Chang Liang argued that he himself was the proof. Before things went further, the ground shook violently. The walls rattled, dust fell from above, and Chang Liang panicked, asking what was happening. Lu Ming quickly threw on his backpack and shouted for everyone to run. The place wasn't safe. Rocks started tumbling down, forcing them to dash out. The workers above felt the quake too, and chaos broke out. People yelled for the supervisors, saying the mine was collapsing. Some workers got hit by falling rocks, and panic spread fast. One guy ran to the foreman shouting that everyone inside was done for. The foreman, however, was staring at something unbelievable below. Out of the rubble, a massive stone door revealed itself, with a strange lock carved into it. The 3 guys below, Lu Ming, Chang Liang, and Xiaoyu, sprinted for safety as the cave shook harder. Chang Liang yelled that he'd warned them something weird was going on all along. As they ran, Chang Liang muttered that everything happening had to be connected to the ore thief. Lu Ming frowned, saying it had nothing to do with him. Chang Liang just shot back that he could explain that to instructor and once they got out safely. Lu Ming didn't argue anymore, but inside he was worried. Stealing or was serious business. He wondered if Xiaoyu really deleted that recording or if the guy was just messing with him. With Xiaoyu, you could never be sure. Meanwhile, somewhere else in the mine, one of the shady miners got a payment notification on his phone. He told the group the deal was done, and now it was time to talk about treasure. The pink-haired girl looked shocked and said there was no treasure here, just junk. But the miner laughed, saying the big stone door wasn't even open yet, so how could she know? He even threatened that if she tried to keep it hidden, he'd spread the news. Once people outside heard there was treasure underground, a crowd would come rushing. The girl didn't even bother arguing. She just told him to do whatever he wanted and started walking away. That left the miner stunned. He shouted after her, not believing she was serious. The tall guy next to her smirked and said they should just let him talk if he wanted to. But then the girl suddenly stopped, turned back, and coldly ordered him to silence everyone there. The tall guy hesitated for a second, then grinned like he was fine with it. The miner panicked and tried calming them down, pointing out there were a lot of workers around. But before he could say more, the tall guy snatched his phone, crushed it, and lifted him into the air like he weighed nothing. The man struggled, begging to be let go, but it was useless. His helmet cracked under the pressure, and he collapsed. The other miners froze in shock. One of them shouted for the foreman, but it was no use. One of the girl's people sneered, asking, "Didn't you say there were a lot of you?" The pink-haired girl ignored the chaos and walked straight to the huge stone door. She pressed her hand against it and frowned. There was some kind of barrier keeping it sealed, and it wasn't going to open easily. Behind her, the tall guy went wild. He kicked one miner so hard the poor guy flew across the chamber and slammed into the stone door, instantly knocked out. The girl didn't even flinch, she just kept studying the door. Then the tall guy grabbed another miner, insulted him for being useless, and tossed him aside like trash. That was enough to make the rest of the miners completely panic. Nobody dared move. Finally, the tall guy spotted movement in the corner. Fatty was there, hiding and shaking like a leaf. He tried to laugh it off with a nervous joke, asking if they'd had lunch yet, but the tall guy dragged him out and threw him to the ground. The girl gave one last order, get rid of the workers and make it look like an accident. She wanted the scene staged like a cave-in so no one would suspect the truth. Fatty, too, was to be buried with the rest. Fatty panicked and blurted out that he was an illusionist and actually knew about the strange barrier. He claimed he read about it in an old book called The Mysteries of the Heavenly Gate. The tall guy raised an eyebrow when Fatty called it rat tail juice, clearly confused. Fatty jumped up, talking fast. He said most barriers needed puzzles or codes, but this one was different. The creator was eccentric, so the barrier could actually break itself. The pink-haired girl wasn't sure if he was bluffing, but she told him to prove it. If he managed to open it, she'd not only spare him but even let him take treasure, except for one thing she wanted. Or, if he preferred, she'd just pay him. Fatty was stunned but excited. The tall guy nodded and said she always kept her word. So Fatty explained his method. No fancy tricks, just hit the door really hard. The girl looked doubtful but told him to try. The tall guy cracked his knuckles, flexed like it was his specialty, and started pounding on the massive stone door. Punch after punch, nothing happened. The barrier didn't even scratch. Finally, he touched the door, winced in pain, and turned back, saying it was useless and that Fatty was clearly lying. Fatty freaked out and begged them to listen. He said it wasn't about raw strength, it was about rhythm, like a music band. To prove his point, he wobbled his belly, did a silly dance, and even sang a random tune about wine, trying to sell the act. He also dropped a hint that some of his classmates were still trapped deeper in the mine. The tall guy didn't buy it and told the pink-haired girl he was wasting their time, but she paused, remembering that her master had once mentioned something called the Heavenly Gate Enigma. Maybe it was real after all. She decided to give Fatty a chance but warned him, if he played games, he'd be the first to go, and his classmates would follow. Fatty quickly agreed, swearing he was being honest. Inside though, he almost laughed at himself for believing his own lie. His real plan was simple, reach his classmates. Instructor and might look gentle, but she was a level 3 elemental mage. Even if she couldn't win outright, she'd buy him enough time to call for help. If things went south, he could still escape. With that thought, he bolted upstairs, hyping himself up about how clever he was. Hanging around Lu Ming really had sharpened him. Meanwhile, while the pink-haired girl and her bodyguard were busy cleaning things up, Lu Ming, Xiaoyu, and Chang Liang were trying to find a way out. They sprinted through the tunnels until suddenly Lu Ming stopped in his tracks, eyes wide. Xiaoyu was sweating, staring ahead, and Chang Liang froze too. None of them recognized where they were anymore. Just then, another student spotted them and called out, letting instructor and know Xiaoyu and Chang Liang were there too. But the exit was completely blocked with heavy rocks. Everyone checked their phones, no signal at all. Xinghe, the girl with green hair, confirmed her phone had no service either. The students began to panic, wondering what to do, but instructor and stayed calm. She reminded everyone that something this big wouldn't go unnoticed. If they couldn't be reached, rescue teams would definitely come. They had supplies, so all they needed to do was wait it out safely. Xiaoyu tried to calm things down between him and Chang Liang, saying both their families just wanted peace now. But Chang Liang, already fed up, told him to keep quiet. Xiaoyu rolled his eyes like, fine, whatever. Meanwhile, Lu Ming was lost in his own thoughts. He figured at least this disaster worked in his favor. Nobody was pointing fingers at him. But then he froze. Something felt wrong, like he was forgetting something important. And boom, it hit him. Fatty. He quickly scanned the crowd, worried his buddy had been trapped when the mine collapsed. But then he spotted him, walking around with two strangers. Relieved, Lu Ming rushed over, teasing Fatty that he really popped up out of nowhere. Fatty, looking nervous, greeted him back. Lu Ming clapped him on the shoulder, joking that he thought Fatty went full hero mode. Fatty quickly told him not to jinx it. Lu Ming smirked and asked about all the dirt on him. Fatty scratched his head, mumbling that it was complicated. Lu Ming eyed the two strangers with him, feeling like he'd seen them before. By then, the crowd started noticing too. Classmates gathered around, asking if it was true that Fatty had found a secret realm. Someone connected it to the mine collapse, saying it finally made sense. Everyone began throwing questions. Where was it? How did he find it? And so on. Fatty told them to chill, promising to explain. Even Xinghe, the green-haired girl, joined in, asking what a secret realm even was. Lu Ming explained in his head, secret realms were basically ancient zones left behind by powerful cultivators. Over time, they absorbed tons of energy and turned into rare places full of treasures and training opportunities. Sure, they were loaded with traps and barriers, but the rewards inside were worth it. That's why everyone went crazy for them. Fatty was excited but still needed those two strangers on his side, since they were the ones who knew how to break the barriers. Classmates were eager, shouting that they were all in. Fatty finally started to relax, but there was still a problem. The path was blocked. For now, they had to stall. Then, out of nowhere, Lu Ming started sniffing the air. Fatty immediately tensed up, sweating bullets. The pink-haired girl noticed and asked what he was doing. Lu Ming casually said he had this special ability, super smell. That made Fatty even more nervous. Lu Ming pretended to pick something up. He said he smelled perfume, like sweet-scented wine. But then, he paused and said it wasn't perfume. He smelled something metallic, like iron. The whole group froze. Some doubted him, asking if he had a dog's nose. Others suggested maybe it came from the miners crushed together during the collapse. But still, the girl looked way too clean for that. Fatty was freaking out inside, worried Lu Ming would expose him. The pink-haired girl and her tall bodyguard quickly explained that everyone else in the mine got caught in the collapse, and only the two of them made it out. Lu Ming wasn't fully convinced. He squinted and teased her, half-jokingly asking if she was hiding something. The girl stiffened, grabbed her bodyguard's arm, and leaned close to Lu Ming. He flinched, then she calmly explained, it was just her monthly cycle, nothing more. That shut everyone up for a second. The awkward silence didn't last long though, because suddenly, chaos broke out. People bolted toward the secret realm entrance, shouting that first come meant first served. And, the elemental mage, tried to stop them, warning that they had no idea what was inside and they should wait for rescue. But nobody listened. They yelled back that if they waited, the higher-ups would take everything. No one wanted to miss this chance. Xiaoyu turned to Lu Ming, amazed at his nose, asking what kind of skill that was. Lu Ming just laughed, admitting he made it up to test the girl's reaction. Xiaoyu looked impressed, asking if he figured anything out. Lu Ming wasn't fully sure what was going on, but he felt like those strangers were definitely hiding something. Xiaoyu rubbed his chin, said he had a gut feeling, and suddenly dashed off. Lu Ming blinked in confusion before running after him. They arrived at this massive doorway glowing with a magical barrier. Everyone was stunned. Some whispered that it had to be the secret realm. A few were already shouting that they should try opening it, while others suggested breaking it down. That's when Fatty dramatically stepped up. He raised his hand and told everyone to watch his movements. Then, like some kind of music conductor, he started waving his arms around and told them to follow his rhythm. People just stared, wondering what he was even doing, but then he added some goofy singing, hyping everyone up about treasures and power waiting inside. And it actually worked. Everyone got fired up. They started powering up their skills and attacking in sync. For a moment, it looked like a wild group dance, light and energy blasting everywhere. Finally, a huge explosion shook the place, black smoke poured out, and ice shards scattered on the ground. Fatty stood there proud, like he just pulled off a miracle. But then reality hit. Everyone who joined the attack looked exhausted, drained of their energy. Some admitted they had nothing left. Others shouted to push one more time, thinking maybe the door was already cracked. People wondered if someone messed up the timing, or if the rhythm wasn't followed. Some pointed fingers, saying all their power had been wasted, especially Fatty's. Fatty froze, sweating. Then he dropped to his knees, admitting he made it all up. He didn't know how to open the door at all. He was just showing off. The crowd groaned, furious at being tricked, and rushed him, venting their frustration. Poor Fatty was screaming as they piled on him. Off to the side, the pink-haired girl stayed calm. Her tall bodyguard crossed his arms and told her it looked like Fatty had fooled them again, asking what they should do now. She replied that she'd handle opening the door herself, and as for the others, they could do whatever they wanted. But she gave one strict order, not to touch Lu Ming. She wanted him brought to her place once this was all over. The bodyguard was shocked, asking if she actually liked him. She immediately snapped back, denying it. Then, with a sharp smile, she explained she just wanted to make sure Lu Ming couldn't run, keep him trapped, and watch him slowly fade away under her control. While everyone else was stressing, Lu Ming was calmly checking out the sealed door. He touched the surface, studied the strange writing on it, and acted like he totally had it figured out. Xiaoyu asked if he knew how to open it, and Lu Ming confidently said it was easy for him. What looked complicated to others was just basic math to him. He explained that if he let his energy flow into the barrier, he could track the pattern and read it like data, and data was his specialty. Then, all of a sudden, Lu Ming shouted that he got it. Xiaoyu spun around in surprise, but Lu Ming was gone. Just a second ago he was right there, and now he had already stepped through the barrier. Inside, Lu Ming was breathing heavily, looking around. He found himself surrounded by tall stone walls, all lined up like a massive maze. He realized the barrier must have been a portal, sending him straight into the secret realm. The thought of being alone there made him grin. If no one else was around, then all the treasure had to be his. He got so hyped he even started singing about being rich, celebrating like it was New Year's, and joking about bringing money home to his mom. He wandered deeper into the maze until he spotted something shiny, a treasure chest. Excited, he ran over and opened it, only to find a piece of paper inside. His excitement crashed instantly. The note congratulated him for activating the limit door. It explained that the whole place was just an illusion maze. If he could find the exit, he'd unlock the real treasure. But there were no supplies inside, so he'd have to survive on his own. Lu Ming's jaw dropped. It wasn't a treasure realm at all, just a giant trap. The only way forward was escaping the maze. And when he realized it was infinite, his mood sank even further. In his old world, infinite mazes were just computer games, but here illusions could make them real. He thought about how, technically, infinite mazes could be solved by expanding from one point outward. But if the exit was way too far, it was basically impossible. That hit him hard, and he let out a frustrated yell. Right then, he heard soft footsteps. A black cat appeared. It was the same one he had helped before. This time it looked healthier, like it had completely recovered. Lu Ming noticed it was carrying something in its mouth. When he looked closer, his eyes widened. The cat dropped the item in front of him and disappeared again. It was his source card, the one he thought he had lost. Lu Ming freaked out when the black cat ran off and chased after it, complaining that after everything they'd been through, it was just ditching him like that. He begged it at least to leave his card behind since that card was basically his lifeline, but the cat didn't even slow down. Meanwhile, back at the sealed door, Xiaoyu and the pink-haired girl were still figuring things out. She thought the barrier looked like a mechanism set up by whoever built the place, and she didn't want to mess with it blindly. Then she remembered how Lu Ming vanished earlier and wondered if he had triggered it somehow. She realized her idea of attacking it might work, but with their current strength, there was no way. Whoever set this up was way stronger than them. Still, after a moment's hesitation, she reached out. To her shock, the door actually opened. Both she and Xiaoyu froze. On the other side, Fatty was still getting cornered. He cried that he'd been forced into it, which made everyone stop and demand to know who forced him. They were angry, blaming him for wasting all their energy. Just as he was about to spill, a shadow passed by and the pink-haired girl's bodyguard stepped forward, eyes cold, his presence instantly heavy. Before anyone could react, someone noticed the door opening. The whole crowd turned, gasped, and in the next second chaos broke out. People sprinted toward it, shouting and pushing, everyone desperate to be first. But the pink-haired girl didn't move. She frowned, wondering if Lu Ming was behind it. Meanwhile, Lu Ming was sweet-talking the cat, calling it a good kitty and saying he thought it had abandoned him. The cat swatted him, but he just laughed, asking how it knew where the exit was. He even suggested teaming up to split treasure, promising to buy snacks, cat food, even catnip. The cat just kept walking. When he jokingly offered to find it a girlfriend, the cat smacked him with its tail, making him groan. Back at the door, the students slowed down as they entered. It was dark and surprisingly small. Some grumbled that after all the hype, there was nothing special here. Then suddenly, one of the stone pillars clicked open. Two glowing blue eyes appeared from inside, and then more pairs lit up across the chamber. The glow was so bright it stung their eyes. As they adjusted, they noticed a statue shaped like a foot with a strange crescent moon pattern carved on a plaque. Excited, the group realized it was a card, but it didn't look normal. Its design was unlike anything they'd ever seen. Some whispered it could be a legendary one, and even if not, it was worth a fortune. They quickly agreed to grab it and split the reward since everyone had gone through the struggle together. But just as one guy reached for it, a hand came down hard on his head and slammed him into the ground. He screamed in shock. It turned out the one who pushed the student down was the pink-haired girl's bodyguard. He stood over him calmly, saying none of them were allowed to touch the card. Everyone froze for a second, whispering that this was just the worker guy. But then he introduced himself as Fu Hongming, a level 3 energy warrior. He made it clear, the card was his, and if they wanted to stay safe, they'd better step back. The moment he said level 3, the whole place went quiet. Everyone knew the gap between level 1 and level 3 wasn't small, it was like a beast standing among kids. Nobody dared to move. Then one student suddenly tried to rally the others. He shouted about one-star unity, saying even weak fighters could shine bright if they all worked together. His voice carried a mix of hope and desperation. He turned back to his group, asking why they were scared when there were so many of them. But the others argued back. They reminded him that Fu was 2 whole levels above them, and even when they once faced a 2-star, it didn't end well. Facing a 3-star was way out of their league. The desperate student pointed at Fu's backpack, questioning if he was even legit. Why would a 3-star be pretending to be a minor? But before things got worse, a new voice cut in, saying those men weren't minors at all, they were here for the card. Everyone turned and saw In. The crowd rushed over, calling out to her, accusing Fu of hurting one of their own and trying to take the rare card. They begged her to step in, and raised her hand, telling them to back off because she'd handle it. Fu just sighed, annoyed at himself for not being more careful. He hadn't expected another 3-star to show up, and walked forward, saying she had seen the so-called minors outside and knew those weren't accident wounds. They came from real battles, and she blamed him. She said this whole thing should have been handled by proper investigators, but instead, he had used force and even harmed her student. That was something she couldn't ignore. Fu explained that he had been generous by letting her open the door and that he only wanted the card to leave quietly. But if she was going to stand in his way, then he had no choice. With a heavy stomp, he leapt high into the air, declaring that he would settle things right there, and didn't panic when Fu came flying at her. She twisted her body midair and dodged smoothly. Fu tumbled but landed on his feet like a pro, admitting she wasn't bad at all before gearing up for another round, and raised her hands, and energy surged around her. Wind spun wildly, lifting her into the air as her whole body glowed. She unleashed her move, Wind Ring Burst. The powerful blast slammed into Fu, throwing him across the ground. The students stood frozen, jaws on the floor. They couldn't believe it. The quiet, gentle one they knew was suddenly fierce and unstoppable. Some even whispered she looked like a goddess in that moment, and exhaled, but then her face changed. From the cloud of dust, a red light flared. Fu walked out, completely unharmed. He admitted her attack was strong but said it wasn't enough. He explained the gap between a regular 3-star and someone like him was huge. He wasn't trained in a classroom. He'd survived real battles. His entire body was now glowing, wrapped in a full layer of energy armor, and gasped. Most fighters could only cover small parts of their body, but full body armor was rare and insanely powerful. Her wide area attack couldn't crack it. To break through, you'd need something super focused and ridiculously strong. She glanced at her students. Xiaoyu and the others only had beginner level skills. They weren't nearly strong enough. For the first time, she looked uncertain. Before she could act again, Fu charged and grabbed her head, lifting her off the ground. She cried out in pain as energy sparks flashed. Fu laughed coldly, saying this was how fast a fight could turn and mocking her for looking helpless now. The students were frozen in fear. Even Fatty and Xiaoyu didn't dare move. Then, out of nowhere, another voice echoed through the chamber, demanding that Fu let him go. Everyone turned. It was Chang Liang. He spoke from the heart, reminding everyone how, when he first joined, people made fun of his looks and he had felt useless. But An had always been kind to him, always encouraged him, telling him one day they'd respect him if he worked hard enough. And now, seeing her hurt, he couldn't hold back anymore. He ripped off his wig and threw it aside, stepping forward with fire in his eyes. Fu lowered An, smirking at the boldness of a 1-star kid. But Chang didn't answer. He just dropped into a stance and shouted that Fu was finished. The other students panicked. They thought Chang had lost his mind. Xiaoyu yelled at everyone to shut their eyes immediately. Fatty hesitated but finally covered his face. Chang Liang's eyes and mouth lit up with blinding light, his energy completely out of control. Even Fu instinctively stepped back. Everyone knew this power, Chang's family bloodline. Once, he had lost control and even accidentally sent his teacher to the hospital. He roared, and his whole body erupted in a massive explosion of light that filled the entire chamber. Then, just like that, the brilliance faded. Chang Liang gasped once, then collapsed on the floor, completely knocked out. The students whispered nervously, wondering if it was finally over or if Fu was still standing. Xiaoyu adjusted his glasses and stepped forward. He explained that Chang's light move actually had a weakness. If you closed your eyes, it couldn't affect you. That's why Xiaoyu was ranked number 1 while Chang was only number 2. His real plan had been to strike Fu the moment he opened his eyes. But when Xiaoyu looked up, he froze. Fu was standing there, holding his cheek. His eyes were damaged, and he was coughing hard, clearly in pain. He admitted that Chang's attack had pierced straight through his energy armor and almost messed him up from the inside. Xiaoyu didn't waste the chance. He pulled out his bow, remembering his grandfather's old advice, that the key to battle wasn't the enemy, but keeping your own heart steady like a calm lake, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. He let the arrow fly. It hit Fu right in the chest. Fu laughed at first, saying the arrow was weak and didn't even hurt. But then his smile froze. Ice started spreading from the wound, quickly covering his arm. Within seconds, the entire arm was frozen solid. The students stared in shock, and Xiaoyu snapped his fingers. The frozen arm turned to stone, then shattered into pieces. Fu gritted his teeth in pain as everyone gasped, whispering that Xiaoyu might secretly be a 3-star warrior himself. Fu roared in rage, shouting that he was a veteran fighter from the 19th battlefield and no rookie kids were going to bring him down. Despite losing an arm, he charged forward with terrifying force. The students panicked, yelling that he was still going and telling each other to run. But right then, someone held up a card and told everyone to move aside. The crowd turned, and it was Lu Ming, standing there with a confident look. Fatty shouted excitedly when Lu Ming stepped up, holding a wild-looking card. Everyone thought he was bluffing until the ground started shaking. Out of nowhere, a whole herd of bulls stormed in, hooves pounding like thunder, charging straight at Fu Hongming. He panicked and stumbled back as the bulls crushed everything in their way, even the statue he had been protecting. The statue cracked apart, and a shiny card popped out, hitting the ground as dust filled the air. When the dust finally cleared, all that was left was a small rabbit foot lying there. The students couldn't believe it. Fu Hongming was completely down. Cheers broke out everywhere, with people shouting that he wasn't moving anymore. Nobody even thought about thanking Lu Ming. Instead, they crowded around him, buzzing about his card. Some were blown away that he had pulled out a level 7 card, while others admitted they'd never seen anything like it before. Lu Ming grinned, holding it up proudly, and joked that this was his own special creation, the Super Bulldozer. Then he started pitching it like a salesman, offering buy 2 get 1 free deals and discounts for bulk orders. The whole crowd cracked up at his antics. Meanwhile, Xiaoyu stayed quiet. He bent down, carefully picked up the card Fu had been after, and glanced at it. While everyone else was still distracted by Lu Ming's sales talk, a girl with pink hair suddenly appeared. No one had even noticed her arrive. Xiaoyu shouted to Lu Ming and tossed the card his way. But before he could finish, the pink-haired girl landed a powerful kick that sent him flying across the floor. The card slipped from his hand and sailed through the air, straight into Lu Ming's grasp. The room went silent. All eyes turned to Lu Ming, then to the mysterious girl. Someone whispered that she was the minor girl who had been pretending with the big guy earlier. The realization spread quickly. The two had been in disguise just to get this treasure. And judging by how easily she took down Xiaoyu, she was even more dangerous than her partner. Some of the students tried to stay positive, saying it didn't matter because Lu Ming had plenty of crazy cards. Lu Ming turned to Fatty, asking what this new card was all about. Fatty explained seriously, it was the real prize hidden in the chamber. The so-called miners had been acting all along just to claim it. Lu Ming glanced at the new card, muttered a quick "oh," then looked closer. It didn't look special at all, just plain on the back. But after a moment, his eyes lit up and he told everyone he'd handle this one. He asked Fatty to step back and told the others to take care of the injured, since An was badly hurt. The pink-haired girl looked ready to rush him, but Lu Ming raised his hand to stop her. He explained in his usual casual way that card masters usually fought in the simplest way possible, by throwing out a bunch of powerful cards and hoping something worked. He reminded her she had already seen what his 7 Bulls card could do, and hinted that his backpack was full of more like it. Then, with a businessman's grin, he said he'd rather avoid a fight since it was loud, messy, and way too costly. Instead, he suggested a deal. He'd give her the rare card, take his classmates, and just walk away. After a moment of hesitation, the girl agreed, saying at least he wasn't completely clueless. Lu Ming kept smiling and even joked that, truthfully, he had crafted a whole set of Minotaur cards just to push his energy to 300, but without recharge cards, if he used them all now, he'd be drained. He tossed her the card and told his group it was time to go. His classmates were confused, but they followed. Fatty asked why he would hand over something so rare, but Lu Ming just told him to stop talking and keep running. Behind them, the girl looked at the card she caught. That's when she realized, it wasn't the rare treasure at all. It was one of Lu Ming's cards. Furious, she crushed it and shouted his name through the tunnels. Meanwhile, Lu Ming was sprinting ahead with a grin, thinking his plan was perfect. If he ran with the real card, she'd definitely chase him, and that meant Fatty and the others would be safe. With the mine's maze-like layout, they could just hide until rescue arrived. She might think he handed over the card, but nope, he still had it. Just when everything seemed to be going his way, he skidded to a halt. The main gate was shut. Dang it, he muttered. Fatty and the others caught up, panting, and warned him that the pink-haired girl was furious and closing in fast. Lu Ming froze, realizing they were cornered. The others panicked and begged him to use the Super Bulldozer card. One of them held it up high, shouting for everyone to hide behind him and let him throw it. Everyone kept begging Lu Ming to use the Super Bulldozer card, but he finally admitted he couldn't. Without an energy card, he had no way to power it up. Fatty freaked out, shocked that a card master didn't even have one. The group scrambled, but nobody else had a spare either. One guy reminded everyone that he already used his just to open the gate earlier, and another complained that nobody usually brings extra cards for a boring mining trip anyway. The mood sank fast, everyone thought they were done for. Then suddenly, Lu Ming's eyes lit up. He called out for Mr. Cat like it was his last hope. Out of nowhere, Mr. Cat actually appeared, spotted an energy card, casually grabbed it, and strolled off like nothing happened. Lu Ming just stood there, stunned, not even sure if that really just happened. Before he could make sense of it, the pink-haired girl caught up. Now she was right in front of him and Fatty. Her energy was so strong that even the air around her felt distorted. Lu Ming was shaken. She was on a completely different level. She raised her hand, clearly furious, and said she'd deal with his classmates one by one before finishing him off. Fatty realized in that moment that Lu Ming had tricked her earlier and called him out. Lu Ming denied it, but Fatty wasn't convinced. In frustration, Fatty told him they had no choice but to fight. He tossed a card over, and when Lu Ming caught it, he realized it was an energy card. Lu Ming scolded him for not handing it over earlier, but Fatty clutched his chest dramatically, saying it wasn't that simple. He had spent an entire year charging it, and if Lu Ming used it now, he'd better pay him back. Lu Ming just grinned and promised he would before pressing the card to his chest. The rush hit instantly. Energy cards weren't rare, but they usually came empty. You had to charge them yourself, which took forever. People treated them like power banks, selling them for a good price. But this one was fully loaded, and as soon as Lu Ming activated it, he shouted in excitement. The energy felt like endless waves crashing into him, filling him up completely. The pink-haired girl froze, clearly thrown off, as Lu Ming pulled out not just one but a whole stack of super bulldozer cards. He started chanting the name under his breath like a mantra, and then the ground shook violently. A massive stampede of bulldozers erupted, rushing forward like a wild, unstoppable mob. The rumbling grew louder as they smashed through stone pillars and everything in their path. Even the exit wall couldn't stand against them. The whole chamber trembled as rocks started falling from above. Just like that, Lu Ming flipped the entire situation around. The students panicked, yelling that the chamber was collapsing and they'd all be buried alive. But Lu Ming told them to stand back and let him handle it. He fired off more bulldozer cards straight at the blocked exit. Fatty stood beside him, still catching his breath, but managed to laugh and joke about it. He said using bulldozers to dig through wasn't really breaking out, it was just classic Lu Ming being Lu Ming. Lu Ming snapped at Fatty to stop cracking jokes, saying this wasn't the time. But Fatty just grinned, saying as long as Lu Ming was around, he didn't need to worry. After one last wave of bulldozers, the wall finally collapsed, opening the exit. Lu Ming yelled for everyone to move, and the group grabbed the injured and rushed out. The moment the last person cleared the path, huge rocks came crashing down, sealing it off completely. They barely escaped in time. Lu Ming glanced back at the blocked tunnel, thinking the pink-haired girl was probably trapped for good. If not, then she had to be in rough shape. And that rare card? Likely gone too. He quickly turned to the group, telling them to keep moving toward the mine entrance before the whole place caved in. Back inside, the girl wasn't done yet. She pushed herself up, holding her hurt arm, and barely dodged a falling rock. Gritting her teeth, she pulled out a card device, slid in a teleportation card, and activated it just in time. The countdown hit 0, and she vanished right before another rock fell. Meanwhile, Lu Ming and the others finally spotted light up ahead. When they saw the rescue team, their faces lit up like kids seeing ice cream on a hot day. The rescuers shouted that the exit was clear and rushed medics in to help the injured. But far away, deep in the woods, a green flash lit up. The pink-haired girl had teleported out safely. Breathing hard, she clenched her fists and promised herself she wasn't done with Lu Ming yet. Later, back at the mine's rest lounge, Fatty sat in the corner looking down. Lu Ming walked over, gave him a friendly pat, and told him not to let this drag him down. That what doesn't finish you only makes you stronger. Fatty muttered that there wasn't much to be happy about. Lu Ming teased him about still being upset over the energy card. He admitted he knew Fatty had spent a whole year charging it and probably planned to sell it. Fatty sighed and said both their families were saving for a house near school. Lu Ming raised his brows, jokingly asking if Fatty already had kids. Fatty shot back that of course he didn't. He was just planning ahead. Lu Ming shook his head, thinking how much pressure kids these days were under. Then, with a grin, he handed Fatty a small pink paper, saying it was his way of making up for the lost energy card. Fatty opened the folded paper and was shocked. It wasn't just some random slip, it actually had Xinghe's number on it. Their crazy mining internship finally wrapped up, and the next day everyone piled into a big bus heading back to school. To cheer people up, the teachers even gave extra points to the students who got injured. Lu Ming quickly did the math in his head and realized those bonus points meant he could skip a few classes without worry. Later, he and his friends, Fatty, Xiaoyu, and Chang Liang, started chatting about the rewards. On top of the points, the school had given them official commendation certificates with the principal's signature. Lu Ming looked at his certificate, totally unimpressed. He muttered that the school was being cheap and tossed the paper straight into the trash without a second thought. After that, he collapsed on his bed, ready to nap. But before drifting off, he remembered all the project work he'd done for his clueless old boss, the reports, the design drafts, and the function modules. Annoying as that work had been, he realized it had actually helped him a lot. All the practice with card making, especially the difficult patterns, had sharpened his skills. Plus, the mine experience gave him real-world training. He started thinking ahead. His next goal was to create stronger card types that could flow energy better, hit harder, and recover faster. Just as he was lost in thought, his phone buzzed. Fatty was calling. Lu Ming answered half asleep, asking who even called so early. Fatty laughed and reminded him it was already afternoon. Then Fatty asked what he planned to do with those certificates from the school. Lu Ming shrugged it off, saying they were just useless papers. That's when Fatty dropped the surprise. They were actually super valuable. Students could exchange them for private lessons with any teacher, even the principal. Some people even sold them for good money. Lu Ming instantly sat up, shocked. He rushed to dig through the trash and pulled his certificate back out, scolding himself for throwing it away. But Fatty wasn't done. He said he had good news and bad news. Lu Ming told him to just start with the bad. Fatty explained that the school had secretly sent people back to the mine last night. Lu Ming was confused. Didn't Mizan already confirm all the students were safe? Fatty clarified that yeah, students were fine, but the treasure in the hidden chamber had vanished. Lu Ming froze when Fatty told him the truth. The school's real target, that mysterious card, had been taken. And it wasn't just valuable, it was worth around 100 million. Lu Ming couldn't believe his ears. Lu Ming panicked for a second, quickly checking around for his bag. That card was too important. On the phone, Fatty laughed and said he had some good news too. Lu Ming told him to just spill it. Fatty proudly shared that Xinghe had agreed to go on a dinner date with him, and he was over the moon. Before he could ask Lu Ming for date tips, the call suddenly got cut off. Fatty stared at his phone, confused, muttering that he still needed ideas. Meanwhile, Lu Ming finally spotted the card inside his bag. His eyes lit up instantly, and he couldn't stop staring at it. The thought of it being worth 100 million made him almost drool. He rushed to his desk, opened his laptop, and searched online for Crescent Moon card. The results appeared right away. Turns out, the card's real name was Moon Shadow, and there were only 7 of them in the entire world. Looking at the one in his hand, Lu Ming was stunned. His was part of that legendary set. He read further. The first known Moon Shadow had appeared 5 years ago with a student named Wu Hongfei from Academy No. 1. The article also mentioned something called a collaborative card creation vote. Lu Ming scratched his head, totally lost, but decided to focus on the card's description first. The details shocked him even more. The Moon Shadows were classified as legacy cards. These were rare treasures passed down from older generations. A card creator would seal their lifetime of skills and experience into the card, and the new holder could slowly absorb that knowledge to grow stronger. Scrolling down, he also learned about set cards. These were even more complicated. Basically, you had to split a super complex energy pattern into several parts but still keep it running like one complete system. If the balance wasn't perfect, the whole thing could collapse. Each piece was stored in its own card with extra protection, and creating something like this cost a fortune in resources. No wonder those strong fighters at the mine had been so desperate to get it. The card really was worth at least 100 million, maybe even more. But Lu Ming also realized how risky it was. If anyone found out he had it, he could be in big trouble. And to make things even crazier, the Moon Shadow only worked when all 7 cards were collected. He let out a sigh. Collecting all 7? That was like those impossible stories about legendary artifacts. And on top of that, this particular card was a cultivation sword type. He was a refiner, so he couldn't even use it himself. Selling it was out of the question too. If anyone recognized it as a Moon Shadow, he'd be exposed immediately. Staring at the card, he thought hard. Then an idea hit him. A sword card, he couldn't use it. But he knew someone who could. His older sister, studying at Academy No. 1, was a sword cultivator. Maybe this was the answer. According to Lu Ming's memories, his older sister wasn't just smart, she was on a whole different level. A real prodigy, like having a cheat code in real life. She'd been unbeatable since childhood, never losing to anyone. So, Lu Ming decided there was no point hesitating. If anyone deserved that Moon Shadow card, it was her. He carefully wrapped it, sent it through a courier, and finally breathed a little easier. Yeah, it hurt giving away something worth 100 million, but he told himself every tool had its purpose, and this one was going to family. He mumbled a few words to himself, then out of nowhere sneezed. He chuckled, wondering if he was catching a cold, or maybe someone was talking about him behind his back. Meanwhile, at a cozy tavern with soft music playing, Fatty leaned closer to Xinghe, thinking he misheard something. But when she shyly admitted she liked Lu Ming, he froze like a statue, completely speechless. Elsewhere, the pink-haired girl had already returned home. Standing on her balcony with the wind brushing her face, she looked calmer than before. Her brother walked up, draped a coat over her shoulders, and asked if she wasn't cold. She turned and apologized, saying she couldn't help him get that Moon Shadow card back. He told her not to worry, some things just happen the way they're meant to. But she wasn't convinced. She said finding Lu Ming wouldn't be hard. That's when her brother stopped her. He explained that the real key wasn't Lu Ming, but the person behind him, his older sister, Lu Yan. Hearing the name, she looked shocked. Everyone at the academy knew Lu Yan. She was the top sword cultivator there, practically a legend among students. Realizing Lu Ming was her younger brother left the girl stunned. Her brother went on, saying that it made sense now. For a 1-star rookie like Lu Ming to take down a 3-star warrior and fight with that much skill? That wasn't normal. He admitted he even had to use a teleport card just to escape, so the Moon Shadow card probably ended up with Lu Yen. Before leaving, he told his sister not to worry about it anymore, that this was beyond her level for now, and she should rest. But when she asked if he was really giving up on the Moon Shadow inheritance, he shook his head. No way. The Moon Shadow inheritance was the dream of every sword cultivator: 7 cards, 7 inheritance marks, 7 people competing for one ultimate power. And out of those 7, he swore at least 1 card had to be his. He wasn't backing down. Then he walked off into the night. This was Gao Tianlang, heir of the Gao clan, a 5-star sword cultivator. Meanwhile, over at the number 1 Inheritance Academy, the stage was already set. The top teachers in every field had gathered there, and the students were the very best, hand-picked elites from all over the world. Right now, a big selection event was happening. Wu Hongfei, a 5-star sword cultivator, had kicked it off. He was hunting for a top-tier card master to help him complete the Moon Shadow inheritance. The process wasn't easy. The card needed special talismans with all kinds of restrictions, so the right partner mattered a lot. Wu Hongfei set 3 rules. The candidate had to be famous, have a strong portfolio, and get a recommendation from the academy. Even after that, they still had to survive a popularity vote. The hall was packed with people, buzzing with excitement. That's when a girl walked in, so breathtaking that half the guys around literally bumped into each other just staring. Some muttered quick apologies, but their eyes couldn't leave her. Everyone whispered, "That must be Senior Lu Yen." It was the first time many had ever seen someone like her, and she instantly stole the spotlight. Then things got heated. Someone slammed the table and shouted about how unfair everything was. Wu Hongfei himself snapped that he'd never team up with some 1-star nobody. The head of the Cardmaster Association shot back, saying this result wasn't acceptable and should be cancelled. Meanwhile, the academy head just held his forehead, mumbling that this was turning into a nightmare. Right in the middle of the chaos, the door creaked open, and everyone froze. The second Lu Yen stepped in, the entire room stood up. Wu Hongfei called out her name, clearly annoyed, while the association president looked shocked. The academy head just groaned, clearly used to this kind of drama. Wu Hongfei barked at her, asking why she was even here, since it had nothing to do with her. Lu Yan's voice was sharp as she explained that the useless nobody he was insulting was her younger brother. She reminded him that he was the one who made the rules, the one who invited her brother, and now he was trying to back out just because he didn't like the result. Wu Hongfei's face twisted in anger. He said if she hadn't been showing off her sword skills, nobody would have even noticed her brother's so-called watermelon card. To him, Lu Ming was just a rookie card creator, a 1-star student with weak skills. A watermelon ninja? What was he supposed to do with that? Slice fruit all day? He ranted about how much he had invested into the Moon Shadow inheritance, and now it felt like a joke to him. Lu Yan's tone turned icy. She asked if he was seriously planning to push her brother out of the way like that. Wu Hongfei snapped back, saying he'd do whatever he wanted, and told her to get lost. That's when Lu Yan's aura flared. A faint green glow wrapped around her, and the temperature in the room dropped instantly. The tension was so thick it felt like the air itself could snap. Even the water in a glass nearby started frosting over. The academy head sneezed, and one of the association members gasped, realizing that this was just her natural presence, and it was already this strong at her age. She stepped closer, eyes locked on Wu Hongfei, her expression deadly serious. Wu Hongfei, still gritting his teeth, asked why she was dragging her brother into something like this when she knew exactly what kind of student he was. Lu Yen told everyone she knew her brother better than anyone else. If he wanted to grow, he needed real challenges, and unlocking the legacy card was the perfect chance. Wu Hongfei scoffed, saying that was a weak reason. But Lu Yen stood her ground. She told him to stop wasting time and stick to his own promise, or deal with what came after. One of the officials quickly tried to calm her down, reminding her this inheritance was a big deal for Wu. But Wu Hongfei didn't even let him finish. He said this wasn't something that could be settled with just words. Lu Yen didn't flinch. She kept her icy stare on him, completely unbothered. The two of them locked eyes, neither willing to back off. Wu Hongfei finally spoke up, saying he would never accept her useless brother as his partner. The official nearby was sweating buckets, looking like he wanted to vanish. Lu Yen just smirked and asked about the price Wu had mentioned earlier, daring him to show her how he planned to make her pay. She even let out a soft laugh that sent chills through the room. The association head panicked, whispering that a fight was about to start, while the card crafting guy nervously asked if he should move out of the way. His colleague shouted back that it was a dumb question and to just run. That's when Wu Hongfei pulled out a special card. He explained it was an honor card. The academy only gave out one every year, and it could be exchanged for tutoring from any master, even the retired ones. He had spent a fortune and countless favors to get it. He tossed it at her, saying this was his payment for her brother. Lu Yen caught it, looked at it for a moment, and only said, Oh, the officials, who were halfway to the door, froze in shock. Instead of fighting, she simply asked where he got it. Wu muttered that he'd traded for it using all his connections. She nodded and said she'd accept it, but reluctantly. That word made Wu explode, saying she was acting like she was the one doing him a favor. But Lu Yen didn't even bother replying. She just turned, waved casually, and walked away. Wu Hongfei's jaw tightened as he swore to himself this wasn't the end. He promised that once he claimed the inheritance, she'd regret this day. But Lu Yen wasn't done yet. Before leaving, she bowed slightly to the two officials and calmly said she had one last thing to share. She pulled out another card, the Moon Shadow card. Everyone froze, even Wu Hongfei. Lu Yen explained she had received it that very morning in a surprise package. And since the two officials were in charge, she was now joining them as one of the lead officials for the Moon Shadow inheritance. Then she made it crystal clear, her younger brother, Lu Ming, would be her chosen assistant. In the crowd, someone gasped when they realized Lu Ming was from Qingming Academy. That school used to have a big reputation, but nowadays, it wasn't really top tier anymore. Then another voice shouted back, probably one of Lu Ming's seniors, telling people not to look down on them since Grandpa Lu was here. Right after that, Lu Ming went all out. His hands moved like a pro commander, tossing cards one after another. They lit up the whole place as wave after wave of attacks crushed the enemy forces, burying them under the collapsed mine. People couldn't believe it. He had just soloed the entire fight. Some whispered that maybe his first win was luck, but after this, it was clear, Lu Ming had serious skills. And honestly, no surprise, he was Lu Yan's little brother. Teacher An pointed out that the mine event showed how much potential the students had. Some were even trading in their merit certificates for extra training. It looked like a bunch of them were about to level up again. Then the question came up, where was Lu Ming? Someone said he hadn't been around for days, and he hadn't used his certificate either. Teacher An was puzzled. With his talent, she thought he'd definitely go for one-on-one training. But the headmaster, Jiang Feng, just smiled and said from now on, he'd personally guide Lu Ming and handle his schedule. Teacher An was relieved, and Jiang Feng laughed, saying talent like that was too rare not to take care of. Just then, someone rushed in with big news. Lu Ming's commendation letter had arrived. Jiang Feng asked if he had already chosen a teacher, but the man stammered before admitting the truth. Lu Ming sold it. Teacher An gasped, expecting the headmaster to be furious. Instead, Jiang Feng laughed even harder, saying Lu Ming had a wild side. Meanwhile, back at his place, Lu Ming was just waking up. After 2 days of rest, he felt fresh. He mentioned that his sister promised him a gift, but since she already took care of the Moon Shadow inheritance, he didn't need to stress about it. With his Lightning Seed card, he was on a whole new path, one that actually fit his style. He didn't even care much about the academy's instructors, saying their teaching wasn't really useful for him. What mattered was that selling his commendation letter gave him enough money to keep experimenting with his cards. He had a system, fusing 7 Savage Collision cards made 1 Super Awesome card. But now he had a crazier idea. What if he fused 7 Super Awesome cards together? That would mean 49 oxen, all combined into one legendary beast. He grinned, saying it would be like creating an aura so strong it was almost mythical. Excited, he pulled out the cards and got to work. But this was risky. The oxen were strong. If he messed up, the energy could go out of control. He reminded himself he had to seal them the second he activated the card, and then immediately used the seed card. He started the countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, sweat dripped down his face. At the right moment, he shouted the command to seal, and then, success. A brand new pattern lit up across the card, glowing with cross-hatched lines. Lu Ming stared at it with pure excitement. This was true card crafting, the kind that changed everything. And the best part? It only needed 1,000 energy points, even less than he expected. All his careful tweaking of techniques had finally paid off. Lu Ming noticed something strange on his new card. The pattern didn't look right, so he decided he'd fix it later, finish the rest of his crafting, and then test it in a safe place. The weather was nice when he headed to the Card Crafters Association. At the front desk, the receptionist greeted him and asked what he needed. Lu Ming said he wanted to test his card. She asked about his star rating, and when he told her he was a 1-star card master, she pointed him to Corridor A and told him it would cost 100 credits. Lu Ming asked if he could try the 2-star area instead. The receptionist looked surprised, but before she could answer, the supervisor walked over. He pulled out a red ribbon and waved it in front of Lu Ming, hinting for a bribe. Lu Ming didn't react, so the man frowned and told him to just stick to the 1-star zone. Annoyed, Lu Ming thought the guy was playing games, but in the end, he gave up and went to the lower area. As he left, the supervisor muttered to the receptionist that Lu Ming was just another impatient kid. Downstairs, Lu Ming's eyes widened. Someone was testing a card with a flashy technique that filled the room with strange sounds. Lu Ming couldn't believe this was the 1-star level, but before he could say more, a bald guy behind him told him to move. When Lu Ming apologized and asked if the place was always this crowded, the man explained that most people just paid the supervisor to sneak into better testing zones. That's when it clicked. The red ribbon earlier was just the guy fishing for money. Lu Ming sighed and decided to get on with his own test. He politely asked an older man nearby to scoot over a bit, but the man snapped, saying young people always wanted too much space. He even mocked Lu Ming, saying he was probably the type to hog 2 bathroom stalls. Finally, the old guy flat out refused to move. Lu Ming just shook his head and muttered that everyone was acting strange today. He pulled out his card, powered it up, and prepared for the test. Energy began swirling around him, his whole body glowing as he whispered that it was starting. But then, nothing. The card stayed blank. Confused, Lu Ming wondered if it was broken. The old man next to him smirked that nothing was happening. Suddenly, a soft voice whispered, "Boss, dismantle." Lu Ming looked up and froze. A massive creature stood there, staring straight at him. Before he could react, 3 more huge figures appeared, each holding massive hammers. The crowd panicked. People shouted in shock, asking where these things had come from. The creatures charged, smashing everything around them. The walls cracked, the floor shook, and people screamed that the place was about to collapse. Upstairs, the supervisor dropped his teacup, thinking it was an earthquake. Back inside, Lu Ming stared at the chaos and muttered that maybe he'd gone a little too far. But then he noticed something. The strange pattern on his card wasn't random at all, it was recording the aftermath of the destruction. People nearby were pale and shaken, asking if anyone saw where those bull-like monsters came from. Lu Ming stayed quiet for a moment, then suddenly joined in with the crowd, yelling that it was outrageous how the association treated 1-star newbies. The others quickly agreed, shouting that it was unfair and dangerous. Lu Ming slipped into the crowd, acting like nothing happened. In his head, he laughed it off, calling the whole thing a beautiful disaster. Just then, the supervisor stormed in with 2 big guys and demanded to know what went down. Everyone started talking at once, saying some bull-headed creatures had shown up and gone wild. The supervisor told them to calm down, reminding them there were cameras and that whoever caused it should just admit it. That made people upset. They complained that instead of checking if they were okay, he only cared about blaming someone, just because they were low-ranked. Out of nowhere, the old man from earlier pointed at Lu Ming, saying he saw everything and that Lu Ming was the one who summoned the creatures. Lu Ming froze for a second, thinking he was totally busted. The supervisor folded his arms and gave him a sharp look, asking what he had to say. Lu Ming forced a grin and played it cool. He said he was only testing a single card, but the outdated setup couldn't handle it. He even asked when they had last upgraded their gear. The old man argued that the card test clearly wasn't at a 1-star level, but Lu Ming turned it around, pointing out that he had asked to use the 2-star testing area and was denied. He told them to check the cameras if they didn't believe him. Everyone looked at the supervisor, who stayed silent. Lu Ming didn't stop there. He told the supervisor to stop acting superior, reminding everyone how he hadn't even cared about his safety earlier. People in the crowd started agreeing, saying it wasn't fair that lower ranks couldn't use better testing rooms when their lives mattered too. The supervisor was caught off guard. The crowd kept pushing, and finally, to everyone's surprise, he admitted fault. He bowed slightly, saying they had let pride get in the way. To make up for it, he promised everyone could pick up 10 energy cards at the front desk. The crowd cheered, and someone even shouted that Lu Ming should get free access to the 2-star and 3-star rooms. The supervisor gave a forced smile while Lu Ming walked off, still a bit annoyed. On his way out, Lu Ming thought about how the card was way too strong, almost wrecking the whole place. The markings were supposed to show 3 ox heads, but they had changed. He wondered if the strange lightning crack had something to do with it. His little partner, Meowser, gave a tired meow in response. Lu Ming told him to rest up and headed back to his shop, deciding it was better to focus on basic cultivation for now instead of messing with risky spell cards. Later, someone knocked on his door. Lu Ming tapped back without saying anything, but then a voice called out, saying they knew he was inside. With a frown, he opened the door and saw a tall man standing there. The guy introduced himself as Jiang Wenshan and held out a card shaped like a watermelon, asking if it belonged to him. Lu Ming took the card, thinking it was probably safe since so many people were around. Lu Ming glanced at the card and smiled, thinking the guy just came to buy a watermelon ninja card. He even told him to come inside so he could grab one. But the man suddenly shouted, saying he wasn't here to buy anything. He claimed to be the father of one of Lu Ming's victims. He ranted that his son used to be a top student, smart, hardworking, with a bright future. But ever since he got into these watermelon ninja cards, he had lost all focus and even failed to get into a decent school. The people around started whispering, blaming the cards and saying things like comics and games should be banned because kids needed discipline. The man kept going, saying Lu Ming's unregulated cards had ruined his kid's future. Lu Ming tried to keep it cool and even offered him tea. At the same time, he secretly pressed the shop's panic button. Then he asked how many cards the man's son used daily. The father snapped that it was 30 or 40. Lu Ming calmly explained that this was the problem. Using that many cards was like eating 30 or 40 meals in one day. Of course it wasn't healthy. The crowd nodded, realizing he had a point. The man didn't like that answer. He shouted at Lu Ming to stop talking back, then stepped forward aggressively, saying he only came to scare him a little, but now it looked like Lu Ming actually had a death wish. He lunged at Lu Ming, but before he could touch him, his whole body froze. His mouth opened, his eyes rolled back, and then he collapsed on the floor. Just then, the neighborhood security guard rushed in, apologizing for being late. Lu Ming told him not to worry, just to make sure the shop's damages were covered. The guard promised every cent would be handled. Turns out, Jiang Wenshan, the man, had been knocked out cold by the guard's taser. That evening, Jiang woke up feeling embarrassed, muttering to himself that if he really wanted to make trouble, he would have done it properly. Instead, this had just been dumb. Someone nearby told him he didn't understand. The kid he messed with wasn't normal. The next morning, Lu Ming opened his shop as usual. While stretching, he noticed a girl sitting outside in a short skirt, casually chewing gum. Lu Ming teased her, saying it was rude to chew gum during someone's motivational moment, and asked if she was here for a watermelon ninja card or maybe an autograph. The girl ignored his joke and asked if he was Lu Yan's little brother. Lu Ming nodded. She handed him an envelope, saying she had the right person. Lu Ming opened it and read an apology letter from Jiang Wenshan. The man wrote that he was sorry for yesterday but couldn't pay for the damages. Instead, he was sending his daughter to work at the shop, and he himself would also find a way to repay the debt. If she messed up, Lu Ming was free to kick her out. Lu Ming blinked at the letter, thinking even comic book plots weren't this forced. He looked at the girl, asking how she even got here. She casually replied that her dad brought her, told her to listen to Lu Ming, and then complained that the shop was way too hot without air conditioning. Lu Ming was munching on some bread, thinking about how people were switching up tactics on him. First they tried direct conflict, now they were sending in cuteness to wear him down. While he was lost in thought, the girl beside him casually asked if he was gonna finish his Coke. Lu Ming grinned, deciding to play along, and asked her name. She said she was Jiang Yuebai. He asked why she wasn't in school, and she told him she'd skipped a grade and was already in middle school. Lu Ming joked around, asking if she'd picked a career yet and even suggested she become a card master. She just tossed her empty Coke can in the trash and flatly said no. Lu Ming thought to himself, wow, that answer screamed, future shut in. His mind even drifted to his past life, remembering a cousin in his family, almost 30, still single, hopeless case. Noticing him spacing out, Yuebai asked if he was okay. He brushed it off, joking that he was just thinking about world peace. Then he handed her a notebook and told her to draw something simple, since her dad said she had to listen to him. Yuebai complained that she didn't know how, but Lu Ming told her it was beginner-level stuff. Then he asked what she actually wanted to do in the future. That's when her eyes lit up. She said she wanted to be a sword cultivator. Lu Ming thought she was still a kid dreaming big, but he explained that if she wanted that path, she'd still need to be a card master first. She didn't get it, so he explained how card masters could basically do everything: sword skills, chi skills, gear upgrades, even mental training. That idea fired her up. She asked if she could get as strong as Sister Lu Yan one day. Lu Ming told her there was no such thing as being born a genius. His sister also started from zero, repeating basic sword moves endlessly before she got where she was. If Yuebai worked hard and built her skills step by step, she could catch up, maybe even pass her. That motivated Yuebai instantly. She said she wanted to start right away and learn sword cultivation from every sect. Lu Ming slowed her down, saying first she had to learn how to make a basic card. He gave her his notebook full of techniques and told her to take her time and ask questions if anything was confusing. Then he sat by the doorway, mumbling to himself that it was late and wondering if he was really just supposed to babysit her all night. But before he could settle in, Yuebai called from behind, asking what to do after condensing the basic card. Lu Ming stared at her in shock. She'd already finished? That was way too fast. He had to admit, the gap between people was insane. And without even realizing how much she'd impressed him, Yuebai just asked when she could start making sword cultivator skill cards. Out of nowhere, someone came running down the street, shouting for Lu Ming. Turned out it was little Fatty. Yuebai spotted him and waved, but the second Fatty saw her, he spun around, covering his face like he'd seen a ghost. Lu Ming grabbed him before he could escape and asked if the two knew each other. Yuebai didn't hesitate, she exposed him right away. She said Fatty once tried sneaking into her dad's office to steal a test, and of course, he got caught red-handed. Fatty clung to Lu Ming's leg, bawling that Principal Jiang Wenshan was ruthless. That made Lu Ming stop and think, wait a second, Principal Jiang Wenshan? He looked at Yuebai, asking if that was her dad. She shook her head, saying nope, that was her uncle. Fatty quickly added that her real dad was Jiang Feng. Lu Ming's eyes went wide. Oh, so this whole thing was a setup by the principal just to shove his niece into Lu Ming's shop? He laughed to himself, saying this felt like some over-the-top drama. Maybe it was all because he was just too good-looking. He even whipped out a comb and styled his hair right there. He told Fatty to relax and watch how he handled this little bug, but Fatty panicked, begging him not to do anything crazy. Yuebai then handed Lu Ming a slip of paper with her dad's number, and without a second thought, Lu Ming dialed it. He picked up the call with fake confidence, demanding a ransom like he was in some cheap TV show. But on the other end, the calm voice immediately recognized him. Lu Ming froze, dropped the act, and awkwardly laughed it off, quickly switching to polite mode. Jiang Feng, totally unfazed, asked when Lu Ming was planning to bring his daughter over. He even bragged about how cute, smart, and polite she was. Lu Ming was left speechless. This guy was on a whole different level. When Lu Ming asked if he wasn't worried about sending the wrong person, Jiang Feng just laughed. He explained how recently the cops busted a shady loan crew, and guess what? He saw a name he recognized in their files. On top of that, the Card Masters Association had contacted him just yesterday, asking if a certain someone from his school had wrecked their one-star test area. Then, just to twist the knife, Jiang Feng casually brought up some embarrassing childhood dirt, like how little Lu Ming once peeked at his sister in the shower and got punished badly by their dad for it. Lu Ming was stunned. This guy didn't just know his present, he knew his past too. Lu Ming listened to everything and thought this old man really had no shame. He raised his voice, saying he'd never seen anyone juggle so many angles at once. Then, acting all dramatic, he dropped to his knees and told the teacher that this situation was tough on him. He explained that Yuebai was staying with him for now. She was smart and independent, sure, but he wasn't really set up to take care of her properly. He stammered a bit and asked how much money he was supposed to prepare. Jiang Wenshan coolly said he'd let him know later, then hung up. Lu Ming grumbled that in the end, he still had to pay up. Little Fatty whispered that it felt like Lu Ming lost this round. Lu Ming was ready to clap back, but Yuebai cut in, saying it wasn't a loss at all, it was strategy. Then she started walking away, reminding him that just because her dad asked him to take care of her didn't mean it should be for free. She asked what kind of fair payment he had in mind, sounding way more mature than expected. Fatty leaned close and nervously whispered that this whole thing felt wrong, like she was too young and he couldn't. Before he could even finish, Lu Ming groaned and smacked him with the book he was holding. Yuebai kept talking, saying money would run out fast, but learning something useful would stay with her forever. Lu Ming thought about it and admitted she really was the principal's daughter. He asked what she wanted to learn. She pointed at the very book stuck to Fatty's face, an intro to encoding. Lu Ming flipped through it and nodded. He explained that not all cards were as cheap as the Watermelon Ninja. If he learned encoding, people couldn't just copy his stuff. That skill was worth a lot. He admitted she had guts, standing up against her dad like that. So, Lu Ming called Principal Jiang and told him he wanted an encoding course. Jiang agreed right away but added one condition. He wanted Lu Ming to train Yuebai into becoming a card master. It was safer than most jobs, and even if she ran into trouble one day, she'd be able to handle herself. Not like her mom. Lu Ming smiled and agreed. The call ended, and the deal was sealed. Little Fatty asked if everything was settled. Lu Ming nodded and joked if there was anything else your dad wanted from me. Yuebai shrugged and said as long as she listened to Lu Ming, things were fine. Then Yuebai suddenly remembered something. She said she'd always admired card masters, but when Lu Ming mentioned sword cultivation earlier, it really clicked for her. She wanted to go all in on card creation and walk the path of a sword cultivator, just like Lu Yen. Lu Ming slung an arm around her shoulder, telling her that was the right spirit. He believed in her and said one day she'd definitely be his student. Her eyes sparkled, and she happily called him master on the spot. Lu Ming grinned and played along, responding like a real teacher every time she said it. Meanwhile, Fatty was still hanging around, clapping his hands. Lu Ming turned to him, asking why he was even still here. Fatty scratched his head and admitted he actually came to share some news. His illusion spells had leveled up a lot. Lu Ming crossed his arms, half surprised Fatty was being serious for once. Fatty explained his new trick. Illusions could now change color depending on his mood. That stunned Lu Ming. In his past life, he'd worked like crazy and never reached anything close to that. Excited, he grabbed Fatty's shoulders and asked him to show it right away. Fatty told him to chill, saying he still needed the right emotions to trigger it. Yuebai pulled out a notebook, taking notes and calling Lu Ming master again. Then Fatty finally cast his illusion, summoning a dog. Yuebai reached out to touch it, but Lu Ming frowned, saying it just looked like a dog. Before he could say more, the dog's color shifted. Fatty pointed proudly, asking if it didn't look cooler now. He explained non-stop, when he's happy, it's bright. When he's sad, it turns gloomy. When he's hyped, it feels powerful. And when he's bored, it looks chill and playful. Lu Ming just stared, not sure what to say. Eventually, he told Yuebai to go practice for a bit, then started pushing Fatty toward the door. Fatty kept babbling that he'd master this mood color illusion soon and get there in no time. Lu Ming finally shut the door on him with a sigh, calling him hopeless. Just then, Yuebai called out from behind, saying her dad had replied, probably with the encoding documents Lu Ming had asked for. Lu Ming's eyes lit up when he saw the message come in. He laughed, saying Yuebai's dad sure moved fast. He opened the file, but all that showed up was a bunch of code. Lu Ming grumbled that even he wasn't this stingy. Couldn't the guy have sent a complete package instead of just the basics? Yuebai explained that her dad usually just went with the standard set. Lu Ming sighed and said fine, they'd use that. At least it saved them 60 grand. Then he asked what her current origin card energy level was. She pulled out her card, it showed 100. Lu Ming kept his face steady, even though inside he was a little shocked. Half a year had passed since he made her origin card, and it had started at 15. Some people really did have different different starting points. Seeing her confusion, Lu Ming gently told her that yeah, it was on the low side. Then he explained he'd teach her how origin card patterns worked, but he had to head out soon. Yuebai nodded seriously, promising to work even harder. As she walked away, Lu Ming stood there thinking that if she pushed herself anymore, he might not even survive keeping up with her. Once alone, he picked up his phone and started thinking about his own studies. Maybe it was time to dive into D-rank encoding, starting with fingerprint encoding and its algorithms. He broke it down for himself. D-rank was beginner level. 1-star cards used 92 standard fingerprints, and cracking a 2-star card took about 24 hours. The process came down to 3 main strategies: energy, encoding, and release. Energy handled the flow of power, release controlled how the card activated, but the most important piece was encoding, and that began with fingerprint encoding. So he got to work. By 10:31 that night, he'd already finished the first layer. The original fingerprint couldn't be traced anymore. It was locked. He stared at it, thinking it almost felt too simple. Just slapping on a fingerprint layer seemed basic. The real trick was making sure the new print didn't interfere with the old one. If it was just stacked on top, it wouldn't work. Even though D-rank encoding was considered simple, Lu Ming's mind started sparking with ideas. What if he split and packed different encoding elements like he had before? What kind of results would that bring? With that thought, he leaned in and got right to experimenting. That night, Yuebai came in with dinner and noticed Lu Ming still at it. The first 6 attempts had failed, but on the 7th try, his card finally worked. He held it up proudly, saying he knew he could do it. Yuebai told him it was really late and maybe he should rest, but Lu Ming just waved her off. He said he discovered some new things and wanted to keep grinding. She should practice making origin cards on her own because her master was pulling an all-nighter. Yuebai clapped, saying if he was working that hard, she had to push herself too. By morning, she came back with breakfast and found papers scattered everywhere across the floor. A scroll rolled to her feet, and when she picked it up, she frowned, saying it looked so messy before crumpling it and tossing it aside. She told him to take care of himself, but Lu Ming brushed it off, insisting he was fine. In fact, he claimed he was about to strike gold with a brand new card. He told her to call Fatty over so they could test it out. Fatty rushed in, already excited, saying this was their big chance to get rich. He immediately asked what percentage he'd get, but Lu Ming shut him down, saying they needed to see if it even worked first. Fatty started a countdown, and Lu Ming lifted the card dramatically at the end of it. Everyone stared, waiting. Yuebai asked what kind of card it was. Lu Ming grinned, saying it was the result of all his hard work, unique, one of a kind, and their ticket to fortune. Yuebai wasn't impressed though. She just wanted to know what it actually did. Lu Ming dodged the question and asked how her energy card training was going. She pulled out a backpack stuffed full of energy cards and proudly said she'd finish them all in a few days, but wondered if she was still too slow. Lu Ming nodded and told her she was a little behind him, but honestly, she was doing great. Meanwhile, Fatty leaned in to remind Lu Ming about something from the past, but Lu Ming shut him up with a light punch and told him to drop it. Then he explained the new card, pointing out 2 arrows on it. One arrow meant charging it with energy, and the other meant releasing it. Yuebai, casually munching on a cookie, tilted her head and said it sounded kinda like opening a door to let a dog out. Lu Ming laughed and told them it wasn't a dog but a fish, and that soon they'd rule the sea. Yuebai tilted her head, a bit confused, so Fatty quickly explained that it was something for raising fish. Lu Ming nodded and proudly revealed his new creation, the Kuan card, the result of all his recent work. It was his first ever composite card. He explained that this type of card mixed cultivation with summoning. The more energy you poured into it, the stronger the Kuan fish would get. And once summoned, it wasn't just a one-time trick, it could fight again and even catch enemies off guard with a surprise move. Yuebai looked impressed and said her master was really amazing. Fatty, full of excitement, asked when they could start selling it, but Lu Ming waved him off, saying it was too soon. Right now, the D-rank encryption only kept small studios away. If a real card master got involved, they could easily break it, so he needed a stronger safeguard. Fatty nodded, reminding him of that messy watermelon ninja situation. Yuebai, while snacking, suddenly remembered something her dad had told her, the Card Creators Association. They offered copyright protection, and once a card was certified, nobody would dare to copy it. That sparked an idea. All 3 of them looked at each other with excitement. Lu Ming immediately searched online and checked out the association. Turns out, they didn't accept gimmicky cards like Watermelon Ninja. Only cards with deeper systems and real summoning power could get in, unlike those cheap flashy ones sold in the streets. Then Yuebai added that her dad mentioned you had to be a member first before applying for certification. Without wasting a second, Lu Ming hit the register button. A form popped up, asking for a referral. Lu Ming and Fatty exchanged a confident grin. This would be easy. They both typed in Jiang Feng's name as their referral. Lu Ming chuckled and told Yuebai that having a dad like hers really came in handy. But just a few seconds later, an email popped up. application denied. Lu Ming froze. His eyes went wide, and he blurted out in disbelief, wondering if Yuebai's dad was playing a trick on him. Without thinking, he grabbed his phone and called the headmaster. He complained right away, saying that he'd tried joining the Card Creators Association but got rejected. The headmaster sighed and explained that the rejection came from higher up. Even though Lu Ming was just a small creator, he had drawn too much attention. Ever since his watermelon ninja card spread like wildfire, a bunch of other creators had been chasing after the trend, trying to get rich or famous off it. The association thought it made them look bad, so they decided not to approve his application. Yuebai got mad, saying it wasn't Lu Ming's fault. If other creators were copying him, why blame her master? Fatty looked worried, pointing out that without joining the association, they wouldn't get copyright protection, which meant no money. Lu Ming went quiet for a moment, then smirked. He wasn't about to give up. He said those so-called creators were just trend-chasing clowns. He'd show them what a real card looked like. 2 weeks later, his table was stacked high with stick figure warrior cards. He stretched, picked one up, and told Yuebai it was time to go make some money. But just then, Yuebai's stomach growled loud enough for everyone to hear. She shyly asked if they could eat first. Lu Ming laughed and said he'd cook for her himself since it was a good day. Yuebai's eyes lit up instantly. She cheered and said she wanted fish. Soon enough, the table filled with the smell of freshly cooked fish. Yuebai's whole face lit up with excitement, saying it looked and smelled amazing. That's when Fatty appeared, trying to sneak in a seat. He grinned and teased Lu Ming, saying it was like he knew Fatty loved fish. But Lu Ming wasn't having it. He told Fatty to cut it out, reminding him that the meal was for Yuebai. He only called Fatty over to discuss card prices, so no freeloading. Yuebai gave Lu Ming a sweet smile and told him he deserved the fish head since he worked the hardest. Lu Ming got a little shy at that and quickly looked down. They started eating, but he frowned, reminding her they hadn't even discussed prices yet. Later, Lu Ming was outside the shop with a megaphone, shouting like a street vendor. He hyped up the insect cards, saying they were only 2,000 each, no tricks, no scams, once-in-a-lifetime stuff. People passing by started whispering. Some thought the price was too high, others doubted the quality. A few remembered his old watermelon ninja card and admitted it was kinda cool. To back him up, Lu Ming asked Yuebai to explain. She stepped forward and confidently pitched the product. She said these were pet cards that players could raise on their own. With the right training, they could grow past 6 stars, and even a lower star pet could sometimes outmatch a stronger one. The crowd still seemed unsure, but then one guy raised his hand and said he'd take 10, even asking to pay by card. Lu Ming happily swiped his payment. Soon, others gave in too, saying they'd try one just to see how it worked. Not far away, Fatty was secretly watching. When he was clear, he messaged Lu Ming with a grin. Back at the shop, Yuebai was worried, pointing out that even with Fatty's hype, they'd only sold 5 cards. But Lu Ming wasn't fazed. He said Fatty's role was just to warm things up and spread the buzz. He pulled out his phone and showed Yuebai what people were saying online. Some mocked the cards, calling them fake, but others were curious. A few even admitted they bought one and thought it was cool. Someone else posted that if anyone in Qingming City saw Lu Ming, they should grab one for them. Lu Ming couldn't hide his smile. The plan was working. Before long, the shop got crowded. People pushed in, yelling to get their cards first, stepping on each other in the rush. Meanwhile, far away on a quiet rooftop, a shadowy figure watched and muttered, wondering what Lu Ming was up to this time. Headmaster Jiang told Mr. Yang to take another look at Lu Ming's progress. Mr. Yang was shocked. He remembered Lu Ming starting at just 1 star. So how did he level up so quickly? The headmaster simply nodded, saying Lu Ming was truly special, and letting Yuebai study under him was definitely the right choice. Mr. Yang, who turned out to be the president of the Cardmaker Association, asked the headmaster to call Lu Ming over. That night, the headmaster contacted him. Lu Ming complained a little, saying he'd been working all day and wanted to rest, but the headmaster insisted it was important, and that someone else wanted to see him. Curious but a little annoyed, Lu Ming got dressed and made his way to the association. On the way, he kept wondering why everyone was being so mysterious. When he arrived, the headmaster welcomed him into the main hall. An older man with a cane stepped forward, smiling as he finally got to meet Lu Ming. He introduced himself as Zhang Yang, the president of Qingming City's Cardmaker Association. Lu Ming shook his hand and even joked about how he'd seen Zhang Yang's black and white photo on the wall, and for a second thought something bad had happened. The two of them laughed at that. Then Mr. Zhang got serious. He showed Lu Ming the Kuan card and asked if he really made it all by himself, pointing out that card layering was something only 4-star card makers usually knew. Lu Ming froze for a moment, thinking about how card layering worked. Normal cards could only hold so much, hundreds at best, but thousands? That was the secret behind gold cards and combo cards like the Lightning Origin card. Without that layered structure, pulling off such effects was impossible. He silently admitted he wouldn't have figured it out without Mr. Cat's help, though he couldn't reveal that part. If he did, it would raise too many questions. Finally, he sighed and gave a simple answer. He said he didn't do it alone, that his sister had guided him and taught him some advanced techniques. Zhang Yang laughed when he realized Lu Yan was Lu Ming's sister. He said that explained a lot since she was definitely one of a kind. Looking at the Kuan card again, he admitted it wasn't just creative like the watermelon ninja card. This one actually had real technique behind it. The layering was simple, but the structure was nearly perfect. He even patted Lu Ming on the shoulder, telling him he had talent and should keep pushing forward. The headmaster jumped in, jokingly asking if Lu Ming was going to teach Little by card layering that night. Lu Ming said yeah, he was planning to, so if they were done, he wanted to head out. Zhang Yang teased the headmaster about copying him all the time, but Lu Ming cut in and said he was leaving. As he walked away, Zhang Yang called after him, reminding him to take good care of Little Bai's lessons. Then he turned back and scolded the headmaster for letting his daughter stay at someone else's place. The headmaster just fired back, mocking Zhang Yang for hanging black and white photos of himself on the wall, and told him to swap it for a colored one already. Meanwhile, across town, Shenkai was fuming. He couldn't believe Lu Ming's card was getting so popular. He tried to calm himself, but deep down he was already ordering his people to copy the card right away. Back at the shop, Yuebai rushed to greet Lu Ming, asking what her dad wanted. Lu Ming brushed it off, saying it was about association stuff and that those old men were too much of a headache. Yuebai quickly changed the topic, pointing out that they had almost sold out all 300 cards and asking if they should stay up late to make more. Lu Ming shook his head, telling her she'd been working hard and deserved a break. While she rested, Lu Ming did the math in his head. At 2,000 each, that was 600,000 in total. After subtracting costs, they had about 590,000 profit. He couldn't believe it. In his past life, he'd never made this kind of money. But without copyright protection, someone could copy his cards at any moment. Yuebai noticed he hadn't logged off his computer and asked if he was still going to rest or keep working overtime. Lu Ming gave a tired smile and admitted he was thinking about the copyright problem. Right then, a message popped up on the screen. Mr. Lu Ming, congratulations. You now meet the requirements to join the association. Accept or decline. Yuebai's eyes widened with excitement, saying his application was finally approved. Lu Ming hovered his cursor over the decline button, while Yuebai quietly watched, her expression hard to read. Meanwhile, at a rival workshop, Qian Xinkai was examining one of Lu Ming's cards. He told his team that activating the fish form was easy, just release the card's energy. The real challenge, he explained, was those overlapping layers. They'd need a super skilled card maker to handle advanced processing. One employee agreed, but Qian Xinkai pointed out that hiring someone that talented was crazy expensive. Even on the black market, a single advanced talisman went for 10,000. Over in HR, Lu Ming overheard and asked what made a talisman that pricey. A female staffer explained that overlapping talismans weren't officially recognized yet because they were unpredictable and could flood the market. Chen Sihan, the HR manager, added that it was a big risk. Lu Ming immediately connected the dots. That was why copyright protection was so important. He realized his insect card wasn't just another overlapping talisman. The employee went on, saying the insect card was the first pet card ever, and its impact went beyond just card making. It was shaking up multiple professional fields. Lu Ming straightened up, telling her that he didn't want to stay a one-star forever, and neither did she want to stay stuck in HR. He pressed the point, card makers weren't meant to be under others forever, and they'd show everyone what they were capable of. Fired up, the employee agreed, saying they needed to get Lu Ming fully protected and prove themselves, even if regulations were slow to catch up. Everyone got to work on the copyright paperwork, while Zhang Yang muttered nearby about how relentless Lu Ming was. Back at the shop, the appraisal department manager had just left, and Yuebai ran up to greet Lu Ming. She was amazed, asking if he really got everything approved in just one meeting. Lu Ming shrugged and told Yuebai it wasn't a big deal, then asked if the insect card documents were ready. She held up a folder and said everything was approved. Lu Ming grinned, saying they were finally ready to launch. Meanwhile, at Qian Xingcai's place, he was fuming. He brushed off Lu Ming's production as high-efficiency assembly line nonsense, and swore he'd make up for what he lost last time. Wu Bai, a 4-star card maker, asked about the price for the Qian Guang insect card. Qian said 10,000, but then Wu Bai mentioned seeing the official copyright and blueprint for the insect card already uploaded in the association's database. Qian's face went pale. He panicked, wondering how the layered insect cards had already made it into the system. With the copyright news out, kids everywhere went wild over insect cards. They were comparing levels and evolutions. Some bragged about reaching level 135, while others were showing off tyrant insects or rare types. Fake cards also started flooding the market, trying to cash in. 20 days later, Yuebai brought a delivery box to the shop. Lu Ming told her to just set it down, then held up the income report. Each design sold for 5,000 stars, and after taxes and fees, they'd made 1,000,000 stars. They cheered and did a little happy dance, proud that 20 days of grinding, 16-hour shifts, spending 100,000 stars a day, had finally paid off. Lu Ming then told Yuebai he'd spoil her today and asked what she wanted. She immediately asked for the full sword cultivation manual. Lu Ming froze and checked her energy level. It was 150. He told her she was still a bit low, but promised to teach her basic inscription patterns first to help her level up faster. Yuebai nodded enthusiastically, promising to work hard and do her best. Lu Ming chuckled and promised Yuebai he'd get her a big bag of snacks later. He told her to go ahead and practice while he focused on breaking through to 2-star. Yuebai left, cheering him on as she went. Lu Ming turned to his delivery and pulled out a card labeled Divine Cat card. He muttered to himself, apologizing to Mr. Cat for upsetting him last time and explaining that he'd tried to understand better this time. He hoped the card would make things right. Before he could finish, Mr. Cat swiped at the cat he brought over, sending it flying across the room. The next morning, Yuebai woke up groggy and gasped when she saw Lu Ming's swollen face. He explained dryly that he'd gotten into another scuffle with the grumpy cat while trying to help it. Yuebai offered to get medicine, but Lu Ming told her he was fine and asked her to prep the energy cards instead. Today he was breaking through to 2-star. Looking at the card in his hand, he calculated his energy points. With the daily cultivation boost, he'd reach 2-star in 7 days. He chuckled at how convenient pay to win felt. As the energy inside him stretched open, what used to feel like too much now barely filled his capacity. When he finally broke through, Yuebai cheered. Lu Ming waved it off, saying it was just a 2-star breakthrough, nothing major. But he knew moving to 3-star would take 10,000 energy points. At 100 points a day, that meant 100 days, 10 million energy points in total. He sighed at the cost of shortcuts. Yuebai pointed out that money could speed things up, but Lu Ming said there were other ways too, exploring ruins, fighting monsters, visiting secret realms, basically all the adventure stuff fighters did. Yuebai got excited, grabbing her gear and weapon, ready to go. Lu Ming frowned, reminding her that 2-star card makers didn't go adventuring every day. He sat back, sipping tea, thinking about how they could still earn good money off the card. Cultivating fast while getting paid? That was a win in his book. Yuebai, holding a huge cup of tea, told Lu Ming that when she leveled up, she'd make a bunch of money and give it all to him. Lu Ming told her not to rush and just take her time. She promised she'd work hard and catch up to her master soon. Lu Ming thought back to how limited he used to be. With low energy, he could only make basic cards. Now, with more energy, he could finally try making 2-star cards. If he got better, maybe he could even design cards that helped others cultivate. The demolition cards he'd been making were overkill, expensive, hard to sell, and not really useful for actual cultivation. He needed something practical and sellable. He decided to try a new fusion. After absorbing and combining a card, something strange popped up, a tombstone with a white cloth. He blinked, confused, wondering if cards had gone modern. Curious, he searched online for tombstone card and found all kinds of bizarre descriptions, like sway with the dead and feel the thrill of the afterlife. Lu Ming stared at the screen and groaned. It was all a mess. He realized he'd have to figure out his own cards after all. He looked at the card again and groaned at the energy requirement. 10,000 points for a 3-star card was insane. Just thinking about it gave him a headache. Flipping the card over, the weird symbols made 0 sense, and he held his head in frustration, muttering to himself. Just as he was trying to calm down, the door opened. A small, shy girl walked in, her shiny green hair tied into 2 ponytails, looking nervous as she stepped inside. Lu Ming blinked in surprise. That had to be Fatty's dream girl, Xinghe. He quickly stood up and welcomed her, gesturing for her to look around. Xinghe stepped closer, shyly calling him Brother Lu Ming, blushing and holding her hands together. Lu Ming couldn't help but think how bold girls could be these days, and a cold sweat formed on his forehead. Just then, Little Bai's sharp voice cut through the air, asking Xinghe what she wanted. Lu Ming jumped a little. His apprentice never missed a chance to be blunt. Xinghe smiled sweetly, held up one finger, and said she wanted an insect card. Lu Ming raised an eyebrow. Something about her request felt a little off. Little Bai stared her down, clearly suspicious, while Xinghe kept looking innocent and cute. Lu Ming awkwardly stood between them, thinking how confusing girls could be. Trying to ease the tension, he laughed and reminded them they were all classmates. He handed Xinghe the card with a tiny discount. Little Bai didn't look impressed. After a short pause, Lu Ming waved goodbye, and Xinghe smiled, paid, and left. Once she was gone, Little Bai told him she'd always felt something was off about that girl. Lu Ming shrugged, focusing on a card he was holding, a high-level 3-star card that could really boost his card-making skills if he figured it out. He realized he needed to revisit the basics. He pulled up a website filled with essential books for Little Bai and clicked to buy them all. Then, with a sly grin, he told her to tell her dad he'd need to cover the cost. Little Bai called her dad, who said she didn't need the books yet, but Lu Ming argued that with her leveling up so fast, she'd need them soon. He even mentioned paying for express delivery, thinking to himself that he might as well read them too while teaching her. Smart move. As he was about to explain everything to Little Bai, something shiny caught his eye under one of the books. It was a golden card. Lu Ming pulled it out and stared. The card had a picture of an incredibly attractive woman who, oddly enough, looked a bit like him. Numbers 666 and 999 were printed on it. Little Bai noticed Lu Ming acting weird and asked what he was looking at. Trying to stay calm, he said it was nothing and claimed he was just checking the book quality. Then he quickly told her to take a break and go see her dad, giving her a gentle push toward the door. She looked confused and asked why he was being so sudden, and he just shrugged it off and reminded her to make sure her dad paid for the books. Once she left, he flipped the shop sign to temporarily closed. It was already 8 p.m. Lu Ming tossed the golden card on the table and freaked out, wondering why the card showed a woman that looked like him. He ran his hands through his hair, totally baffled. How did a card from a long-shot company end up here? Weren't the old photos deleted? Then it hit him, this wasn't the original. Someone had made a copy. He called the number on the card. A woman answered and explained that they offered every kind of service imaginable, even things you couldn't think of. Lu Ming asked her to promote the woman on the card, stressing that price didn't matter because it was urgent. She said they had a special virtual option for her image, but it wasn't available in person because of her high status. Lu Ming agreed to go ahead with it. Just then, there was a knock at the door. Lu Ming opened it and froze. A stunning woman stood there, introducing herself as number 999. Before she could explain further, Lu Ming cut her off, saying they should just get started. He lay down on the floor, slightly propped up, and gestured for number 999 to begin. She looked a bit surprised at his sudden rush but explained that once she initiated the illusion, he'd see the woman from the card. She added that she'd sync with the image to make it as realistic as possible, but Lu Ming waved her off, saying just the woman alone was fine and she could wait aside. Number 999 chuckled, calling him cautious, but inwardly wondered what kind of guy he was. She pressed a red button, counting down, and a bright flash filled the room. In front of Lu Ming appeared a hazy image of a stunning woman. The illusion transported him to a sparse room with a single bed covered in rosy pink sheets and a lone light bulb overhead. Suddenly, a voice called him handsome, and a voluptuous woman in a Lolita-style outfit appeared, complimenting him. Even though he knew it was an illusion of himself, he couldn't help but blush. He quickly realized he was getting flustered by his own image. Determined to resist, he smashed the illusory woman with a punch, shattering the image and feeling proud of his self-control. Outside the illusion, number 999 looked confused. It had only lasted 5 seconds. Lu Ming, frustrated, snapped at her to leave, reminding her he already paid. She gave an okay gesture and exited. After she left, Lu Ming slammed the card on the table, fuming and muttering about Little Fatty, who wasn't answering his phone. Little Bai entered quietly, holding a card. She explained she came back for some books to study. When she picked up the card, she noticed something strange and gave Lu Ming a teasing, mischievous look, joking about how good he looked as a girl and implying he had a weird hobby. Lu Ming panicked, grabbing her arms and insisting it wasn't him, that the girl just looked like him, and blaming Little Fatty for the mess. Little Bai, amused but willing to listen, let him explain. Just then, a phone rang loudly. Little Bai noticed it was the Qingming police station calling, making the situation even more tense. Lu Ming froze when the phone rang and answered, completely shocked. The voice on the other end confirmed that Little Fatty, his friend Zhang Xiaofei, was in custody at the Qingming police station. They needed the fine and any documents to cooperate. After the call ended, Little Bai, who had overheard everything, asked if Zhang Xiaofei really was Little Fatty. Lu Ming, annoyed, admitted it and muttered that he was useless now. He quickly decided they had to bail him out. It was late, the moon high in the sky, when Lu Ming finally got Little Fatty out. The kid looked completely dejected, hunched over with a miserable expression. Lu Ming demanded to know what happened, his eyes cold and full of barely contained frustration. Little Fatty, sniffling and teary, explained that he hadn't been doing anything wrong. He'd been working on an illusion for a client, was promised payment, then suddenly blacked out and ended up in the police station. Lu Ming gritted his teeth, sarcastically remarking how heroic the story sounded. He realized that Little Fatty was the one who had created the illusion. Trying to get more details, Lu Ming asked how he'd met these people. Little Fatty hesitated, embarrassed, so Lu Ming threatened to take him back if he didn't explain. Cornered, Little Fatty finally admitted he'd found a model's business card, called the number out of curiosity, and impressed the people with his illusion skills. Little Bai held up a small card and asked if it was the business card. Lu Ming, still angry, covered Little Fatty's eyes and told her it wasn't important now. What mattered was investigating the organization. Little Fatty explained the meeting had happened in the old town, a messy district where law enforcement rarely went. Without another word, Lu Ming stormed out, crumpling the business card under his foot. He wandered through the old town of Qingming City, streets deserted, littered with discarded cards and scraps. He consulted his map on his phone, turned the corner, and confirmed his location. This had to be the place. Lu Ming scoped out the old town and spotted a small villa tucked away. It looked like the kind of operation that was making serious money. He found a perfect rooftop across from it and climbed up for a better view. From up there, he could see everything clearly. Twirling the card between his fingers, he muttered about the old town, the shady stuff going on, and how this was it. He wasn't messing around. Holding 2 cards, he let a golden light swirl around him. Like before, the card summoned a bunch of monstrous creatures that plummeted toward the villa. 2 guards at the entrance were startled. They had ridiculous hair, one like a rooster, the other with a messy, weed-like style. They panicked, shouting at each other and trying to defend the villa, looking more funny than threatening. Lu Ming stayed hidden, watching the chaos unfold. The monsters collided with the guards, kicking up debris everywhere. The commotion drew attention from nearby folks who speculated if the Shark Gang was fighting the Sandpiper Gang again. Their businesses were always clashing. As the dust settled, the 2 guards pulled off some weird move called the Fortress of Love, twisting themselves into a heart shape. Lu Ming just stared, dumbfounded. Somehow, the villa's entrance was untouched. They quickly reported to their boss, claiming they had blocked the first wave. Then a loud, gruff voice boomed. Their big, blue-haired boss Sague of the Shark Gang, appeared and started scolding them, calling them useless lapdogs. The guards paled, stammering apologies, while their boss ranted about how all they could do was guard doors. From his rooftop, Lu Ming analyzed the scene. There were 12 men, 5 1-star cultivators, 6 2-star, and 1 3-star. Using his 2-star ability, he boosted his perception and easily sized up their ranks. Seeing a 3-star there made him frown. This was definitely going to be tricky. He leaned on his hand, thinking back to the 3 warrior cultivators at the mine and how complex this world was. Even with all his planning, calling the police wasn't an option. This was a place law enforcement didn't dare enter. The villa was quiet now, but Lu Ming knew the calm wouldn't last. Lu Ming shrugged and walked away, trying to look casual. For now, retreating was the smartest move. His main focus was figuring out where that weird photo of him in women's clothing came from, not starting a fight. It was late, the moon hanging high as he returned to his shop. He fired up his computer and pulled up Qingming City's wanted list. 2 names immediately stood out, Sague and Fan Er Yen. Lu Ming grabbed a pen and paper to jot down key details. Fan Er Yen caught his attention. He was listed as a former employee at multiple shady loan companies and involved in all kinds of illegal schemes. Lu Ming frowned, suddenly connecting the dots. He'd crossed paths with these types before. Fan Er Yen was clearly dangerous, the kind of person who preyed on those stuck in the loan shark's web, working alone, committing scams and kidnappings. Just then, his phone rang. A voice introduced themselves as from Durian Credit Company, claiming a wealthy young man was interested in him and willing to pay big money to meet him. The caller hinted that connecting with this man could set him up for life, but Lu Ming immediately realized it was Fan Er Yen. Before the caller could finish, he hung up, gripping his phone tightly and thinking the guy was practically asking for trouble. He checked his calendar. Today was the 6th, and figured he needed to handle this carefully to buy some time. A wave of nausea hit him, and he muttered about how intense these young masters could be these days. Meanwhile, elsewhere in a villa, Fan Er Yen was fuming at being hung up on. Sague, sitting across from him, looked confused until a message popped up on Fan Er Yen's phone. It was from Lu Ming, pretending to be Lu Man, saying it wasn't convenient to talk now but that he'd come on Saturday. Fan Er Yen lit up, giving Sague a confident thumbs up and muttering that everything had been arranged perfectly. Boss Wang, holding a photo of Lu Ming disguised as Lu Man, overheard and commented on how extraordinary the person in the photo was. Sague and Fan Er Yen exchanged glances and flattered him, but Boss Wang played it cool, teasing them slightly before leaving them curious about the real situation. Sague even dropped his cigar, leaning in to catch every word. Boss Wang held the photo of Lu Ming, Lu Ming disguised as Lu Man, carefully in both hands. He couldn't hide it, he was completely smitten. It was clear Boss Wang had fallen under her charm. 5 days flew by, and finally, it was the day of Lu Man's meeting with Boss Wang. Lu Ming slung a backpack over his shoulder and wore a baseball cap, a strange one with 2 little red horns on the front, plus a red scarf around his neck. He rushed out of the shop, telling Little Bai to stay behind and keep an eye on things. She asked when he'd be back, and he just said not long, trying to sound casual. Left alone, Little Bai could only watch him go, confused and wondering what he was up to. From a distance, Lu Ming scoped out the villa through binoculars. Everything was perfect: height, angle, distance. The villa had stepped up its security, 4 guards and reinforced walls. But that didn't faze him. He opened his backpack to reveal a bunch of bullhead cards, pulling out a special upgraded one. He muttered to himself that this time, things would end the way he planned. A few days ago, Little Bai had noticed the card looked unusual. Lu Ming had explained it was a newly developed stacked version, combining the flight and delay effects of past bullhead cards. Little Bai, ever perceptive, realized it would take a ton of energy to fly a herd of bulls, even with the upgraded card, and thought it might be useless. Lu Ming laughed and teased her, saying it wasn't for flying a whole herd. She jumped to conclusions. Now, back in the present, Lu Ming held 5 bullhead cards in his hands, eyes sharp and full of intent. With a flick of his wrists, he sent the cards flying into the air. He let them arrange themselves neatly, forming a circle over the villa. The sight immediately terrified Sague and his underlings. One of them yelled, pointing at the sky, while Sague bared his sharp teeth, panicked. Sague ordered his men to alert Boss Fan and Boss Wang. The guards rushed out, shouting about the aerial attack, but inside, Boss Wang and Fan Yen were still completely oblivious. Boss Wang, fanning himself lazily, wondered aloud if Lu Man was almost there and if anything unexpected might happen, completely unaware of the chaos forming above the villa. Fan Yen tried to calm Boss Wang, telling him not to worry and that Lu Man was being personally escorted. Boss Wang, full of confidence in his own judgment, mused that she'd definitely agree to the meeting. After all, his instincts had never failed him, and he had been quite the charmer in his younger days. Suddenly, a panicked underling burst in, pointing to the sky and stammering about cows falling from above. Before he could finish, Fan Yen smacked him on the head, frustrated with his constant overreactions. The underling insisted it was real, and even Boss Wang laughed at first, thinking it was a prank, but then his eyes widened in shock. The cows really were raining down, exploding on impact. Outside, Sague could only scream in frustration, completely powerless as the chaos continued. The cows kept plummeting, littering the ground with red glowing eyes, charging toward anyone in their path. Sague's knees went weak, and his men were in full panic mode, unable to handle the unexpected onslaught. From a safe distance, Lu Ming watched everything unfold. He analyzed the flight trajectory, noting how the cards had been perfectly designed to release at different heights and times. The sheer number of cows in the sky and the precision of the attack could easily reach 3-star power. Shaking his head, Lu Ming muttered to himself about the audacity of the shark gang using his image for this. He knew it was time to disappear. Just then, a sudden red light flashed behind him. Lu Ming spun around and froze. A gigantic, spherical eye, radiating an intense energy, was tracking him. The air around it crackled with power. Lu Ming realized he'd been spotted. He narrowed his eyes, sweat beading on his forehead, and considered the possibilities. This might be the work of a 4-star card, which meant whoever controlled it was wealthy and powerful, even if not a top-tier cultivator themselves. Without hesitation, Lu Ming sprinted down the rooftop, lungs burning, legs aching. He burst out of the building into the streets, where people were panicking, pointing, and whispering about the enormous eye in the sky. Rumors spread fast. Some thought it was the end of the world, others joked about aliens. Lu Ming kept his scarf pulled up, moving calmly through the chaos, his expression unreadable. As he approached the city limits, 2 men blocked his path, one wielding a club. They made it clear he wasn't leaving town easily. Lu Ming froze, a shiver running through him. Something felt off. Standing in front of him were Sague and Fan Yen, surrounded by menacing shark gang members. Fan Yen mocked him, pointing out his house had just been attacked, while Sague shouted, furious, complaining about the mess. Lu Ming stayed calm, scanning the scene and assessing the situation. Everyone else seemed alive. Maybe someone had used a 4-star card to protect them. Before he could react further, a deep, angry voice cut through the tension. Boss Wang appeared, glaring at Lu Ming, clearly furious. He made it obvious that gang disputes didn't concern him, and he wanted Lu Ming taken care of. Seeing him, Lu Ming realized Boss Wang must have been the one to save the others with the powerful card. Sague shouted, ordering his men forward. Clubs, bricks, knives, and machetes were raised as the gang charged, screaming in rage. One lunged at Lu Ming, swinging a machete, but Lu Ming was ready. He flicked a card into the air, and instantly, a herd of enormous bulls appeared, their eyes glowing fiercely. The shark gang froze, terrified. Within seconds, the bulls scattered them like pins at a bowling alley. One bull, carrying a massive sledgehammer, charged at Sague. He barely dodged, debris flying around him. Boss Wang and Fan Yen watched, shocked, while Fan Yen called out in alarm. Lu Ming stayed calm, analyzing the chaos. Dark clouds gathered overhead, and fat raindrops began to fall, quickly turning into a heavy downpour. Amid the storm, Sague caught the bull's sledgehammer mid-swing, eyes cold and focused, and shouted a challenge, channeling his power into his fist. The sudden energy surge caught Lu Ming off guard. Sague moved like lightning, striking the bull hard. The impact sent a shock through the bull and hit Lu Ming, knocking him to his knees. The shark gang leader now stood fully in front of him, a dangerous presence. Elsewhere, a young woman held her phone, dialing a number. All she got was the endless ringing tone. Rain hammered against the window as she waited, the hour growing late. Back with Lu Ming, he pushed himself up on the wet ground, holding his phone to his ear, listening listening closely, ready for what came next. Little Bai's voice came through Lu Ming's ear, asking when he'd be home and if she should wait for him for dinner since it was pouring outside. Lu Ming sounded soft, telling her he might be a bit late, letting out a small, painful cough. Little Bai, worried, asked if he was okay. He told her not to worry and asked her to prepare fish for him tonight. Her face lit up at the thought of fish, and she happily said she would. Lu Ming reassured her once more before ending the call. Meanwhile, Boss Wang, Fan Yen, and the other Shark Gang members had been watching silently, amazed at how calm Lu Ming stayed, taking a phone call in the middle of all the chaos as if nothing unusual was happening. Sa Gue, initially stunned, couldn't help but burst out laughing, slapping the table and joking that Lu Ming was surprisingly funny, asking if he'd gone daft from the earlier fight. He teased that whether Lu Ming survived today depended entirely on his mood. Boss Wang urged them to move faster, not wanting to keep Miss Lu waiting. Sa Gue, with a strange, bright smile, commented that despite the kid's foolishness, he had guts, a diamond in the rough, and he wanted him in the Shark Gang. Fan Yen immediately protested, uncomfortable at the idea, saying it didn't make sense after Lu Ming had caused so much trouble. Sa Gue dismissed him with a wag of his finger, mocking their short-sightedness. At that moment, Lu Ming stood, pulling a card from his bag and warning that he didn't want it to come to this, but they had forced his hand. Sa Gue, calm, joked that he was giving Lu Ming a chance, but Fan Yan's face turned pale, realizing something was wrong. Suddenly, a colossal water buffalo appeared behind Lu Ming, radiating a fierce aura, holding a huge hammer, horns razor-sharp, and a string of giant prayer beads around its neck. Lu Ming stood atop the beast, holding his card, telling them it was a special gift just for them and letting them admire its fierce eyes. Sa Gue frowned but steadied himself as the buffalo raised its weapon. In the next instant, the buffalo unleashed a devastating peerless tyrant leg strike toward Sa Gue. The impact was enormous, a loud explosion rocked the area, sending Boss Wang and Fan Yen flying and blasting rubble everywhere. Lu Ming locked eyes with Sa Gue, both tense and ready, as dust and debris swirled around them. The rain kept falling as the dust began to settle. Sa Gue had collapsed, struggling to stay upright, one arm bleeding badly, the mud mixing with the red streaks. He gritted his teeth and admitted that Lu Ming actually had some skill. From atop his massive water buffalo, Lu Ming stayed calm, even as Sa Gue threatened that the beast wouldn't last long against him. Lu Ming just shrugged, confident that he was even stronger than most three-star warriors. Then the card in Lu Ming's hand suddenly burst into flames. Sa Gue's jaw dropped as Lu Ming summoned a whole bunch of giant water buffalo, warning that he never intended to fight one-on-one. Sa Gue was stunned, realizing he was completely surrounded by enormous beasts, each with fierce eyes and weapons in their hooves. Fear hit him hard. The water buffalo charged, stomping the streets with earth-shaking force. Debris flew everywhere, and thick dust and smoke choked the area. Sa Gue's underlings panicked, scattering in every direction. The familiar streets quickly became unrecognizable ruins, covered in rubble and dust. Fan Yen told Boss Wang to use a defensive barrier, but Boss Wang could only dodge falling debris, explaining he had just one defensive card and needed to reach Lu Ming's target before it was too late. Fan Yen mocked him for being so lovesick, but then fled, shouting that Boss Wang couldn't even save himself. The remaining Boss Wang braced as a massive buffalo hoof slammed near him, throwing up debris. Just when it looked like Boss Wang was about to be crushed, Sa Gue arrived in the nick of time, saving him with his 3 tyrant fists. Sa Gue shouted for Boss Wang to run, admitting he couldn't hold off Lu Ming's rampage for long. Lu Ming's calm, cold voice cut through the chaos, warning that no one would escape. His Water Buffalo Legion was 3 times as powerful as normal demolition cards. Even 3-star warriors like Sa Gue couldn't withstand the assault. With the massive onslaught, Sa Gue's underlings were completely defeated, some trapped under rubble, others sprawled across the ground, powerless against the relentless power of Lu Ming's Water Buffalo Legion. Sa Gue was badly hurt, his arm bleeding badly, but he tried to roar that he'd fight to the very end. Lu Ming stayed calm, curious to see what kind of desperate move Sa Gue would make. But suddenly, Sa Gue dropped to his knees, begging for mercy. He claimed he had elderly parents at home and offered all his cards, even rare VIP ones, to Lu Ming, promising to live an honest life from now on. Lu Ming was stunned at how quickly he switched from fighting to groveling. Lu Ming walked over, taking the cards but returning just the bank cards. He told Sa Gue to take care of his parents and never get involved in anything bad again. If he really wanted to be a good person, he should make an honest living and pretend today never happened. Sa Gue, overjoyed, promised he'd live honestly and hurried away as Lu Ming instructed. Boss Wang, who had seen the whole thing, was clearly annoyed that Lu Ming let Sa Gue go. Lu Ming explained that he had no quarrel with Sa Gue and never intended to make a huge fuss, he only acted because he was forced into it. Boss Wang hesitated but asked if Lu Ming could help save someone, offering a 4-star card as a reward. Lu Ming raised an eyebrow, teasing that Boss Wang shouldn't just hand over something like that. Boss Wang, flustered, insisted, clearly still distracted by his own concerns. Lu Ming pocketed the card and asked about Lu Min. Boss Wang froze, shocked that Lu Ming knew her, and then Lu Ming coldly told him she was dead. The words hit Boss Wang like a thunderbolt. The realization crushed his love-struck heart, and he sank to his knees, rain pelting down on him, tears mixing with the storm. He couldn't quite process the truth, helpless and drenched, a fool for love. By morning, the authorities arrived at Qingming City's old district, now reduced to rubble. One of Sa Gui's underlings was handcuffed and being escorted by police. A tall officer radioed that the search and arrests were complete. Reporters quickly swarmed the scene. One introduced himself as Hu Zhidan from the Qingming Daily, commenting that this crackdown on criminals was good news and asking the officer for his thoughts. Hu Zhidan was holding his camera, pointing it at a police officer. The officer explained that the destruction in the old district wasn't caused by the government. They were still investigating who was behind it. Hu Zhidan, surprised, asked if they had any leads. The officer described a herd of enormous buffalo that had appeared out of nowhere, flattening everything in their path. One of them was as tall as a 6-story building, glowing like lightning, leaving total chaos behind. Hu Zhidan blinked, clearly thinking this sounded more like a fantasy than the news. The officer could only shrug, admitting he had nothing more to say. Meanwhile, Lu Ming and Xiao Bai were having dinner, watching the live broadcast. Lu Ming commented jokingly that even the news had turned into a story now. Xiao Bai, putting her hands on the table, gave him a serious look and reminded him that he promised to be home at noon but didn't return until evening, all muddy. She scolded him for making her wait and cooking the fish herself. Lu Ming laughed a little, admitting she saw right through him. He tried to explain it wasn't on purpose and mentioned he had put in a lot of effort today. Then he excitedly showed off that he had gotten a super cool 4-star card. Xiao Bai's mood shifted instantly, her eyes sparkled, and she begged him to show it to her. Lu Ming said not now. He was tired and wanted to rest, thinking to himself that he had just narrowly avoided trouble today. Remembering something, he told her to receive a card reader arriving tomorrow. Xiao Bai agreed, saying she would wash the dishes while he rested. Lu Ming waved to her from the door, wishing her sweet dreams. Once inside his room, he locked the door and finally relaxed. Looking at the bag holding the 4-star card, he thought his troubles were finally over. He also checked the stack of 3-star energy cards he had taken from the Shark Gang leader, worth a few million yuan. He had used almost 200 cards in that fight, including demolition cards, giant cards, and energy recovery cards. The total cost was around 120,000 yuan. He compared it to the last time he had splurged on a 648 yuan game pack and told himself this definitely didn't count as extravagant, though he still winced a little at the expense. Lu Ming dumped all the cards he'd collected onto his bed. Then he remembered the 4-star card Boss Wang had given him and picked it up. The moment he looked at it, he froze, amazed at how low its energy consumption was, only 2,000 points. He studied the card carefully. The back had weird patterns and no serial number. He remembered trying to stack energy replenishment cards before, but they always failed when placed on top. They could only go at the bottom, and the base could only handle so much energy before collapsing. But this card was different. It seemed like it could handle unlimited energy stacking, reducing energy consumption to an extreme. Lu Ming's eyes lit up with excitement. Carefully, he put the card away, noting the shimmer it gave off, and couldn't help blurting out that he had really struck gold. Amazing. Later, the morning sun was just peeking over the horizon when a delivery truck rolled up outside Lu Ming's shop. The driver dropped off a package, and Yuebai politely thanked him before he left. Lu Ming's eyes lit up as he looked at the box. Finally, his brand new Super Pro Max 888 card reader had arrived. Excited, he grabbed a cutter, ripped open the package, and proudly admired the shiny, high-tech machine inside. Folding his arms, he grinned, feeling cool about it. Yuebai, on the other hand, tilted her head and said it looked exactly like something her master would own. In other words, kind of ugly. Lu Ming ignored her little jab and told her to test it out. She quickly placed a card onto the machine, which buzzed and hummed before displaying some details. The card turned out to be 1-star, S rank, with a decent attack effect. Lu Ming nodded with satisfaction, impressed that the machine could analyze even damaged or unauthenticated cards. Yuebai couldn't wait any longer and urged him to check the 4-star card. But Lu Ming held her back, saying they needed to be cautious with something so valuable. He told her to shut the door first. Just as Yuebai was about to do that, a police officer suddenly appeared. Surprised, she stopped when he raised his hand and told her to hold on. The officer poked his head inside, asking why the shop was closed so early. Yuebai, still flustered, greeted him as Officer Zhang and asked why he came without notice. He explained there'd been an incident in the old district the night before and he was just checking up on ability users. As he stepped in, he quickly recognized the shop as Boss Lu's and joked that it was probably a waste of time to even investigate here. Lu Ming came out laughing, joking that if he admitted to being involved, would Officer Zhang even believe him? Then, with his usual charm, he warmly invited the officer in and asked Yuebai to make tea. Officer Zhang laughed along, clearly enjoying Lu Ming's playful attitude. While glancing around the shop, the officer noticed Yue Bai and teased that she looked about 16. Lu Ming quickly explained that she was just a friend's daughter helping out for a while, and he didn't have the money to hire an assistant anyway. Officer Zhang chuckled at his smooth talk and requested some jasmine tea, though strangely, he said, without the jasmine, which made Yue Bai frown in annoyance. As he looked around more closely, Officer Zhang suddenly spotted one of the buffalo cards. Lu Ming instantly felt tense, a bit of sweat forming on his forehead. The officer adjusted his glasses and asked if Boss Lu was planning to profit from the old district's redevelopment. For a second, Lu Ming's heart skipped, but he managed to keep calm and replied with a compliment, saying Officer Zhang was as sharp-minded as he was strong. The officer accepted the praise modestly and handed Lu Ming a form to fill out. While sipping his tea, Officer Zhang's radio suddenly buzzed. He quickly grabbed it and responded with a loud, "Go ahead." Whatever he heard made him exclaim in shock before confirming he understood. Then he checked his phone and muttered the name Wang Tianjun, a big name being called the Bull Demon King after leveling the old district. He showed the news to Lu Ming, saying that with someone this powerful stepping in, their little police station didn't need to worry anymore. Hearing that name, Lu Ming quietly repeated it, remembering Boss Wang from before, the man who had once confidently said his father, Wang Tianjun, could handle everything. Back then, Lu Ming hadn't cared about those words, thinking no one could stop those giant buffalo creatures. But now, hearing the same name again, things felt different. Officer Zhang finished his tea, left the form behind, leaving Lu Ming lost in thought. Lu Ming glanced at the form in his hand, ready to ask something. But before he could, the officer waved it off, saying it wasn't needed anymore and to just throw it away. With that, Zhang walked out, and Lu Ming simply waved after him without much fuss. Left alone, Lu Ming began to think. From the looks of it, Wang Xian must have asked his father to step in and stop the destruction. At least the kid wasn't completely heartless. Before his thoughts could go deeper, Yue Bai suddenly called him. She was full of excitement, urging him to test the 4-star card already. Lu Ming chuckled helplessly at her impatience and playfully ruffled her hair, joking that she was even more eager than him. He carefully placed the 4-star card onto the scanner. The machine buzzed and flickered, loading data on the screen. Both of them leaned in, their eyes glued to the display. Soon, the card's details popped up. Its name was Falling Sword, a 4-star SS grade card linked to the sword cultivator profession, with enhanced sword chi as its attack effect. Lu Ming frowned slightly at the details, muttering the words, sword cultivator. What surprised him even more was Yue Bai's reaction. Her eyes lit up in excitement as she repeated the word, thrilled at what it meant. She couldn't stop praising him, saying how amazing he was. Lu Ming brushed it off humbly, though he also knew this was no ordinary card. Sword cultivator cards were rare, extremely powerful, and very hard to seal. As he thought more about it, he remembered that most sword cultivator cards only boosted sword chi or sealed small fragments of it, while the original ones required massive energy. Just as he was lost in thought, Yue Bai broke his focus, asking brightly if he had prepared this card especially for her. Lu Ming placed both hands on her shoulders, his face turning serious. He told her that yes, the card was meant for her, but she would need to increase her energy before she could actually use it. Curious, he asked how much she had right now. Yue Bai replied softly, 300. That answer hit him hard. Lu Ming went quiet for a moment, then gently told her she still needed to train more. He promised to keep the card safe until she was ready. Yue Bai's worried voice showed she was a little disappointed, but she nodded. Just then, there was a knock at the door. Both of them looked toward it as the sound echoed through the shop. When they opened it, a stunning young woman was standing there. What caught Lu Ming's attention immediately was the beauty mark near her eye, exactly like his own. Meanwhile, in another room somewhere else, a different scene played out. A beautiful woman named Lu Jie scolded a man for arriving late, saying she thought he'd forgotten about their meeting. The man, scratching his head awkwardly, apologized and said he'd just been busy. This was Chu Xiao, a special ability user, and he asked what was so important that they had to meet in person instead of just talking over the phone. As he spoke, however, his gaze kept wandering to Lu Jie's chest, making his face turn red. She raised an eyebrow and called him out for not looking her in the eye and staring too long. Flustered, Chu Xiao tried to explain himself, but she cut him off by handing him a USB drive. Her tone turned cold when she noticed his lingering expression, warning him sharply. Embarrassed, Chu Xiao bowed, quickly took the drive with both hands, and muttered excuses. To his horror, he realized he had a small nosebleed from the situation and coughed awkwardly, blaming his own excitement. Lu Jie's face stayed icy. She told him the matter was very important, which was why she had to deliver it in person. She warned him not to tell anyone. Then she picked up a photo showing herself with a young boy, both sharing the same striking amethyst-colored eyes and identical beauty marks under them. Quietly, she asked Chu Xiao to also check on how the boy was doing. The scene shifted back to a peaceful morning sky filled with soft clouds. Fatty Zhang arrived at Lu Ming's shop early, grinning as he stepped inside. Lu Ming, surprised to see him at that hour, asked why he had come so early. Fatty laughed and teased, asking if Lu Ming had missed him, saying he had great news. Lu Ming, used to his over-the-top entrances, wasn't impressed. He muttered that anything involving this guy usually meant trouble. Without even looking at him, Lu Ming told Yuebai to pack up the gear and the card, and she quickly obeyed. Of course, Fatty's eyes immediately locked onto the fancy new machine on the table. He rushed over, gawking at it and asking if Lu Ming had suddenly struck gold. He wanted to check out the card too. Lu Ming casually told him it was anti-pervert tech and asked if he still wanted to see it. That shut Fatty up for a second, but he quickly laughed it off, saying Lu Ming shouldn't keep bringing up old embarrassing memories. Lu Ming, getting impatient, told him to quit stalling and say what he came for. He even teased that last time Fatty's idea of a big haul turned out to be just 10 items. So how many was it this time? Fatty proudly said, 100. That number made Lu Ming raise an eyebrow. Now that was interesting. He asked what Fatty was plotting. Fatty explained he'd landed a job, scouting an area, mapping the terrain, and creating an illusion of it. The payout was 300,000. His eyes lit up with greed as he suggested they team up. Lu Ming leaned back, pretending to be shocked, then joked that Fatty was overestimating him. He even said he probably couldn't beat Fatty in a straight fight. Yuebai popped up too, backing her master and accusing Fatty of trying to trick him. Fatty ignored her, turning serious. He pointed at Lu Ming and said he wasn't fooling anyone. He claimed last night's mystery expert in the old district was clearly connected to him. Lu Ming brushed it off, calling it nonsense, and reminded him that Wang Tianjun had already taken the credit. But Fatty pushed harder, saying it wasn't just about that incident. He pointed out how Lu Ming had turned a failing pharmacy into a successful business, guided people out of danger, and pulled off miracles that no ordinary pharmacist could. Those words hit close to home. A little sweat formed on Lu Ming's forehead. Yuebai quickly jumped in, calling Fatty's words nonsense, but Fatty just brushed her off and even started massaging Lu Ming's shoulders like they were old pals. Lu Ming lifted his chin proudly and pretended to consider. Finally, Fatty said they should settle it, so Lu Ming told him the number of tokens needed and even flashed a QR code, hyping it up with a discount and bonus offer. Excited, Fatty immediately sent the money, announcing the transfer was done. He was just about to start talking mission details when Lu Ming casually pushed him toward the door, saying, "See ya." Fatty was stunned, asking what that meant. Weren't they going to plan? Lu Ming shrugged and said he only agreed to give a discount, not to join the job. The mission was Fatty's problem. Poor Fatty was left flustered while Yuebai laughed, saying she really thought Master was going to team up with him. Lu Ming scoffed, asking who in their right mind would team up with that guy. That was just asking for headaches. Once things calmed down, Lu Ming's thoughts turned serious. He put the tokens on the table and realized the old district incident had bigger consequences than he expected. If Wang Tianjun hadn't stepped up, he might have been dragged into the mess himself. He knew he couldn't rely on his usual bull cards anymore. They were too recognizable. He needed something new. He swept the old cards aside and sat at his computer, scrolling through options. The demolition cards were powerful but too reckless, and the bull cards were sturdy but far too slow. Neither had the intelligence he needed. After a moment of thought, his eyes locked on a new option, Summon Spirit. He tapped the screen with a satisfied smile, saying this one was perfect. The next day, at his shop, a student walked in asking for 10 watermelon ninja cards and 10 cudgel cards. Lu Ming told him everything was sold out and suggested he come earlier next time. The student exploded in frustration, ranting that he worked himself half to death writing manuscripts every day and still couldn't buy what he needed because it was always sold out. Lu Ming quickly tried to calm him down, urging him not to get so worked up, but the guy was still fuming. Yuebai quickly whipped out her phone and pulled up a QR code, telling the upset customer to scan it and join their group. She explained that he could stay updated, chat with others, and even grab some limited time offers there. Surprisingly, the customer calmed down, adjusted his glasses, and checked the screen before leaving. Lu Ming was impressed and gave her double thumbs up, saying he didn't expect her to have such good business sense. Yuebai's face lit up, and she said it was all thanks to her master's teaching. But Lu Ming quickly turned serious. He reminded her not to let this affect her studies and asked if she had finished the card-making task from yesterday. With a big smile, Yuebai proudly handed over the stack, saying she'd made 51-star spirit summoning cards. Inside, Lu Ming was thrilled. Money was coming in, cards were being crafted, and Yuebai was proving more useful every day. Outwardly though, he just smiled, patted her head, and told her not to get too full of herself. She obediently replied that she understood. He then asked her to stay behind and watch the shop while he worked on new card research. She agreed without hesitation. Looking over the cards, Lu Ming thought to himself that while making 1-star cards wasn't too hard, Yuebai's speed was still impressive. She really was becoming a huge help. Curious, he decided to try combining 7 of the cards. Feeding them into the machine, he waited until a new card popped out. Excited, he placed it back into the machine to see the result. A tiny spirit appeared, barely reaching his knee. Lu Ming squatted down, staring at it in disbelief. He muttered that with this size, how was it supposed to help in a fight? And 7 of them together? What were they supposed to do? Rescue someone's grandpa? He scratched his head, completely exasperated. This wasn't at all what he had imagined. He had been expecting something big and powerful, maybe a giant spirit with glowing eyes and a weapon in hand. Instead, he got these cheerful little things. As if to make it worse, one of the tiny spirits looked up at him with a smile and casually asked if they were having chicken for dinner. Lu Ming ignored it, but the whole situation made him rub his temples. He wasn't ready to give up, though. He immediately grabbed 7 2-star cards and tried combining those. When the process was done, he slowly opened the new card, only to be stunned. It showed a grave with a little flag stuck on top. He nearly dropped it, wondering if he'd somehow offended someone's ancestors. Why did graves keep popping up in his cards? He was completely frustrated, but then he noticed something strange. The card only consumed 5,000 energy points. Curious, he pulled out another card for comparison. Studying the backs carefully, he realized the designs were different. The new one was far more refined, with cleaner and more efficient lines. That's when it hit him, the card had been optimized. If this was connected to the original Apex Ray card, then its energy cost had been cut in half, from 10,000 down to 5,000. That kind of reduction was insane. He thought to himself that if he could master this optimization method, he could lower the requirements for high-level cards, making them usable at much lower levels. Imagine creating overpowered cards that only needed level 2 to activate. The idea sent a thrill through him. 2 days later, though, his excitement was interrupted. A pile of cards lay scattered across the table. Lu Ming was at his desk, carefully drawing lines on the back of a card. After a long while, he finally stopped and looked at it with pride. He had done it, a brand new card. The reader displayed its details. 3-star rank, SS grade, summon type, with the ability to materialize energy and even have consciousness. Yuebai, standing next to him, was amazed and urged him to test it right away. But Lu Ming, acting calm and confident, said it wasn't safe to try here. He needed a wide, open space. Not long after, he reached the outskirts of the city. His phone navigation announced the destination, and he looked around at the empty land stretched out with mountains in the distance. The sky was clear, the sun shining, and the whole place felt perfect for testing. He set down his equipment, ready to start. But just as he was preparing, chaos broke out. Something barreled toward him at high speed. It was Little Fatty, sprinting for his life with a giant rat chasing close behind. The beast had long fangs and sharp claws, and Little Fatty was screaming as he ran. A little earlier, the scene had been different. Little Fatty was with 3 other men, showing off an illusion he'd created, claiming it looked exactly like reality. The man in the brown jacket wasn't sure, so he asked for his big brother's approval. Big brother, busy fiddling with explosives, barely looked up before giving the go-ahead. Soon after, the deal was sealed, and 30,000 was transferred. Little Fatty, grinning ear to ear, waved goodbye and bragged that his illusion skills were top-notch. As he walked away with Xiaoyu whispered that the fan brothers they just dealt with didn't look trustworthy. He explained who they were, mineral traders with a bad reputation, and their strongest sibling was a 4-star cultivator. But Little Fatty brushed it off, saying they needed money and didn't have time for gossip. Then Xiaoyu spotted something unusual, a massive rat curled up around 3 eggs. He called it a Yanhua beast, rare and extremely valuable. Excited, he explained that its eggs could fetch a fortune. But before he could warn further, he realized Little Fatty had already snatched 2 of the eggs. Xiaoyu broke into a cold sweat, scolding him, but Fatty just shrugged, saying the beast was asleep and wouldn't notice. That's when the explosion went off. The fan brothers had set off their charges, shaking the ground and sending smoke into the sky. The deafening blast startled the beast awake. When it saw Fatty holding its eggs, it went into a frenzy. Fatty panicked, stammering in fear, while Xiaoyu screamed at him for touching the eggs in the first place. From a distance, Lu Ming watched everything unfold. Little Fatty tripped over a rock and went tumbling, while Xiaoyu rushed back, bow in hand. Deciding they had no choice, Xiaoyu fired a powerful arrow that froze the beast in place. Fatty was stunned and complained that Xiaoyu should have done that earlier, but Xiaoyu sighed, saying that arrow was rare and he only had one a day. The relief didn't last long. The ice cracked, and the beast transformed into an even fiercer form, its body blazing with heat. Both Fatty and Xiaoyu were horrified, realizing they were in big trouble. Just when it seemed hopeless, something unexpected happened. A card fell from the sky and landed in front of the beast. A white flag appeared, and then a massive hand erupted from the ground, gripping the flagpole. A giant bull-like creature slowly rose up, teeth gnashing, its presence terrifying. Fatty and Xiaoyu were frozen in shock as the beast loomed over them. Meanwhile, the giant rat opened its mouth wide and unleashed a fiery blast straight at it. The huge bull-like beast didn't even flinch. It just brushed the fireball aside with one hand, making it burst harmlessly in the air. Then it clenched its fist, powered up, and slammed it down with so much force that the ground cracked and debris shot everywhere, even hitting Xiaoyu and Little Fatty. The giant rat, realizing it couldn't handle this monster, panicked and ran off. Little Fatty freaked out, shouting in terror, asking what kind of creature this was. Xiaoyu, covered in sweat, said he had never seen anything like it either and told him they should just run. The two of them quickly helped each other up and sprinted away. From a distance, Lu Ming watched everything through his binoculars. He thought to himself that those two were always a headache, but luckily, he had used his card just in time. Seeing the summoned warrior's strength, he smiled in relief, saying it was amazing. The warrior had taken down a level 3 monster in one move. That meant Lu Ming could level up faster too. But then, out of nowhere, a voice rang inside his head. The voice complained, asking if Lu Ming had really summoned him just to fight a rat. Lu Ming was shocked and asked if this voice belonged to the tomb warrior. The voice confidently introduced itself as War God McLaren. Hearing that, Lu Ming was stunned and thought it was awesome. The War God then asked if Lu Ming needed anything else. Excited, Lu Ming casually asked if he could help carry his heavy testing equipment. The War God went silent for a moment, then snapped, saying he was a world-destroying War God, not a delivery boy. Lu Ming quickly backed off, thinking maybe the War God had a point. Flustered, he then asked why the War God didn't chase down the beast and finish it. The War God told him to come closer, so Lu Ming nervously walked over. But when he got there, he was shocked. The mighty War God was actually digging the ground with a shovel. Lu Ming held his head in disbelief, muttering that this couldn't be real. The War God, still digging, told him that even his little minions at least ran around and did something useful, so why was Lu Ming just standing there? Meanwhile, Lu Ming's minions were already busy digging a hole deeper than his height, asking if they should keep going. Embarrassed, Lu Ming told the War God he should take the lead instead. That annoyed the War God, who asked if that was really how you talk to someone of his status. Lu Ming quickly explained that a fighter needs to take initiative and not just stay defensive. Still feeling let down, Lu Ming sighed, resting his chin on his hand. He thought to himself that maybe he wouldn't get much out of this, but at least he could use the War God as a defensive card for now. Somewhere else, the ground shook as explosions ripped through the earth, smoke and dust filling the air. A pair of glasses hit the ground, crushed under the boot of a muscular man. This was Fan Zhe, who had another guy pinned down by the hair. He shouted angrily, asking why Yidong had blown up the mine entrance. He reminded him that family members were already gone, so what was the point of fighting anymore? Yidong, beaten and bruised but still refusing to back down, glared at him. He called Fan Zhe a backstabber who tricked his own brothers, saying the mine had cost lives to secure, and yet Fan Zhe kept it all for himself. He also accused him of stealing the water spirit core to level up his strength. Fan Zhe just laughed coldly. He said it didn't matter how he got his power, only that he was on top now. The mine belonged to him, and if Yidong surrendered, maybe he'd even toss him some scraps. Yidong, still stubborn, warned him that he and fourth brother had planted explosives everywhere and left trackers. If he pressed the switch, Fan Zhe's carefully built cultivation grounds would be exposed to the world. Meanwhile, Lu Ming crawled out of a tunnel, cursing his bad luck. He thought he should have left much earlier instead of digging around. Just then, a massive explosion shook the area, followed by fire and thick black smoke rising like a pillar into the sky. Lu Ming guessed it came from the direction Xiaoyu and Little Fatty had gone, but he couldn't figure out what was happening. Back at the confrontation, Yidong proudly shouted that Fan Zhe's mine was exposed. But Fan Zhe stayed calm. With a smug tone, he reminded him that he had the water spirit core, and then summoned a mist barrier, covering the whole outer plains in a thick blue haze. He confidently said no one would ever find his mineral vein now. Yidong wasn't impressed. He smirked and revealed he had hired Chu Xiao, someone who wouldn't be fooled by a little mist. That name made Fan Zhe snap, grabbing Yidong by the collar, furious that he'd dare bring in the famous Cloud Hand detective to cut off his family's last source of wealth. Yidong mocked him, saying the Fan family was already ruined because of people like him. At the same time, far away, Chu Xiao was casually drinking at a bar. He coughed a little, brushing it off with a grin, joking that maybe a girl was thinking about him. The purple-haired woman next to him laughed, saying he was funny. Just then, a news report came on about a heavy fog rolling into the outer plains. Chu Xiao paused, realizing that was exactly where his client had sent him, and set off right away. Back with Lu Ming, he trudged through the eerie landscape, complaining to himself. Wild beasts, explosions, and now fog. This place was a nightmare. Suddenly, he spotted Divine Cat slipping away. Lu Ming called after it, saying it was still hurt and shouldn't run off, but the cat ignored him. Grumbling, Lu Ming dropped his heavy gear and thought maybe it was better if one less ancestor was hanging around. Still, uneasy, he eventually ran after the cat. The cat led him closer to voices. They overheard Fanzai angrily demanding to know who else Dung had hired besides Chu Xiao. The cat's sharp eyes immediately locked onto the glowing pendant on Fanzai's neck. Fanzai, losing patience, lifted Dung by the throat, warning him not to expect any brotherly mercy. Just then, the cat leapt in with lightning speed, scratching across Fanzai's face. The sudden strike left a mark, and Fanzai, furious, glared at the small creature. He shouted angrily, demanding to know where it came from, before swinging at it. His fist connected, knocking the cat back in a spray of dirt. He followed up with a kick and an elbow, making the cat cough weakly. Grinning smugly, Fanzai grabbed the cat by its tail, taunting it. But while he was busy mocking the little creature, he suddenly realized Dung had vanished. Searching the cave, he shouted his name, only to find out that Lu Ming had already dragged Dung into a corner, trying to help him. Lu Ming whispered for Dung to wake up. Dung coughed weakly and opened his eyes, confused about who Lu Ming was. Mistaking him for Chu Xiao, he grabbed Lu Ming's hand and begged him to chase after Fanzai. Lu Ming froze, trying to explain he wasn't who Dung thought. But Dung shoved a red and white device into his hand, saying it held coordinates to the minerals. He explained that finding those minerals would lead to a special energy card his father had made. He warned Lu Ming about the strong defenses around it, then promised that if he got him out later, he'd be rewarded with more wealth than he could ever spend. Dung urged him to leave quickly before Fanzai returned. Lu Ming tried again to clarify, but Dung suddenly choked and collapsed, badly injured. Lu Ming panicked as Fanzai appeared, his hand gripping Dung's head while mocking him for always acting so self-righteous. Crimson droplets hit the ground as Fanzai sneered, speaking as if Dung's resistance had always been pointless. Fanzai then turned his attention to Lu Ming. With a cold voice, he gave Lu Ming two options: act like nothing happened and hand over the device, or end up as another forgotten creature. Hearing this, Lu Ming was horrified. His thoughts spun: had Fanzai really taken down the cat? The idea filled him with anger. Desperate, Lu Ming tried to summon his card, but the system beeped back. No energy left. He had only brought enough for one summon. Panic set in. Fanzai noticed the commotion, glaring at him and demanding to know if he was trying something sneaky. Lu Ming nervously tried to smooth things over, but before Fanzai could act, the ground shook. Rocks fell, and out of the shadows appeared a massive beast, an enormous version of Divine Cat. Fanzai turned in shock, blocking the cat's powerful swipe with both arms. To Lu Ming's surprise, the cat actually spoke, telling him to run. Stunned, Lu Ming thought, it's alive. It can talk. The cat, however, wasn't in the mood for chatter. It urged him again to get moving. Lu Ming cursed his empty energy meter but remembered the coordinates Dung had given him. He told the cat to hold on while he went to find the energy card, then ran deeper into the cave with the map in hand. Meanwhile, the giant cat and Fanzai clashed head-on. Their fight shook the cavern, each refusing to back down. The cat's larger size gave it a slight edge, but Fanzai planted himself firmly, grabbed its forelegs, and delivered a crushing strike that sent the beast flying back in a storm of dust. Fanzai watched the cat leap through the air and realized something. Its strength and speed had grown way beyond normal. This wasn't just some stray. He braced himself, deciding it was time to get serious. The cat landed lightly, sparks of energy flashing in its eyes, and Fanzai activated the glowing sphere on his necklace. In an instant, protective armor wrapped around him, changing his whole look. Meanwhile, Lu Ming was running deeper into the cavern. Both sides of the path were lined with glowing crystal-like ores that pulsed with pure light. He couldn't help but think how massive this deposit was, and how much cleaner the energy felt compared to anything he'd seen before. Following the signal on his device, he stopped when he reached the heart of the vein. At the center was a small pool, surrounded by golden ore, and floating right in the middle was a 4-star energy card. The power coming off it was unlike anything he had ever felt. Looking around, he noticed several cave entrances, each marked with strange mask-like patterns. He remembered Fan Yidong's warning about defensive wards and thought there had to be a catch. To test it, Lu Ming summoned a spirit and told it to carefully grab the card. The little guy even gave a thumbs up like he totally understood. As the spirit got closer, Lu Ming called out reminders, telling it to be careful. But the moment it touched the card, the cave markings lit up bright red, firing beams of energy that all converged on the spirit. Shocked, Lu Ming saw the spirit's form swell before bursting apart, dropping the card back into the water. The cavern shook, rocks fell, and the trap revealed just how dangerous the place was. Outside, Fanzai saw the tremors and figured Lu Ming had already reached the mineral vein. He turned back to the massive cat, admitting it had pushed him to use his energy armor. But he didn't have time to drag the fight out anymore. With a serious look, he rushed in, blasting the cat back with a clash, then followed up with a heavy punch. The cat dodged at the last second, and the strike smashed the nearby rocks into pieces. The moment the cat hit the ground, Fan Zhe charged, fists flying. The two went at it hard, trading powerful blows in a non-stop clash. After a while, one of Fan Zhe's punches sent the cat sprawling. It let out a pitiful meow, wriggling on the ground, while Fan Zhe stood over it, looking fierce and wild. Meanwhile, Lu Ming was still trying to process the earlier explosion. He marveled that the blast had been so intense, yet the card stayed completely unharmed. Clearly, the card was protected by a super strong energy layer, combining offense and defense. Trying to grab it now would have been impossible without triggering the lasers. Then he realized something important. The laser beams were highly directional, designed to pierce straight through a target. Thinking back, he understood that the spirit he'd sent had exploded not because the card's defense was destroyed, but because the spirit itself was unstable and had reacted violently to the energy. These little guys were basically living energy bombs. Lu Ming sighed, realizing his 2-star energy wasn't enough to summon a stronger card. He quickly called all his spirits together. Using a pen, he marked their foreheads with numbers to assign tasks, then led them in a ritual gesture, telling them to offer up our hearts. The spirits moved in sync with him, ready for action. One by one, they positioned themselves on the defensive carvings around the cave entrances, sealing the traps. Number 7 stood right in front of the card, waiting for the signal. Hidden behind a boulder, Lu Ming counted down, 3, 2, 1, and number 7 snatched the card just as the defenses tried to activate. The spirits immediately suppressed the system, stopping it in its tracks. Explosions rocked the cavern, but Lu Ming stayed protected behind the boulder, covering his ears. When the dust settled, number 7 proudly held the card high. Lu Ming couldn't contain his excitement. He had done it. He grabbed the card and bolted, thinking about the cat and hoping it was okay. Back at the fight, the cat had shrunk back to its smaller form. Fan Zhe laughed coldly, mocking it for being tiny again. The little cat was furious but couldn't do anything. Fan Zhe then summoned a swirling energy vortex, warning that he wouldn't hold back on small animals. Fan Zhe froze when he saw the tiny army of spirits swarming him. He took a step back, clearly surprised, as one spirit jumped onto his arm. Soon, more spirits joined in, overwhelming him from all sides. He was completely surrounded, struggling to keep control. Meanwhile, the cat was badly hurt, lying on its side. Lu Ming quickly scooped it up and carried it behind a big boulder for safety. He scolded the cat lightly, telling it not to run off and leave him again. The cat stayed quiet, letting Lu Ming check the situation. He muttered to himself, noticing Fan Zhe wasn't showing all his strength yet. Back at the fight, Fan Zhe growled, trying to intimidate the spirits. Lu Ming, watching from afar, felt a rush of satisfaction seeing Fan Zhe take the bait. Suddenly, a huge explosion shook the cavern, sending rocks and dust everywhere. When it cleared, the cave entrance had partially collapsed, sealing the way behind them. Outside, a man checked his device and realized he'd reached the end of his map, confused because no mine was marked there. He decided to head back to the city to consult Lu Yen. Inside, Lu Ming stayed safe behind his boulder, holding the cat and thinking the explosion must have taken out Fan Zhe. He decided it was time to leave, but the cat scratched him twice, leaving painful marks. Lu Ming yelled at it, frustrated, as the cat casually licked its paws, acting innocent. Suddenly, Fan Zhe appeared, stomping on the boulder with a massive foot. He was alive, dust-covered, his energy armor destroyed, and absolutely furious. He threw a giant rock toward Lu Ming and the cat, but the cat leaped forward, splitting the rock with its claws, keeping them both safe. The cat charged straight at Fan Zhe, taking a hit meant for Lu Ming and injuring its front claws. Fan Zhe mocked Lu Ming, thinking he needed the cat for protection, unaware that a dark figure was approaching from behind. The McLaren war god swung a punch, hitting Fan Zhe and knocking him down, loosening the gemstone around his neck. The cat reacted instantly, snatching the gemstone in its mouth while McLaren war god kept Fan Zhe pinned. Lu Ming, surprised, called after the cat as it ran off, and shouted to the war god to cover them as he chased the fleeing cat. After the McLaren war god landed a powerful hit, Fan Zhe slammed into the cave wall and went unconscious, though his fingers twitched faintly. Lu Ming chased the cat, telling it to slow down since it was hurt. He finally caught up and asked why it needed the pearl. The cat explained it wasn't an ordinary pearl, it was a water spirit nucleus, one of 5 spirit nuclei. Collecting all 5 could summon something incredible, but Lu Ming, overthinking, jumped to wild conclusions about dragons and universe-shaking powers. The cat just stared at him, speechless. Suddenly, a pile of rocks blocked their path. Lu Ming panicked, thinking they were trapped and might have to use the Tomb Warrior again, but the cat stayed calm, hinting there was another way out. It sent a stream of golden energy to Lu Ming's forehead, and within seconds, his eyes slowly closed. A ring of light appeared before him, signaling his return to the sea of consciousness. Back in the real world, Fan Zhe had actually beaten the McLaren war god, leaving it injured, and was calling out a warning. Lu Ming woke up to find a paw print mark on his forehead and realized the cat was gone. He was confused, touching his chest, still holding the Tomb Raider's card. Then, a cold voice called for the water spirit nucleus, and a single red eye appeared. Fanze was right behind him. Before Lu Ming could react, a girl with cat-like ears clamped her hand over his mouth, whispering that he was now in the shadow realm. As long as he stayed quiet, ordinary people couldn't see him. Just then, footsteps echoed, and Fanze, unaware of the invisible Lu Ming, walked nearby, puzzled that he could sense someone was close without seeing them. After searching for a while, Fanze finally gave up, suspecting Lu Ming might be using some visual trick or illusion. He left, and Lu Ming stayed still, watching him go. He realized he hadn't been noticed at all. They were in the same place, but two different layers of reality. Even more interesting, Lu Ming could see information floating around Fanze. The girl with cat-like features explained that the Shadow Realm lets him secretly observe hidden layers of reality, but what he sees depends on the layer. Lu Ming, frustrated, demanded to know who she was. She said it wasn't important and reminded him to stay quiet, warning that people who aren't trained could get lost in the Shadow Realm. Before he could even ask her name, she vanished, leaving only a glowing paw print on his forehead. The mark shocked him, sending a jolt through his head. He realized it must be the illusionary restriction she mentioned and hurriedly stumbled forward, desperate to find an exit. Lu Ming got up and ran, using the coordinates he had before. Luckily, they still worked inside the forbidden zone. A glowing ring appeared ahead, marking the way out. Meanwhile, Fanze was on the phone, furious that the barrier around the mineral vein had been breached and the water spirit nucleus stolen. He ranted about how audacious Lu Ming was, even bringing Tam Van Thursday along, while the person on the other end calmly promised to assist. Elsewhere, a sorcerer-like man watched through a crystal ball as Tam Van Thursday flirted with a young woman, bragging about his connections and how easily he could get her a lead role. She giggled, impressed, until a strange turquoise flame appeared in the sky above. Back home, Lu Ming called his sister, teasingly bringing up International Women's Day gifts, but quickly shifted the conversation to ask if she knew about a shadowy, illusory realm. Lu Yen, confused and wary, scolded him for even thinking about such things, mentioning she had arranged for some deliveries to arrive soon. Lu Ming hung up, muttering about how weird his sister was, and wondered how she didn't seem to realize the Shadow Realm even existed. Ever since leaving the Shadow Realm, Lu Ming had a dull headache, and the cat still hadn't returned. Maybe it went off to ring the mysterious bell. At least he had secured the 4-star energy card. He stared at it thoughtfully, placing it on his machine, only for it to flash a warning about energy overload, reminding him he needed an expansion module to fully use it. Lu Ming was shocked when his machine flagged an energy overload. Normally, it could only handle about 1,000,000 units, but this card was packed with enough energy to last a long time. He felt he could finally get a bit more adventurous. Deciding to improve his graveyard card, he noticed its combat power was solid, but it moved too slowly. He hoped refining the special effect could fix that. He asked Yuabai to prepare some excavation cards, the ice sword, and maybe a flame sword or greatsword. Yuabai looked at him puzzled, asking what he was making and if his head felt better. The next day at the Card Maker Association, Yuabai teased him about the card he had stayed up all night improving. Lu Ming, exhausted, just said he wanted to go home. She asked what he was calling the card, and he mumbled a long, dramatic name before muttering to himself that he'd wasted too much time on it anyway. At this rate, he thought, he still wouldn't stand a chance against a 4-star expert. Meanwhile, Fanze was scouring the streets for Lu Ming, convinced he hadn't gone far because of his injuries. When his gaze landed on Lu Ming's small shop, he ordered his followers to start searching there. Inside, Yuabai was happily selling cards, with customers coming and going. Just then, a commotion erupted. Someone bumped into the young man, snapping at him, but it turned out to be Lu Yan's friend, Si-Tu. Before anyone could react, Si-Tu fainted on the spot. The bunny-eared customer panicked and ran off, stammering that he hadn't done anything. Lu Ming asked Yuabai what happened, and she explained that Si-Tu had just fainted. Si-Tu's cheek was swollen like he'd hit it while falling. Yuabai tried to reassure him that it was just a minor accident, but Lu Ming covered her mouth, thinking maybe he banged his face during the fall. Holding a photo of himself and his sister, Lu Ming asked who Si-Tu was and why he had the picture. Si-Tu quickly explained he was a friend of Lu Yan and had been sent with something for him. Lu Ming remembered the name vaguely and asked if he was hurt. Si-Tu, frustrated, complained about being chased and set up as soon as he arrived in the city, scaring even his little sister. Then he handed Lu Ming something that looked like a USB drive, explaining it contained study materials for the Moonshadow inheritance. Lu Ming was stunned. He couldn't believe his sister wanted him involved in something so advanced, given his level. Si-Tu reassured him that the inheritance wasn't the focus this time. She just wanted to help him broaden his horizons. Later, Fanze arrived at the door, knocking and demanding someone answer, clearly sensing people inside. The strange man with him noted there were at least 2 people in the room. Lu Ming and his friends were watching the surveillance feed nervously. C2 realized Fan Zhe was the same blockhead who had chased him earlier, and with the fat guy behind him able to sense locations, he had used a special ability to erase his scent to avoid being tracked. Lu Ming realized with a jolt that C2 might actually be the thief he had been hunting. Confronting a 4-star expert now without the cat would be hopeless, and getting involved could get everyone in trouble. Yuebai warned C2 that stepping outside now would be suicide, and he reluctantly agreed he couldn't risk anyone else. Lu Ming blamed himself, thinking he was too weak. He remembered how in his past life, people constantly put him down, telling him he was useless if he didn't perform, and mocking him for having no ambition. All those memories came rushing back, and now he felt he'd messed up again, this time on his own. Seeing him quiet and down, Yuebai stepped closer, asking if he was okay and offering to handle things so he wouldn't have to worry about her. C2, still on the floor from earlier, struggled to say he didn't want to involve everyone and that he could manage. Lu Ming helped him up, telling him to stay calm, and then instructed Yuebai to stay behind and take care of C2. He also gave her a 4-star energy card as a signaling device in case anything went wrong. Stepping out, Lu Ming found Fan Zhe waiting impatiently outside, fuming because he had to wait so long. Lu Ming calmly opened the door, politely saying the shop was closed. Fan Zhe, seeing through the disguise, accused him of harboring the thief and demanded to check the place. Lu Ming smiled, playing it off, saying the shop was too small for anyone to hide. Ignoring him, Fan Zhe barged inside, and Lu Ming protested, trying to maintain some decency. Suddenly, someone inside shouted, "Stop, thief," and a huge explosion went off in the distance. Fan Zhe and his companion noticed a strange energy fluctuation and rushed off to investigate, giving Lu Ming a moment to process what had just happened. Yuebai appeared holding 2 cards, grinning, and explained how she had created chaos by making little Wu Ling ride a cow and self-destruct in the sky while shouting to distract Fan Zhe. Lu Ming was amazed and praised her, calling her a genius. C2, watching the exchange, reminded them that the tracking guy would still pursue them if he realized something was off. Lu Ming asked about the tracking, and C2 explained that while the guy was strong, at least a 4-star, his tracking range couldn't extend beyond the inner city. So as long as they could leave the city, they'd be safe. That night, Lu Ming led C2 through a quiet path via the graveyard to reach the outskirts. C2 was impressed by Lu Ming's careful planning and the mask he had prepared for him. He thanked him sincerely, and Lu Ming, feeling a bit embarrassed, downplayed it as nothing, just a small thing. C2, feeling grateful, told Lu Ming he owed him one. Lu Ming shrugged it off, saying it wasn't a big deal, and handed him a 1-star card that contained a basic version of his ability, his signature starting point. C2 mentioned that Lu Ming's sister had been worried about him, praising him for being smart, brave, and capable. He joked that they should have a drink together sometime and wished him luck for the Moon Shadow trial before leaving. Lu Ming replayed the compliments in his mind and smiled to himself. Moon Shadow trial, bring it on, he thought confidently. Meanwhile, Tian Lang was being told by a mysterious figure that the upcoming Moon Shadow trial would be his last chance with the Moon Shadow card. If he failed again, there would be serious consequences. Tian Lang accepted a token from the figure, promising he had a plan and that everything would work out. Back in a desolate graveyard, 3 thugs were sneaking around at night, arguing about how stupid it was to be there. They joked about looking for black market merchants to make some quick cash, thinking this was their only chance to get rare items. Suddenly, Lu Ming appeared in the distance. The thugs tried to intimidate him, one stepping forward with a knife, demanding cooperation. Before they could get aggressive, a mysterious voice echoed through the graveyard, making the thugs freeze in fear. One asked shakily if Lu Ming had accomplices or if this was a trap, while the other tried to act tough but couldn't hide his fear. Lu Ming had a plan in mind. He calculated the cards he had, 2 3-stars, 1 2-star, and figured this was the perfect chance to test his enhanced Tomb Warrior. As he readied a card, a staff wrapped in cloth suddenly fell from the sky and embedded itself in the ground, radiating a powerful force that made the thugs tremble. Then, a massive hand erupted from the earth, forming a colossal warrior, the enhanced Tomb Warrior. The thugs were stunned, practically frozen in shock. Lu Ming pointed at them and ordered the Tomb Warrior to handle the situation. But, unexpectedly, the warrior suddenly cried out in pain, clutching its head, revealing that a sword had pierced through it. Lu Ming clutched his head, groaning in frustration. His enhanced Tomb Warrior had failed again. Before it could even move, the terrified thugs bolted, screaming for help, leaving only one frozen guy behind. He was standing stiff, froth at the corner of his mouth, and Lu Ming couldn't help feeling a little disappointed. Well, at least something happened, he muttered. Deciding not to stick around and attract more attention, he thanked his Tomb Warrior under his breath and started to leave, though he had the uneasy feeling someone was watching him. A chilling voice echoed again, and Lu Ming's warrior jolted toward it. Suddenly, a creepy, zombie-like figure appeared, speaking in a slow, menacing tone. Meanwhile, far away in Harmony City at the Xianyuan building, Wang Tianjun stopped his son Wang Xian from overexerting himself during cultivation. Wang Xian, exhausted but determined, asked if he was a bad person. Tianjun calmly explained that it depended on perspective. He wasn't exactly good, but not exactly bad either, since he spent his days causing trouble with friends. Wang Xian then surprised his father by saying he wanted to cultivate the Wang family's inheritance. Tianjun was a bit taken aback but curious about what motivated this decision. Back at home, Lu Ming cheerfully told Yuebai he was back. She immediately asked about Uncle Chu Xiao, and Lu Ming reassured her everything had gone smoothly. He praised Yuebai for her efforts, making her blush modestly. Then he handed her the one-star card Chu Xiao had given him, explaining it contained a special ability. Yuebai accepted it, asking if he would keep it, but Lu Ming told her to hold on to it since he needed to focus on preparing for the Moon Shadow trial. Alone in his room, Lu Ming stared at a mountain of study materials, feeling overwhelmed. Two titles caught his eye, Being Human and Restrictions. As he reflected, he remembered past events, his brother's incident at the mine and the mysterious woman in the Shadow Realm who had mentioned restrictions. He realized restrictions were originally special energy abilities, often tied to elemental powers, used to limit or control things. Over time, people had learned to apply them to objects, humans, and weapons, which explained how some cultivators seemed invisible. They were just cleverly using restrictions on themselves. Just then, Yuebai came rushing in, holding a card, telling Lu Ming it wasn't an ordinary one-star card. She urged him to seal it into the original card and see what happened. Lu Ming suspected Chu Xiao's invisibility ability might be tied to restrictions he was researching. He remembered Chu Xiao was a unique elementalist, so it made sense. As he sealed the card, Yuebai noticed the color looked different from the usual cards, and Lu Ming realized she was right. The green light meant it was an upgraded ability. He recalled reading about this kind of enhanced energy on technical forums. Upgraded abilities were stronger than normal cards and consumed less energy. A one-star card like this could even rival a regular two-star card. Lu Ming was excited and gave Yuebai a thumbs up, explaining it was a huge deal, a true boost over the original ability. Curious, Yuebai asked to see his upgraded card. While they looked, Lu Ming noticed someone outside staring at them. Then they opened the newsfeed and saw Chu Xiao featured in the news, joking about never going to work. Yuebai was confused about why Chu Xiao was being reported, while Lu Ming got caught up remembering Chu Xiao's rise as a new generation spell master. Suddenly, something crashed through the window, and both of them were shocked. They feared Fan Jia and the others had returned, but it was just Fatty at the door. Fatty boasted about completing a mission and saving someone from a level 3 beast. Lu Ming, busy and impatient, cut him off, telling him to go home. Fatty teased him about studying restrictions, but Lu Ming ignored him, muttering about preparing for the Moon Shadow trial and not wanting to hold Lu Yen back. Fatty's eyes widened at the mention of the Moon Shadow inheritance, clearly impressed. He asked if he had any resources on restrictions, and Lu Ming paused, thinking. Fatty got excited and pulled out a stack of flyers, bragging about courses that could turn anyone into a restriction expert in just days. Lu Ming picked one up, curious, and Fatty explained they were the top schools in Qingming City for restriction studies, basically, the pros. He even tried to push a 15 days, 0 to hero course on him, but Lu Ming just picked the cheapest one and decided to start studying tomorrow. Even as Lu Ming told him to scream, Fatty kept whining about not getting a finder's fee. Back in his room, Lu Ming told Yuebai that the flyers were from someone giving him leads on restriction courses. Yuebai asked about Uncle Chu Xiao's inscription card, but Lu Ming said they didn't need it yet, she could study it if she wanted. Yuebai noticed a figure outside the window and warned Lu Ming what was that, and claimed he was owed 1.3 billion. The name made Lu Ming tense, and Yuebai left for the night. The next morning, Lu Ming was annoyed. The course he paid for turned out to be basic stuff he'd already mastered. He went over the fundamentals of inscription card restrictions, how these spells gave cards special effects and how they could be broken either by brute force or by deciphering the card's algorithm. He knew the tricks for level 2 restrictions but nothing beyond that. Hoping to learn something new, Lu Ming raised his hand and asked the teacher to explain restriction breaking principles. The teacher, wearing pink bunny ears, seemed quirky but capable. He clapped Lu Ming on the shoulder and explained that card restrictions basically used a piece of the card's inscription in place of energy restrictions. To break a restriction, you had to complete the card's inscription, what they called card completion. Lu Ming immediately got it. The teacher then used his special ability, the see-through eye, letting Lu Ming see the inscriptions clearly for a moment. He explained it could amplify perception but required focus and energy. The key, he said, was mastering card creation and restriction algorithms. Then he left, telling Lu Ming the steps for restriction breaking were on the table and that he should study them carefully. Class was over. Lu Ming stared at the paper on the table. The steps for restriction breaking the teacher had left were all there. Count the restrictions, analyze them, locate the core energy inscription, complete the restriction algorithm, and finish the energy inscription. He realized the third step, matching the dispel card to the energy core, was the key. With his see-through eye and the dispel card, he could potentially neutralize any restriction. Lost in thought, he was startled by a familiar voice. It was the cat, showing up after a few days. Lu Ming scolded him for disappearing and not keeping in touch. The cat cut him off, joking that if he hadn't come looking, Lu Ming might think he was dead. He explained that Fanja had been tracking Lu Ming, so he had to suppress his energy signature. Lu Ming frowned but realized that his low energy levels actually helped, making him seem like an energy nullifier. The cat's tail ring was gone, which worried him. The ring helped maintain his form and keep his energy signature hidden, so losing it meant he'd be vulnerable if Fanja found him. Lu Ming teased him, saying he wasn't begging for help, but the cat warned that without the ring, a direct encounter could be dangerous for both of them. Thinking it over, Lu Ming had an idea. They could enter the cave through the Shadow Realm and maybe even see that cat-eared girl again. The cat immediately objected, saying the energy cost was too high and it was risky to stay in the Shadow Realm too long without proper restriction barriers. Just then, Lu Ming's phone rang. It was Fatty checking on his restriction training. He mentioned a big job. Fanja needed help repairing restrictions in his cultivation cave out in the suburbs. Lu Ming recognized Fanja immediately and paused to consider it. The cat quickly offered to help, explaining that his golden pupil technique could sense energy intensity, and if combined with a pathway visualization ability, it could effectively give Lu Ming the insight he needed. Lu Ming grinned, realizing this was a huge help and could save him a lot of effort and money. Suddenly, the cat jumped up at a noise, warning Lu Ming someone was coming. Two men appeared behind him, and one jokingly commented on Lu Ming still studying. They both praised him, calling him Qingming City's top card inscriptionist. Lu Ming recognized one as President Zhang and the other introduced himself as Chen Zhua, head of the Chongyang City Card Inscriptionist Association. Chen Zhua complimented Lu Ming's card-making skills and invited him to come to Chongyang City. President Zhang loudly reminded Chen Zhua not to ignore him. Lu Ming scratched his head, feeling flattered but insisted he still had a lot to learn and wanted to get back to his shop. President Zhang clapped him on the shoulder, saying there was something urgent he needed. Meanwhile, back at the shop, Yuebai was enthusiastically greeting customers. One guy scoffed at a card, calling it trash, and Yuebai snapped back, suggesting he go somewhere else if he didn't like it. The man mocked her, teasing that all Qingming card inscriptionists were fragile. Another young man stepped in, telling Xiao Ran to apologize, pointing out that even simple-looking cards could be intricate. Yuebai stayed calm, set the price, and made it clear he could pay or not. Xiao Ran freaked out, thinking she was trying to scam them, but his older brother shut him up. Their father appeared from the doorway, telling the boys to come inside because there was a match discussion tonight. The boy asked what was happening. Their father explained it was a friendly competition, but the association headquarters would be watching closely. Meanwhile, at the Lu Ming side, the same discussion is going on. Chen Zhua had proposed the match to try and take next year's sponsorship from the Qingming branch. The opponent was the top Chongyang branch, with some of the most skilled card inscriptionists in the country. The competition would have 3 rounds, 1-star, 2-star, and 3-star, with the best of 3 matches for each. Their representative, Li Aigua, was a 2-star but actually stronger than that. Another, Li Yinyan, intentionally stayed at 1-star to suppress other 1-star inscriptionists. And the strongest, Li Haonian, was a peak 3-star. Lu Ming asked if the whole family were card inscriptionists, and President Zhang sighed, reminding him of the pressure on Qingming City. When Lu Ming casually mentioned he had already advanced to 2-star, President Zhang's expression went from laughter to panic. If he was already 2-star, Qingming City might not stand a chance in the 1-star matches. Lu Ming smiled, telling President Zhang not to worry. Even though he had just advanced to 2-star, he could handle Li Aigua easily. For the 1-star match, he could find someone else. President Zhang finally understood, and Lu Ming said it was getting late, so he'd head back to the shop. A nearby secretary reminded him to take the competition seriously. Lu Ming just grinned, saying he wasn't joking, but of course, he worked for a fee. He wanted a card blueprint afterward. President Zhang readily agreed. If Lu Ming won, he could pick any blueprint from the vault. Satisfied, Lu Ming left, teasing that the arena show would be great the day after tomorrow. Meanwhile, Chen Zhua congratulated his team on their past wins. Li Aigua said he couldn't promise a total sweep, but he and Haonian could easily handle the 2-star and 3-star rounds. Li Yinyan casually dismissed Lu Ming's card as ordinary, while Li Haonian didn't care at all, complaining about the food. Chen Zhua mentioned meeting Lu Ming and hearing he was highly regarded in Chongyang City, though he seemed modest. Li Yinyan interrupted, bragging about his own 1-star upgrade card being better. Li Aigua told him to save it for the competition, and Chen Zhua laughed, saying young people like to show off. Li Aigwa downplayed it, claiming it was nothing special. Chen Zhua asked about Hao Ran's progress, and Li Aigwa proudly explained that Hao Ran had already made a 3-star super card. Hao Ran modestly credited his father's guidance, earning Chen Zhua's nod of approval. Li Yinyan, however, remembered the hard work it took to make his first upgrade card and how his father barely noticed his excitement. The memory made him feel a familiar emptiness, watching his older brother get praise. Meanwhile, Lu Ming researched Li Hao Ran, learning he was a super genius who could create 1-star super cards at just 10 years old. Yue Bai, standing beside him, worriedly asked if Lu Ming was concerned about Hao Ran for the upcoming match. Lu Ming just smiled confidently, saying it didn't matter how good Hao Ran was, super card or not, it had nothing to do with them. The next day, the competition officially began under beautiful weather. The Qingming, Chongyang Friendly Exchange Tournament started with a warm, friendly atmosphere. The two presidents gave their opening speeches, and everyone wondered who would claim the glory of this friendly tournament. Xiaoyu, sitting in the stands, asked Little Fatty when Lu Ming would compete. Little Fatty, munching on chips, explained that since Lu Ming was a 1-star card inscriptionist, he'd probably be in the first match. Xiaoyu looked doubtful, but Chang Liang reminded her that Lu Ming had saved their lives, so of course they were there to support him. Little Fatty confidently declared that Lu Ming would crush the Chongyang card inscriptionists. Xiaoyu quietly recalled the day Lu Ming's tomb warrior had rescued them. Finally, the announcer called the first competitor to the stage, a fiery 1-star card inscriptionist from Chongyang City, Li Yinyan. Li Yinyan strutted onto the stage, announcing himself as the blazing 1-star leader and champion. He was full of confidence, bragging that nobody could beat him. The female MC looked a bit embarrassed for him. When asked if he had anything to say to his opponent, he just shrugged it off, saying he didn't care who it was, facing him meant losing. Everyone watching the livestream muttered that this kid was way too cocky, and that Lu Ming had this match in the bag. Two guys watched the livestream from elsewhere, commenting that the competition was big, but one of them didn't care about missing the live view. Back at the venue, Chen Zhua reminded President Zhang to stay calm and prioritize friendship, not just winning. President Zhang grunted, but he still had doubts about whether Lu Ming could handle the match. The announcer called for the 1-star inscriptionist from Qingming City, and the audience buzzed with whispers about Li Yinyan's tricky reputation. Then everyone's jaws dropped. Yue Bai stepped onto the stage instead of Lu Ming. Li Yinyan was shocked, wondering what Lu Ming was up to. Back in the room, Xiaoyu worried if Yue Bai would be okay, but Lu Ming calmly reassured her that Yue Bai could handle it. Even the Chongyang team was stunned, trying to figure out who this little girl was. Li Haonian just chuckled, thinking the match was going to be way more interesting than expected. A coin flip decided the turn order, and the 1-star match officially began with Yue Bai going first. Li Yinyan immediately started taunting her, saying she was sent in because Lu Ming was scared. Yue Bai shot back, mocking him for living in his older brother's shadow. Li Yinyan's face turned red with anger. Then the timer started. The match was judged on crafting time, layout, inscriptions, card logic, final effect, and overall performance. In just 56 seconds, Yue Bai finished her card. The MC was stunned, barely able to believe it. The audience erupted in murmurs of disbelief. Less than a minute. People compared it to hacking, way faster than watching a movie. Chang Liang and Little Fatty both shouted, stunned, asking each other what had just happened. Xiaoyu, sitting nearby, shook her head and muttered that everyone was overreacting. They didn't even realize how insane 56 seconds was. He reminded them that even Jia Tingying, the fastest on the professional card production line at headquarters and a 3-star card inscriptionist, took a full minute and 36 seconds. And here was a 1-star creating a composite card faster than that. Yue Bai's card was flawless, optimized energy, perfect micro-inscriptions, not a single wasted move. The appraisal department head, Xie Yan, gave her a score of 150 points. The maximum for the match was 100. People in the audience and the judges were stunned. Chen Zhua's jaw dropped, and he glanced at President Zhang, realizing Qingming City had a secret weapon all along. President Zhang was grinning from ear to ear, clearly proud of the genius girl from Qingming. The pressure was on Chongyang City. Meanwhile, Lu Nen watched closely, asking her master about Yue Bai. She noted that the girl seemed like promising cultivator material. The scene briefly flashed back to Li Yinyan holding a super card, asking his brother Hao Ran if he could study it. Hao Ran just smiled and told him to take it if he wanted, even though he wasn't really sure himself. Back at the present, Li Yinyan stared at Yue Bai's score and felt a pang of worry. She had finished her card in less than a minute, probably around the same age as he had been back then. As Yue Bai stepped off the stage, she playfully mimicked his usual condescending tone and reminded him that her master hadn't wanted to crush him too badly. Naturally, this made Li Yinyan furious, and he clenched his teeth. The announcer called him up next. The blazing one-star leader, Li Yinyan, took the stage, his heart racing. He picked up his inscription pen, but his hand trembled, and sweat rolled down his forehead. Li Aigua, watching from the sidelines, sighed, realizing Li Yinyan might not have a chance this time. Even Li Haoran's expression darkened as he considered the pressure his younger brother was under. The crowd watched, anticipating whether Li Yinyan could hold his ground as the timer neared 56 seconds. As soon as the announcer finished, Li Yinyan wrapped up his inscription in 55 seconds, and a brilliant purple glow shot from his card, a super card. The crowd gasped in amazement. Li Haoran felt a strong connection to his younger brother, realizing Li Yinyan carried the pride and legacy of Chongyang City's card masters. Chen Zhuo laughed with delight, impressed by the skill on display. Yue Bai, watching, muttered to herself that she should have used her own super card earlier. Lu Ming, shocked, asked if she could really make super cards. She explained that with the mimicry card her master had given her, she could layer and carry out powerful inscriptions, and she'd been practicing since seeing her master create a one-star super card. Lu Ming nearly fainted. She had a trump card she hadn't used yet. Xia Yu helped him up, worried, while Li Aigua watched, realizing his team had lost some confidence. Meanwhile, Li Haoran observed his younger brother closely on the screen. The next match, the two-star battle, was about to start. Unlike the one-star matches, this round was a PK format. Both competitors worked simultaneously and then tested their cards in a trial combat. Speed and precision were everything. Representing Chongyang City was Li Aigua, a top-tier two-star veteran and father of Li Yinyan and Li Haoran. Representing Qingming City was Lu Ming, looking a bit pale from the stress. As the match began, Li Aigua's hands moved like lightning, dazzling everyone. But Lu Ming didn't move. He sat with his eyes closed, seemingly meditating. The audience grew confused, wondering if he was giving up. Li Aigua thought the kid was intimidated, smugly confident that victory was his. Yue Bai, watching nervously, reassured herself that Lu Ming didn't give up that easily. Just as Li Aigua was about to finish, Lu Ming finally spoke, breaking the tension. He picked up his stylus and confidently said the opponent was slower than expected and that he was ready to finish things quickly. A quick flashback showed Lu Ming in his past life as a keyboard warrior, fingers flying across the keys, working at incredible speed while colleagues were amazed at how fast he was. Lu Ming, shaking off all fatigue, felt his determination spike. He told himself he could go all night if needed, making sure their project got noticed. His colleagues cheered him on, shouting encouragement, and Lu Ming pumped himself up, telling everyone to just stick to the plan and keep pushing. He thought back to his past life, remembering the insane speed he had trained for, every late night, every hard lesson, and now it all mattered. With a steely look, he finally declared he was done and raised his card for everyone to see. Li Aigua froze in surprise, while the audience erupted. Lu Ming had finished almost simultaneously with his opponent, showing unbelievable speed. The crowd went wild, murmuring in shock. People thought Yue Bai had been fast, but Lu Ming was on another level. Yue Bai smiled proudly, mentioning that he could actually go even faster. Even a nervous observer in glasses wiped sweat from his forehead, clearly impressed. Backstage, Li Aigwan hung his head, frustrated at the speed of this two-star card inscriptionist. He begged his older brother Li Haoran to help him, but Haoran stayed calm, reminding him that winning and losing are part of the game, and that the real challenge, the practical combat, was still coming. Yinyan, furious, accused his brother of keeping secrets. Haoran just shrugged, saying everyone makes their own choices and told him not to worry. He left to prepare for his own match, leaving Yinyan fuming. Yinyan couldn't stop thinking, why did he try so hard yet still fall behind Lu Ming, Xiao Bai, and even his brother? On the screen, his father, Li Aigua, was red-faced with anger, clenching his fists and vowing not to be defeated. The tension in the arena was palpable, and the stakes for the next rounds were higher than ever. Yinyan stared at the screen, whispering, "Father," while Li Aigua smirked confidently, teasing that Lu Ming might be fast, but he had overlooked a critical flaw. Lu Ming stayed silent, observing carefully. Li Aigua mocked him, saying all that frantic scribbling would ruin the card's quality, and in a simulated battle, his 3-star deep-cut sword card would easily win. The female MC announced excitedly that Li Aigua had created a breakthrough 3-star card, and the crowd buzzed with surprise. Xia Yu whispered that the old man must be over 50 and wondered what the big deal was, thinking he was just showing off. However, reminded everyone that judges focus on results, not cheap tricks, and that Lu Ming still had a trick or two up his sleeve. Li Aigua confidently placed his card on the system. The arena announced it as a 3-star summoning card, and his swordsman was ready. He taunted the young opponent, suggesting it wasn't too late to give up. But the MC noticed something strange. Lu Ming hadn't placed anything yet. Suddenly, a white flag appeared in front of him. The crowd gasped, confused, thinking he might be surrendering. Backstage, Li Haoran laughed at the TV, convinced that Lu Ming was scared of the powerful swordsman. Li Aigua, still cocky, told Lu Ming he had nothing to worry about as a newcomer. Lu Ming calmly interrupted, pointing out that Li Aigua hadn't even checked his card properly, and reminded him that knowing your enemy is just as important as knowing yourself. Li Aigua finally looked, and his eyes widened in disbelief. A level-up card. He dismissed it, insisting his 3-star card was superior, and sent his swordsman charging. The arena erupted as a bright light flashed. In an instant, Li Aigua's swordsman was gone, leaving the audience stunned. The leveled-up Black Flame War God stood completely unharmed, radiating immense power and ready for more challenges. Li Aigua, completely overwhelmed, fainted on the spot. Lu Ming felt a twinge of guilt, wondering if he'd pushed things too far, while the crowd buzzed in astonishment at what had just happened. The announcer couldn't hide his surprise, saying Lu Ming had completely outperformed Li Aigua in every way: speed, card quality, even combat effectiveness. Fatty was thrilled and whipped out her phone to record, amazed at how awesome the summon was, though it looked oddly familiar. Xiaoyu whispered that this was way stronger than last time. The two chairmen exchanged words, both astonished at Lu Ming's skill. Old Zhang admitted he hadn't expected this, while Lu Nan's master praised Lu Ming, though she reminded her that instant success isn't always the most fun. There's value in learning the hard way. Back in the arena, Li Yinyan was in tears, worried that his father had been hurt. Li Haoran tried to calm him, explaining that his father had just fainted from shock and would be fine. Lu Ming felt a pang of guilt, scratching his head and apologizing for not controlling his strength. Li Haoran reassured him, explaining that the combination of the 3-star composite card, Black Flame Armor, and Lava Hand Sword had worked perfectly, preventing any disaster on the platform. Observing carefully, Lu Ming realized Li Haoran hadn't even looked directly at his summon card but could analyze all the details from just seeing its effects. Then, Li Haoran extended his hand, inviting Lu Ming to join the Chongyang Association. Li Yinyan, still fuming, couldn't believe what he was seeing. After hearing his younger brother's constant whining, Li Haoran lost patience and punched him in the nose, forcing him to calm down. Li Haoran admitted that the card his younger brother submitted wasn't made by him, so the victory rightfully went to Lu Ming. Yinyan hissed in frustration, feeling betrayed. Lu Ming, cold and composed, confirmed that he had already seen through the card swap. Li Haoran tried to explain, but Lu Ming just snorted, thinking there was no way such a small trick could fool him. Still, he inwardly acknowledged that if Xiao Bai hadn't warned him, he might have missed it completely, quietly cursing himself for almost overlooking the deception. Li Haoran spoke to Lu Ming, asking him not to spread the news about his younger brother's card swap. He admitted it was wrong, but explained that Yinyan had acted rashly because he wanted to win so badly. If the association found out, Yinyan's future as a card creator could be ruined. Li Haoran even offered to forfeit the third match to protect him. Yinyan's face fell at this, while Lu Ming watched, a bit surprised. He sighed, thinking there wasn't much that could be done if the judges discovered it on their own. The MC announced that the second round, the highly anticipated 3-star match, was about to begin. With both teams having 1 point each, this final match would decide the winner. Normally, the order of play would be determined by drawing lots, but a confident voice stepped in, saying Chongyang would go first. President Chen Zhuo lightly placed a hand on Elder Zhang's shoulder, emphasizing that friendship came first. Elder Zhang looked annoyed, while the female MC commented on Chen Zhuo's confidence. Chen Zhuo replied that his contestant was the city's trump card, a top-tier player. The crowd went wild, especially the female fans, screaming Li Haoran's name and going completely crazy. Xiao Bai and Chang Liang exchanged glances, realizing just how much pressure Lu Ming would be under. They urged him to finish quickly, but Xiaoyu snapped back, reminding them that Li Haoran was already on stage. Li Haoran took the microphone, smiling charmingly and waving to the crowd. He thanked everyone for their support and expressed his gratitude for the chance to grow through the competition. Meanwhile, back in the medical room, Li Aigua had regained consciousness. His son offered him warm water and tried to calm him down. Li Aigua admitted he hadn't expected to lose to Lu Ming, but praised his sons for their impressive performances. He got emotional, even shedding a few tears, realizing that the future of the Li family's card creation legacy rested on their shoulders. His son gently told him not to worry and to focus on watching Li Haoran compete. Back in the arena, Li Haoran continued speaking, ready to officially start the third match, his voice carrying the excitement and anticipation of the crowd. Just as Li Aigua tried to adjust the volume, Li Haoran's voice came booming through the TV. He forfeited. Li Aigua was so shocked he fainted again, and his son panicked, yelling for a doctor. On stage, Li Haoran calmly repeated that he was forfeiting and thanked everyone. The audience was confused, but Xiao Bai and Chang Liang were thrilled, shouting about getting refunds. Xiaoyu just facebombed, thinking they were idiots. Li Haoran handed the microphone back to the MC, who still couldn't figure out what had just happened. President Chen Zhuo was stunned, muttering in disbelief. Li Haoran just walked off, leaving everyone dumbfounded. When Chen Zhuo asked what was going on, Li Haoran explained that his father was in the hospital, and he wasn't in the right frame of mind to compete. President Chen Zhuo froze, while President Zhang just smiled, saying friendship comes first, which didn't sit well with Chen Zhuo. Li Haoran went to meet Lu Ming, who crossed his arms and asked if it was worth offending the association just for his younger brother. Li Haoran thought maybe it was worth it to teach Yin a lesson. Lu Ming suggested they go to the association and explain things, but Li Haoran had other thoughts. He noted that the third match wasn't about him personally, it was about Qingming winning against Chong Yang. Lu Ming reminded him that he had beaten Li Haoran's father, but Li Haoran stood his ground, insisting he was a peak 3-star. Lu Ming teased him again, but in the end, Li Haoran had forfeited the third match. Qingming City won by default, claiming the championship trophy. That night, Qingming City sparkled under the stars. In a high-rise room, Chairman Zhang raised a glass of red wine, celebrating the association's victory. He praised Lu Ming as the rising star of Qingming, and Xiaobai also got a special shout-out for her incredible talent at such a young age. Lu Ming humbly credited his teaching, while Xiaobai's father joked it was all in the genes, making the chairman smile awkwardly. Lu Ming brought up a previous arrangement with the chairman, who confirmed it was all set and would be delivered the next morning. Then, Chairman Zhang mentioned another opportunity. Someone needed their home's restriction formations reinforced, and it was a big client, Fan Mining Enterprises. Money wasn't an issue, and completing this task could put a 4-star master in Lu Ming's debt. As soon as Fan Mining Enterprises came up, both Lu Ming and the little cat in his subconscious immediately thought of Fan Zhe. They communicated silently, Lu Ming getting excited that this could be a huge opportunity, and the cat calmly agreed that careful preparation was key. At the same time, Jiang Feng also remembered Fan Zhe and warned Lu Ming to be very cautious dealing with him. Chairman Zhang bristled at the warning, feeling like Jiang Feng was implying a setup, but Lu Ming quickly reassured both of them that he would handle the mission perfectly. They clinked glasses and drank, keeping things light. Elsewhere, a thug with cat ears and a gold tooth was smoking and watching a video of Lu Ming confidently announcing he was ready to begin. He paused the video, took a drag from his cigar, and mentioned that Lu Nan wanted to bring Lu Ming along this time. 2 young women lounged on either side of him as he toyed with a string of beads, while an old white-haired man nodded and cautioned him to proceed carefully. The next day, outside Lu Ming's shop, Li Yinyan promised to keep everything running smoothly. Lu Ming, sweating nervously, wasn't reassured, suspecting the boy might still cause trouble. Li Yinyan insisted he had truly changed and remembered that the president had vouched for him, saying accepting him as a disciple could strengthen the bond between Qingming and Chongyang. Before leaving, Lu Ming told Xiaobai and Li Yinyan to watch the shop and warn Xiaobai to report anything suspicious. Xiaobai agreed without complaint. As soon as Lu Ming left, Li Yinyan cheerfully asked Xiaobai if there was anything he could do. She coolly told him to go buy her a coriander milk tea. Li Yinyan was confused, asking what that had to do with card crafting, and Xiaobai just shrugged, saying he needed energy to craft cards. He muttered that she was clearly just getting revenge. Meanwhile, Lu Ming arrived at a location on the plains outside the city, checking his phone and muttering that something seemed completely different from before. Lu Ming looked around, wondering if he'd walked into some kind of illusion. Suddenly, 2 drops of liquid splashed on his phone. Behind him, a pair of glowing red eyes stared at him. A massive python, its scales a mix of green and brown, was watching him with obvious intent. Its tongue flicked out, and rows of sharp teeth glinted as it prepared to strike. Lu Ming barely dodged the sudden attack, fear coursing through him. He fell to the ground, shouting for help, but his mind wasn't entirely panicked. He had a sly grin in his head, joking with the cat about how convincing his performance was. The cat scolded him for overreacting, but Lu Ming argued he had to make it look real. Still, a flicker of worry ran across his face. He clenched his fists, telling himself he wouldn't run this time, but the giant python was still closing in. Just as it lunged again, the python was blown apart in a cloud of dust. Lu Ming shielded his face as blue splashes coated his sleeves and chest, stunned into silence when a hand reached out with a calm voice, teasing him for being scared. It was Fan Zhe. The man had destroyed the python with a single punch and now offered Lu Ming a hand to help him up. Fan Zhe warned him not to wander alone in these wilds, saying beasts like that python could have easily finished him. Lu Ming's mind raced, messaging the cat. He was impressed that Fan Zhe had been waiting there all along. The cat told him to keep pretending to be weak and let Fan Zhe lower his guard. Grasping Fan Zhe's hand, Lu Ming thanked him, almost blurting out "Boss Fan," before realizing his mistake. Fan Zhe raised an eyebrow, suspicious. The cat quickly whispered an excuse, explaining that Lu Ming had been introduced by Zhang Yang and had seen Fan Zhe's picture, which calmed the situation. Lu Ming smoothly explained that he was there to repair the barrier, as recommended by Zhang Yang. Even so, Fan Zhe's suspicion lingered. He asked if Lu Ming was someone he had met before. Lu Ming forced a friendly smile, but Fan Zhe's memory jogged, and he correctly guessed it was Lu Ming from the shop. Relief washed over Lu Ming. The cat internally groaned at how confusing the conversation had gotten. mountain. Feeling reassured because of Zhang Yang's recommendation, Fan Zai explained that he had previously set up defensive restrictions for his cultivation, but some troublemakers had damaged them, causing the local beasts to act strangely. He began to dismantle the illusion barrier, swirling energy between his palms as he muttered under his breath. Lu Ming couldn't quite catch what Fan Zai was chanting at first, but suddenly Fan Zai shouted, "Release," and a cave entrance appeared out of nowhere. He proudly pointed it out, claiming it was spacious enough even for city-level standards. Lu Ming laughed, complimenting Fan Zai's imposing style, making the man turn in surprise. They walked inside together, and Fan Zai casually mentioned that when Lu Ming reaches 4-star cultivation, he should find a suitable place to train. Lu Ming kept up a respectful tone but thought to himself that Fan Zai's words weren't entirely honest. As they moved through the cave, Fan Zai talked about his estate, supposedly full of rich energy minerals, and even offered Lu Ming some. But Lu Ming noticed the vines crisscrossing the cave and felt suspicious. They hadn't been there before. Then, a rat appeared, and Fan Zai kicked it. In seconds, the vines wrapped around the rat and devoured it. Fan Zai explained that these plant restrictions could consume objects nearby. Fan Zai shot Lu Ming a threatening glance, but Lu Ming pretended to be scared, joking that it would take 10 times his courage to even think about testing it. Just then, an object in Fan Zai's pocket lit up, and he panicked, saying there was an intruder at Chusa Pass. He dashed off, reminding Lu Ming not to wander. Lu Ming pretended to worry, calling after him, but secretly hoped Fan Zai wouldn't come back. At that moment, the cat appeared out of nowhere, assuring Lu Ming that no monster could stand against it. The cat pointed at the massive vines, telling Lu Ming it was time to act. Confused at first, Lu Ming asked what he was supposed to do. The cat explained that a ring with a tail was hidden inside the plant barrier at the back. Lu Ming groaned. He'd have to deal with a level 4 barrier. The cat, confident as ever, reassured him it could sense the energy inside and that it was accurate. Lu Ming worried that the plants were sentient and could recognize anyone but their master, which would be dangerous. The cat warned that forcibly breaking the barrier would be risky, and Fan Zai could return at any moment. Lu Ming nodded, understanding that patience and careful planning were the safest approach. Lu Ming set his backpack down and decided to check the area behind it first. He pulled out a card he had crafted using the effect of his previous golden pupil and the clear vision eye from the association. He activated it, his eyes glowing with a golden halo. Suddenly, he could see through the dense plants, revealing the old mining area hidden inside. No wonder Fan Zai had used such a powerful barrier to seal this place. Next, Lu Ming used his Disperse card, flinging it at the vegetation. A blinding flash exploded, carving a hole through the thick plants. He noted that the card's effect would hold for about 5 seconds, just enough time. The cat beside him asked what his plan was. Lu Ming told it to watch Fan Zai and slotted a card into his wrist device. Then he summoned a squad of spectral warriors, holding a vortex card in his hand. He adjusted his stance, snapped his fingers, and shouted for them to begin. Outside, Fan Zai had arrived and was effortlessly taking down several aggressive beasts, though he seemed a little tired. He muttered to himself that he needed Lu Ming to repair the barrier quickly. Inside, the spectral warriors focused on retrieving the ring on the cat's tail. One of them grabbed it and reported back. Lu Ming opened a path through the plants, letting the warrior slip the ring to him. In no time, Lu Ming held the ring in his hands, pleased with how smoothly it went. He glanced at the Vu Lin still working diligently and smiled. Late that night, under the moon, Lu Ming sat inside carefully etching the backs of the cards with precise, practiced movements. Fan Zai's voice came from behind, praising him for his hard work. Lu Ming thanked him politely, saying it was an honor to help repair the defensive restrictions and looked forward to his continued guidance. Fan Zai laughed, clapped him on the shoulder, and handed him 10,000 spirit stones as payment. Lu Ming feigned delight, returning the politeness, each of them inwardly thinking the other was a bit of a fool. Before leaving, Fan Zai reminded him to be careful around the plant barrier. Lu Ming nodded, studying a dense patch of vegetation and then used a swirling vortex card to open a large gap, revealing a Vu Lin waiting on the other side, ready to assist him. Vu Lin darted through the gap Lu Ming had opened and came back with a big stack of cards, proudly announcing that the mission was a success, way better than expected. Deep inside the cave, Fan Zai inspected the mineral deposits, holding a chunk of ore with a satisfied grin. He muttered to himself that the barrier and all the repairs had cost a whopping 10 million. Young people really had no idea, he thought. With the defensive restrictions reinforced, he could finally cultivate in peace and aim for a 5-star breakthrough. He also noted that Chu Xiao probably wanted this mineral vein for himself and made a mental note to keep an eye out. Outside the cave, Lu Ming led the way under a bright full moon, followed by 2 Vu Lin carrying heavy sacks stuffed with pouches of money. He muttered to himself that 10 million wasn't much and that Fan Zai probably thought he was a fool. The cat, overhearing, scolded him for not using the vortex card to absorb the mineral essence. It could have gotten him at least 1 million units of energy. Lu Ming laughed, joking they'd split it 50-50, and sighed, promising himself to prepare more vortex cards next time. Just then, his phone rang. It was Lu Yen. Lu Ming groaned and answered, explaining explaining that he'd been out in the suburbs with bad reception. Lu Yen scolded him for not picking up sooner but quickly switched to business, telling him the Moon Shadow trials were about to begin and that he needed to come to the academy early for special training, bringing Jiang Yuebai along. Lu Ming was puzzled why she had to come, but Lu Yen only said someone was very interested in her and hung up. Moments later, a text came through praising Lu Ming for his match, which made him blush despite himself. Back at the shop, Lu Ming told Jiang Yuebai she could go on the trip, and she practically bounced with excitement. Li Yiran, however, sulked, wondering why he couldn't go. Lu Ming explained that he trusted Li Yiran to protect the shop while they were away. It was an important job, and assured him he could use all the game cards in the shop since the console was fully charged. That seemed to satisfy Li Yiran. Just as Lu Ming checked if Jiang Yuebai had packed and reminded her to tell her father, a customer walked in, calling out. Li Yiran started to tell them the shop was closed but froze when he saw it was a young woman who immediately called out to Lu Ming. Lu Ming heard someone call his name and looked up, confused. A young woman stepped right up to him, grabbing his collar so their faces were only a few centimeters apart. She introduced herself as Chao Xiaoting, saying he might not remember her yet, but he would soon. Lu Ming had no clue who she was, her name completely unfamiliar. Before leaving, she warned him they'd meet again very soon. Xiao Nian, watching the woman walk away, rushed after her, trying to impress her with stories about his family and wealth, but Chao Xiaoting immediately shut him down with a sharp, "Get lost." Back inside, Yuebai couldn't resist teasing Lu Ming about the encounter, hinting he had some explaining to do. Lu Ming just laughed it off, telling her to stop talking nonsense and go pack her things. Still, Lu Ming couldn't shake the feeling that Chao Xiaoting wasn't just an ordinary person. Her strength was noticeable, and the faint scent she left behind seemed oddly familiar. Yuebai interrupted his thoughts, asking about the schedule for visiting her father tomorrow. Lu Ming told her to send the address, and he'd pick her up in the morning. She happily agreed. The next day, Lu Ming tried calling Yuebai and the headmaster to coordinate the pickup, but no one answered. His stomach tightened with unease, something felt off. He muttered that if he'd known they were so deep in the wilderness, he might as well have hired a moving company, though even they probably couldn't reach this place. From a distant thicket, a man's voice gave orders about a young man near the gate. A sniper, half hidden, adjusted his rifle, aimed at Lu Ming, and fired. The bullet hit a brick wall, leaving a black hole, but Lu Ming was gone. Frustrated, the sniper realized he'd been compromised and reported it, quickly packing up and trying to relocate. Suddenly, an earpiece dropped nearby, and a voice spoke. "Looking for him?" The sniper whirled around and came face to face with the headmaster, who was holding a man identical to the sniper. And before he could react, the imposter unleashed a surge of yellow energy. The blast sent the headmaster flying and caused a huge explosion in the forest, flames roaring and smoke billowing into the sky. At the exact same moment, somewhere else entirely, Lu Ming snapped awake, confused, with the cat-eared girl who had saved him sitting right beside him. Lu Ming sat up suddenly, scanning his surroundings and calling out for the headmaster and Yuebai, worried they might be in danger. But before he could move, a strand of yellow energy wrapped around his leg, binding him on the spot. Confused, he demanded to be let go, but the cat-eared girl beside him warned him not to rush into danger, explaining that the person outside was a highly skilled assassin. Lu Ming panicked, shouting for the cat to help, but she stayed calm, telling him that everyone has their own destiny. Rage and helplessness washed over him. He sank to his knees, clenching his fists and feeling tears stream down his face, questioning why all this was happening. Meanwhile, the assassin who had just launched an attack staggered, coughing, and cursed as the backlash from his own move hit him hard. He fumed in frustration but then broke into uncontrollable laughter, claiming the bounty for himself, his cackles echoing in the air long after the flames from his attack died down. Suddenly, a gaping hole appeared in Jiang Feng's chest, and both Jiang Feng and the assassin's comrade rose from the ground, their appearances grotesquely altered, almost like the hopping undead from Legends. Teeth grinding and saliva dripping, they lunged at Zhao Senator Shock. Zhao Sen pulled out two guns and fired wildly, but the attackers barely flinched and kept advancing. The undead in Jiang Feng's form struck Zhao Sen's neck, and he let out a scream of agony before collapsing. Jiang Feng, calm as ever, lit a cigarette while standing over Zhao Sen's remains. A black crow perched nearby scattered at the movement. After taking a puff, Jiang Feng extinguished his cigarette with a card and summoned a new one, radiating dark violet energy, the ghost prison card. The energy swirled around both him and Zhao Sen's remains, forming a powerful, almost tangible sphere. Lu Ming watched from a distance, both awed and nervous, recognizing the power and knowing it had to be Jiang Feng, the six-star cardmaster. The violet energy pulsed for a while before slowly fading, leaving Zhao Sen's drained form under the hovering card. Jiang Feng focused, channeling energy into the ghost prison card, and watched as Zhao Sen's body gradually dissolved into the card, absorbed by the swirling vortex. When it was done, Jiang Feng looked at the card with slight disappointment. It was only 4 stars. He muttered about the trade-off, lighting another cigarette, and his mind wandered to the villa and the energy surge he'd sensed earlier. Suddenly, he remembered his phone and saw several missed calls from Lu Ming, frowning as he realized he'd been distracted. A moment later, Lu Ming's voice rang out from the villa, sounding flustered. Yuebai wasn't there, and he was confused about why she'd given him the headmaster's address. Jiang Feng stayed calm, guessing that she probably just came to pick up some luggage since she rarely visited, too far for her to come often anyway. Lu Ming stared at the mountain of suitcases, scratching his head. How did she even know about this place? No delivery service would ever make it out here. And why so much stuff? Was she moving? Jiang Feng just shrugged, admitting he didn't know. Even he thought this was a lot to handle. Grumbling, Lu Ming loaded the luggage into his vehicle, muttering that next time she should just call. He almost walked right into a trap. Jiang Feng chuckled wryly, teasing him for being so easily surprised. He told Lu Ming he wouldn't see him off and to drive carefully. As Lu Ming pulled away, he cursed under his breath, feeling annoyed that he'd almost been outsmarted. A chill ran down Lu Ming's spine as he thought about the headmaster. Over 60 assassination attempts and still standing. How had he dealt with that last assassin? Illusion magic. The man's hatred ran deep. No wonder he lived out here in this backwater to keep Yuebai safe. He really loved his daughter. Lost in thought, exhaustion hit Lu Ming, and he sighed deeply. Then he remembered something practical. He needed to add a bit more for protection fees. Between the fatherly love and all the travel expenses, it only made sense. Meanwhile, back at the villa, Jiang Feng's phone rang. It was Lu Yen, thanking him and mentioning her brother had asked something about the Shadow Realm. Jiang Feng listened seriously, cigarette in hand, and warned not to underestimate the younger brother. He wasn't as simple as he seemed. And that's a wrap for today's video. If you enjoyed the content, hit that like button for more juicy updates, and don't forget to smash that subscribe button for regular updates.